He was consumed by a profound sense of frustration at that very moment. It had been approximately 2 weeks since Naruto departed Konoha alongside the Pervy Sage on a demanding training expedition. The memory of his initial excitement was still vivid. The prospect of 3 years dedicated to rigorous training and mastering powerful jutsu. He was convinced this journey would bring him significantly closer to achieving the title of Hokage. In fact, he believed Granny Tsunade might even bestow the hat upon him, impressed by his rapid progress. However, his high hopes were quickly dashed. All they had accomplished thus far was squandering time on Jiraiya's lewd books and what the Sannin referred to as research. Naruto had requested a scroll containing a jutsu he could practice, but the Sannin steadfastly insisted that he focus solely on honing his chakra control. Naruto's patience was wearing thin, and the fact that it had taken 2 full weeks for him to reach this breaking point was quite a feat for anyone familiar with his usual temperament. He watched his master amble along at a deliberately slow, carefree pace, and the spiky-haired blonde clenched his teeth in annoyance. How was he supposed to grow strong enough to retrieve Sasuke or become Hokage if he wasn't receiving proper training? How could he possibly impress Sakura-chan or defeat those Akatsuki thugs if he remained weak? He was supposed to be getting stronger, not wasting his time escorting his sensei to ogle unsuspecting, naked women. He had no doubt that Sasuke's team was probably surpassing him in strength by now. Finally, his frustration boiled over. I can't take this anymore. Hey, Pervy Sage, what's the deal? Why the heck aren't we training already? He yelled, his voice laced with agitation and righteous fury. The Toad Sannin halted, turned to face the exasperated boy, and simply replied, "You are not ready." He then resumed his walk as if nothing had happened. The Jinchuriki tugged at his hair in exasperation. What in the world do you mean I'm not ready, you old pervert? If I wasn't ready, why did you bring me with you in the first place? Honestly, he felt he would have made more progress with Kakashi-sensei at this stage, assuming, of course, that Kakashi was in the mood to teach. He couldn't help but think he was stuck with a pair of truly lazy instructors. Jiraiya stopped abruptly and turned back, a serious expression on his face. An awkward 5 minutes passed in complete silence. Naruto began to feel unnerved by the Sannin's intense stare and finally asked, "What? Why are you looking at me like that?" "Sit down, Naruto." Why do you want me to?" "Sit down." The Toad Sage's voice held a command and authority Naruto had seldom heard from him, prompting the boy to obey without question. Jiraiya sat opposite him, his hands folded and a solemn look on his face. He gazed at his naive godson and sighed. "Naruto, when I say you are not ready, I don't mean physically. I'm talking about your mental state. I don't believe you are mentally prepared for serious training, Naruto," he stated in a firm tone. The Jinchuriki looked at him, puzzled. "What do you mean I'm not mentally ready, Aro Sennin?" he asked. "Naruto, you're so fixated on living in this imaginary world of black and white, where everything is as simple as it seems. You fail to take the time to consider what reality truly is. You constantly ignore the obvious in favor of your own fantasies, and that's something I won't tolerate from any apprentice of mine," the Sannin explained. Seeing the blonde's continued confusion, the Toad Sage decided to elaborate. "Alright, let's discuss your teammates for a moment, starting with your precious Sasuke-chan." Noticing the young boy's apprehensive expression, Jiraiya sighed once more. This boy and his bonds, he thought to himself. "Tell me, why are you so determined to bring him back?" "Well, because, 1, he's my friend. 2, I promised Sakura-chan I would, and 3, he's lost and needs someone to guide him back to the right path," the blue-eyed blonde replied with conviction. "Do you honestly think he ever felt the same way about you and your other teammate?" "Of course he did." "Oh, really? You once told me you wanted to surpass Sasuke because he always called you the dead last and said you'd only get in his way, correct?" Jiraiya asked. When the younger boy nodded in confirmation, he continued, "So, Sasuke didn't like you when you were weak, but when you showed progress and growth, he challenged you to a fight to put you back in your rightful place as dead last." "That's not exactly what happened." "Why did he leave?" "He felt he wasn't getting stronger in the Hidden Leaf, and that Orochimaru team offered him the power he craved." "Not getting stronger?" Jiraiya questioned, stroking his chin with a hint of wonder and curiosity. "Did you know that the Chidori is one of the most powerful A-rank jutsu in the elemental nations, an assassination technique capable of destroying an opponent with a single perfect strike?" the Toad Sage asked the boy. "Yeah, I know just how powerful it is," the Jinchuriki said, touching his chest. He could still remember the feeling of that lightning jutsu piercing him, he sometimes even dreamed about it. "And I hear he was taught many fire jutsu and has a fully matured Sharingan, right?" "Yes. Are you honestly trying to tell me that having all those jutsu, plus more, in just 6 months didn't make Sasuke one of the most, if not the most, powerful genin in the elemental nations?" the Sannin pressed. "Well, he wants to be strong enough to defeat his brother. And Orochimaru is going to train him so effectively that he'll be able to defeat an S-rank shinobi within 6 months. Damn it, Aro Sennin, you don't get it." No, you don't get it. You claim this person is your friend and that he's just lost, but look at the facts, Naruto, everything points to the contrary," Jiraiya said in a serious tone. He doesn't like you when you're weak but resents your growth. Nobody in the village told Sasuke not to pursue his revenge or refuse to train him for it, yet for some reason, he decided there was no value in staying with the people who cared about him and would help him achieve his goals. He went and offered himself to a very dangerous criminal known for conducting disgusting experiments on helpless people. How sure are you that he won't follow the same path? Hey, Erosenin, I understand you don't like Sasuke very much, but that doesn't give you the right to compare him to someone like Orochimaru. Sasuke is different. Yes, he's obsessed with revenge, but he's not going to hurt helpless people because of it. You don't know him, we trained and even fought together, so I know Sasuke isn't going to turn into some deranged monster. Okay, the blonde Jinchuriki retorted angrily, defending his friend and glaring at his teacher. How dare Jiraiya say such things about Sasuke? He wasn't perfect, but that didn't make him a bad person. He truly disliked the direction this conversation was taking. The Toad Sage let out a mirthless chuckle. He was quite amused by this kid's occasional stupidity. He definitely didn't inherit his intelligence from Minato, that much was certain. Naruto, I was Orochimaru's teammate, I fought with him, fought against him, we played together, trained together, and ate together. If anything, the third Hokage preferred Orochimaru as a student more than Tsunade and me. Orochimaru was the third's prize pupil, he told his clueless student. The blue-eyed Jinchuriki's eyes widened at this revelation. That was the last thing he expected to hear. The third Hokage preferred training Oro team? That's just like Kakashi and Sasuke. So you finally understand now. Orochimaru was my best friend, Naruto. Never in my life did I imagine he would turn out the way he did. So even though you don't want to hear this, I'm going to tell you because you need to hear this. He moved closer and placed his right hand on Naruto's shoulder. Sasuke drove a Chidori into your chest, Naruto, and you and I both know that if it weren't for the Nine Tails, he would have killed you multiple times in that battle. You, his so-called best friend, he was willing to kill just because you stood in the way of his revenge. What do you think he'll do to a complete stranger he doesn't care about just for the sake of his revenge? He asked, looking directly at the boy. Naruto looked down, unable to find a way to defend his friend. Would Sasuke really become like Orochimaru? He didn't want to believe such things, but how could I ever be Hokage if I can't even save a friend? Naruto asked his master. Have you ever been to the shinobi cemetery? Yeah. Do you know how most of those shinobi died? On missions. Kakashi-sensei says they're part of a group labeled Kia, which stands for Killed in Action, he replied. Well, the Hokage is the one who sent all of them on those missions, Naruto. Sometimes they knew the chances of survival were minimal, and some of those people were friends, relatives, or even neighbors of the Hokage, but they did it anyway. Being Hokage doesn't mean you can save or protect everyone, Naruto. If that's what you believe, then you'd better get used to disappointments because it's simply not possible, the legendary shinobi explained. The younger shinobi continued to look down, deep in thought about what he had just been told. He never expected his desire to save people would be challenged in this way. What was he supposed to do now? He didn't think he was capable of abandoning his brother to the wolves, but wasn't this what Sasuke wanted? Look, Naruto, I'm not telling you to give up on saving your friend. All I'm saying is that you should be cautious about the people you choose to associate with. Just because he's your first friend doesn't mean he's a good person. Trust me, I should know. So then, what am I supposed to do, Erosenin? The boy asked, for the first time in his life questioning his own convictions. To be honest, that's a choice you have to make, Naruto. I just don't want you to make that choice simply because you're choosing to be blind to certain things. My advice is to think about it long and hard, the white-haired man replied. Okay, good. Now, let's talk about your other teammate. Naruto visibly flinched at the mention of her. Was he about to be hit with another dose of reality? She's the one you claim to love, right? Jiraiya asked with an amused look. Hey, I don't just claim to love her, I do love Sakura-chan, the Jinchuriki responded with an offended expression. Jiraiya facepalmed, remembering this scene all too well. Ah, young love, so simple, so naive, so foolish. Really? Why do you love Sakura-chan, then? The Toad Sage asked, his arms folded. Naruto offered his customary smile at the question, finally something he could easily answer. He held up his hand, showing Jiraiya all 5 fingers, and began counting them off as he gave his reasons. 1. She's smart. 2. She's cute. 3. She's strong. Scratch that. 3. MMH, she's competitive. 4. She's she's, damn it, I just love her, okay? Jiraiya laughed at his godson, earning a mean glare in return. This conversation was all too familiar, he had had similar talks with his own sensei, Hiruzen Sarutobi, many times. Okay, so there's no solid reason, you just love her. But let me ask you this, do you truly believe she is right for you, Naruto? He asked his incredibly dense student. Of course I do. I mean, I know she has a thing for Sasuke right now, but I'll make her fall in love with me someday, the Jinchuriki responded, his confidence fully restored. It's nice that you're so confident about that, but that's not what I asked. It's easy to fall in love, Naruto, but that doesn't mean the person you love is right for you. I've seen the way she treats you and interacts with you most of the time, and to be honest, that's not someone who is interested in you at all, the Sennin said sagely. Naruto's spirits sank once again. What was wrong with this day? Normally, he would dispute anyone who challenged his beliefs and abilities, but this time felt different. Could it be that his subconscious already knew this, and he had simply chosen to ignore it? Naruto, no one is telling you to give up on your love. If you feel that your love is real and strong enough to withstand all the heartbreaks and rejections, then by all means, go for it. I know I have. I just don't want you to miss a wonderful opportunity with a great girl who truly loves you. You deserve to be happy, the self-proclaimed super pervert said, trying to cheer the boy up while also offering some sound advice. Naruto remained quiet, looking as though he was about to say something but instead wore a rare, saddened expression. But after a minute of silence, he finally voiced his thoughts. What if no one will ever love me that way, Sennin? What then, the Jinchuriki asked. He genuinely dreaded the idea of living his entire life alone, with no wife or children. He had spent countless hours contemplating what his future would be like. Given his situation in the village, it was quite possible that no girl would ever give him a chance. That was one of the biggest reasons he was fighting so hard to be acknowledged. It wasn't just to become Hokage, but also to give himself a chance at a better future. Jiraiya winced internally when he heard how discouraged his students sounded. Were these the kid's thoughts when he wasn't putting on a mask or when he was alone? The villagers had truly done a number on his self-esteem, and Jiraiya had never felt more ashamed for abandoning him than he did at that moment. Don't think about depressing things like that, Naruto. I'm sure there's a girl out there who loves you or will love you with all her heart. Naruto snorted, finding that highly unlikely. Oh yeah? Like who? I don't know. Tell me about all the girls you know really well. Okay. Well, there's Sakura-chan, who we've already talked about. There's Tenten, but I don't know her very well. Ino, who is really annoying and very shallow. And Hinata, who is kind of weird, she's really shy and likes to faint when I'm near her. I think she's sick or something. Oh, and she also adopted my ninja way and even encouraged me to beat her cousin at the Chunin exams, so that's pretty cool. Plus, sometimes I think she follows me around when she doesn't think I'm paying attention, which is really weird, the clueless blonde replied. Jiraiya just slapped his forehead in exasperation. God, this kid was dense. Minato was too, but never this dense. So let me get this straight, this Hinata faints only when she's around you, never around other boys. Naruto nodded. She adopted your ninja way. He nodded again. Gave you the confidence to beat her own cousin? Another nod. And likes to follow you around. He nodded once more, still completely oblivious. Jiraiya mumbled something about dense, clueless blondes and said, tell me something, when you take all those facts and really think about them, what sort of conclusion do you come up with about Hinata? He hesitated. I don't. Think about it, Naruto. Really think about it, the gallant man urged in a firm tone. Naruto had no clue what his sensei was hinting at, but it was worth a shot. Okay, so Hinata was a remarkably shy girl, that much was common knowledge. She could speak to almost anyone except him, she stuttered constantly, and she fainted whenever he was nearby. Still bizarre, but why him, specifically? Why not Sasuke? Wait a minute, during their time at the academy, when a rumor circulated that Sasuke preferred girls with long hair, Hinata had kept her own short. She never tried to get Sasuke's attention like the other girls, but that might just be because she was too timid to approach him. Then again, she always seemed to focus her attention on him, and she never once laughed when he failed to perform a jutsu. She blushed a lot and had even tried to help him cheat during the Chunin exams. She had adopted his own personal ninja way and had encouraged him before the exams when she should have been rooting for the other side. What about all those times on missions when she, after a solid 5 minutes of the blonde genuinely contemplating something probably for the first time in his life, he jolted as if he had just made a monumental discovery. Hinata likes me. What the hell? But how is that even possible? How did I not notice that? Wait a minute, does that mean she has loved me since the academy? He exclaimed in his usual high-pitched voice, utterly in disbelief. Probably, Jiraiya responded calmly. The boy scrutinized his master's face, searching for any hint of deceit, but found only sincerity. Abruptly, he stood up, grabbed his backpack, and began marching in the direction of Konoha, shouting, I have to get to the bottom of this. He didn't get far, however, as Jiraiya grabbed him by the back of the head and turned him around. Oh yeah? And what are you going to say to Hinata when she confirms it, I wonder, he asked. It's just that, first I find out my best friend is a potential criminal, then it turns out the girl I thought I was in love with is bad for me, and now this. If I missed things that were this obvious, what else did I miss that was important? The Kyuubi Jinchuriki replied, frustrated with himself. He knew he was never the sharpest kunao in the pouch, but this was beyond annoying. How was it possible to be so incredibly stupid and blind? Well, you missed the fact that you come from a prestigious clan, that a cage bunchin transfers its memories to the original, allowing you to learn things faster, and that you're the Kyuubi Jinchuriki, Jiraiya said, wanting to get all the revelations out in one go. Having fully absorbed his sensei's words, Naruto looked at him with tears welling up in his eyes, looking heartbroken as if someone he cared about had just passed away. The blonde had never appeared so dejected. Everything his teacher had just told him about had been right in front of him, but he was just too foolish to notice a single thing. Am I really that stupid? He asked in a voice that was almost broken. He honestly didn't feel so confident in himself anymore. No wonder everyone called him an idiot, he really was one. How could he be so blind, so dense, so stupid? This time, tears began to stream down his face. He had been so obsessed with his own fantasies that he missed the simple truth standing right in front of him. What kind of shinobi was he? What kind of person was he? What kind of Hokage would he be? Did he even deserve to be Hokage? He honestly didn't know anymore. Jiraiya watched his godson become more dispirited by the minute. He placed his hand on the Jinchuriki's shoulder once again and said, "No, you are not stupid, Naruto, you." "Yes, I am," Naruto barked, interrupting him. He roughly pushed Jiraiya's hand away. "I was the dead last at the academy, everyone calls me a knucklehead or just an idiot, I'm so dense that I miss the simplest things, and I'm weak. Kami, I'm weak," he continued, tears freely flowing. "Naruto, calm down. Oh, please, you and I both know it. Every fight I've been in, I would have lost or worse, died, if it wasn't for the Kyuubi. Haku, Niji, Gaara, and Suzuki, all of them could have killed me if it weren't for this damn fox in my gut," Naruto said, laughing sarcastically and running his hands through his hair. "And to think I've been so arrogant about being so strong and becoming Hokage one day. Ha ha. I'm nowhere near as strong as I think I am," he continued. "Naruto, I know you're disappointed in yourself, but you have to understand that." "Ha, disappointed? I'm a goddamn joke, Jiraiya, a dead last. I'm a..." "Naruto, enough. Look, I know it's not easy finding out important things about your life like this, especially when they were all right in front of you, but you have to understand that not all of it is your fault. A lot of people, myself included, played a part in what you're going through. We could have at least tried to talk to you about these things, but we didn't. But trust me, the worst thing you can do in life is look at the past with resentment and regret. Instead of whining about it, why don't you think about what you're going to do now that you're no longer ignorant? Focus on the present and future, not the past," Naruto, the older, more experienced shinobi, advised. "Okay," Naruto replied, though he didn't sound very convinced. "Look, take some time to think about everything we've talked about, and when your mind is clear, we can start your real training," Jiraiya ordered, standing up. "There's a small town nearby. Let's hurry so we can find a motel to sleep in," he said, already leaping into the trees. A few days later, motel room. The last few days had been very strange for Jiraiya. Not that he was too surprised, but Naruto had been unusually quiet ever since their talk. The blonde mostly kept to himself, only speaking when spoken to. Introspective would be a more accurate word to describe him at the moment, a word he never thought he would ever associate with his hyperactive student. The Sunin had given the boy a couple of books to read, and he hadn't complained or thrown a childish tantrum, he simply did as he was told. He shouldn't be surprised, though, Naruto had a knack for doing the unexpected and completely surprising his doubters. The Toad Sage was just glad that the boy wasn't completely self-loathing. Of course, his self-esteem was still low, but the Jinchuriki was at least trying to curb his ignorance. Because of this, Jiraiya was confident that it wouldn't be long before his usual confidence returned, perhaps this time as genuine confidence and not a mere facade. "Hey, Aro-Sennin, can I ask you something?" Naruto said, initiating a conversation for the first time in days, while looking at the older man. "You're never going to stop calling me that, are you?" Jiraiya asked with feigned anger. When the younger man continued to look at him with a blank expression, the Sunin's shoulders slumped, and he mumbled something about disrespectful brats. "Sure, ask away. A few days ago, you said that I belonged to a prestigious clan. I didn't ask about it then, but now I want to know. Which clan are you talking about?" the blonde asked curiously. "Already paying attention to the important conversations, huh? Well, good for you, you're learning." Naruto offered a small smile at the praise. "Well, you see, the spiral symbol on the back of your clothes and the Konoha shinobi uniforms is the symbol of the Uzumaki clan, a powerful, peace-loving clan that excelled in the sealing arts and also possessed strong chakra and even stronger life force. They were the only clan in the elemental nations that had their own village, the village hidden in the whirlpools, and they were Konoha's closest ally. That's why we wear their symbol on our backs, to honor their memory," the Sunin explained. "Well, what happened to them? How come I've never heard anyone talk about them?" Unfortunately, in this world, while strength is respected, it is also feared. The Uzumaki's skill in Fuinjutsu made them incredibly dangerous, and a lot of villages felt threatened by them, so they banded together and attacked them, completely destroying them in the Second Shinobi War. Naruto couldn't help but frown at the news. What kind of people would attack someone simply because they were stronger? Why not just train themselves to become stronger instead? This line of thought brought Sasuke back to his mind. The Uchiha had tried to do the same thing to him. The moment he showed an increase in strength, Sasuke became jealous and even tried to put him back in his place. Sasuke could have easily trained harder to reassert himself as the strongest genin on Team 7, but he didn't. Perhaps he didn't want to be stronger than him, maybe he just wanted Naruto to be weaker instead. He still felt the need to save the Uchiha from himself, but he couldn't help but wonder if it was even worth it. He was going to deal with the Sasuke issue, that's for sure. Listen, Kiki, I'm sorry you lost your clan before you even got to meet them, but this should teach you just how cruel the shinobi world truly is. Villages don't care about how righteous you are, they only care about strength and how much of it you have. Shinobi villages, especially the Big Five, don't like the idea of any small village rivaling their dominance in the elemental nations, but they did nothing wrong to them. How can anyone be that cruel? How can anyone wish to destroy an entire village just because they're good at something? The Jinchuriki said angrily, unable to comprehend what he had just heard. That's just the way it is, sad but true. That's why you need to learn, Naruto. You say you want to be Hokage, right? Then you need to understand this world and how it works if you're going to make a positive difference, the Sannin advised wisely. Naruto looked at his master for a few seconds, appearing to be contemplating asking him something. It seemed that look did not go unnoticed by Jiraiya, who asked, "What is it? Do you really think I can do it?" "Hokage, do you really think I can be Hokage?" the young blonde asked with a bit of hesitation and self-doubt in his voice. Jiraiya looked at his godson with a straight face, but inside, he couldn't help but feel worried for him. This was not like Naruto. Usually, if you reprimanded him for something, he would just shrug it off and vow to do better next time. But this time was different. It was as if he had just discovered that he was living a lie. In some ways, he was. "Yes, I think you have all the capabilities in the world to be Hokage someday," he answered truthfully. Naruto offered him a small smile, his heart filled with relief and happiness. This was the first time anyone had ever openly expressed belief in his dream of becoming Hokage. Sure, some people had encouraged him to do things, but this was the very first time anyone had said they believed in his dream. He placed his hand on his chest, still smiling a genuine smile, and looked at his teacher. "Thank you, Jiraiya," the legendary shinobi responded with a smile of his own. "No problem, Gaki. You know, over the past couple of days, I've been thinking a lot about a lot of things, and I realized the only reason I wanted to be Hokage in the first place was so that everyone would love and accept me. When I was young, I always saw how everyone in the village talked to, praised, and even worshipped the old man, and so I decided that I wanted the same. I thought being Hokage would get me the same treatment," the blonde said, giving a bitter smile as he thought about his foolishness. "You know, other than protecting the village, I have no idea what the Hokage actually does," he finished. "What about now? I don't know. I guess I just need some more time to think about my life, you know. I want to make sure that whatever I decide to do in the future isn't just because I want to find my own self-worth," he replied. "Good. You have your whole life ahead of you, take all the time you need. Just remember that I'm here for you for whatever you need." The spiky blonde nodded in response. "Hey, I just realized that you said my clan had its own village and was destroyed long before I was born. So how did I end up in Konoha?" Naruto asked, hoping this would finally reveal something about his parents. At that, Jiraiya's demeanor suddenly shifted to nervousness. He knew where this conversation was heading. In fact, he had been dreading it ever since he met the kid. "Well, you see, since the Uzumaki clan were allies of the Hidden Leaf, they helped each other with everything: war, medical ninjutsu, seals, business, and even, Jinchuriki." "What?" The first Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi, Mito Uzumaki, the wife of the first Hokage, was getting old. It was only a matter of time before she would eventually die, so the Kyuubi needed a new host, or it would have broken free. Since the Uzumaki possess a strong life force and even stronger chakra, the clan had accepted Konoha's request for a new container and sent his daughter right before the war broke out. She was made the new Jinchuriki and then later got married and had you, the Toad Sage explained. "So you know who they are?" "My parents, you know who my parents are?" Naruto asked. Yeah, I know who they are," Jiraiya responded, scratching his head. "Well, who are they?" the Jinchuriki asked with unrestrained excitement in his voice. The self-proclaimed super pervert laughed nervously, unsure how his godson would react to his answer. "Haha, Minatone Mikaze and Kushina Uzumaki." "What? I didn't hear you." "Your mother was Kushina Uzumaki, a very beautiful, I just realized, you have some insane pedigree." Jiraiya, the white-haired man sighed, he might as well just get it over with. "Your mother is Kushina Uzumaki, a very beautiful, very wild hurricane. Honestly, that woman was as scary as she was beautiful. Anyway, your father is someone you know very well, someone the entire elemental nations knew and feared. He's a war hero and he was also my student, a student I loved like a son, Minato Namikaze," he finally said. Naruto's eyes widened. What the hell? Minato is. Are you telling me that my father is the fourth Hokage? Yeah. What? He couldn't believe it. How could it be possible? The fourth Hokage was the most famous shinobi in the world, a village hero. The fourth Hokage is the shinobi. But, what the fuck? How many people know about this? Naruto asked, giving his teacher a piercing look. Naruto. How many? The third, Tsunade, the council, Kakashi, possibly more. So you all knew, but not a single person wanted to tell me, the Jinchuriki asked with so much venom in his voice that his eyes had turned to slits. Naruto, calm down. Fuck that. You bastards knew who I was, who my parents are, all along, but you just decided to ignore it and pretend like you don't know anything. The Jinchuriki's anger boiled over, and he roared, his teeth, nails, and whiskers elongating as a single tail of the Kyuubi's chakra sprouted behind him. Naruto, calm down, Jiraiya said, moving toward the boy with a restraining seal ready in his hand. For so long, I've wanted to know who my parents were, what family I belonged to, anything at all that could give me an identity, anything that would make me feel less alone. And it turns out everyone else knew all along. You all knew who I was, but you chose not to tell me. You were laughing and smiling at me, but behind my back, you were spitting at me and laughing at me, the blonde snarled, dropping to all fours, bloodlust radiating from him. Naruto, you need to listen to. I'm going to kill you, the Jinchuriki shrieked, lunging at his godfather. Fortunately, the Sunin was prepared. He swiftly dodged his student's attack, then used the Shunshin to appear beside him and slapped the restraining seal onto his forehead. Naruto struggled to remove the seal, but Jiraiya held him firmly on the motel floor while the seal did its work. The struggle lasted for about a minute until all of the Kyuubi's chakra was absorbed by the seal. Naruto, I'm sorry you had to find out this way, but you have to understand. We did it for your own good. Your father had too many enemies. If anyone had found out who you were, you would have been killed long ago, Jiraiya said, attempting to calm his student. Great, that explains why you didn't tell everyone else. I'm more concerned about why you didn't tell me. You didn't trust me. You all kept me in the dark about my mother, father, clan, and heritage simply because you all didn't trust me. Jiraiya gave his wayward godson a deadpan look and responded in the same vein. Really? Are you actually surprised? I'm not trying to offend you, but you're not exactly the quietest person in the world, Naruto. Plus, you've been trying to get the village's attention since you were 5. Are you seriously trying to tell me you wouldn't have told them about your relationship with Minato during your many attention-seeking activities? Naruto fell silent, choosing not to respond. As much as he hated to admit it, he knew Jiraiya had a point. He wouldn't have wasted a second telling people that Minato was his father. He would have probably stood on top of the Hokage monument and screamed it at the top of his lungs. The white-haired son inside, looking at his godson. Man, this kid's life was so messed up. If the circumstances were different, nothing would have been kept from you. Trust me, Minato knew what he was doing when he made the decision to make you a Jinchuriki. But when he did it, he hoped you would be seen as a hero, a jailer of the tailed beast that had almost destroyed the village. Naruto snorted and responded sarcastically, a hint of bitterness in his voice, and we know how well that turned out. What a genius. Jiraiya hit a wince. He couldn't say he was surprised by the resentment he saw on his student's face. Even though he didn't intend for it to happen this way, Minato got all the praise and adoration while his son got the short end of the stick. Man, this was going to be a long couple of days. Can you take me there? To where my mother was born. I want to see it, the blonde Jinchuriki said, pulling Jiraiya out of his thoughts. The Sunin responded with a broad smile, grateful for the change of subject. Sure thing, Gaki. We'll start early tomorrow. This little village has some really blessed and talented babes. I want to do some more research tonight, the super pervert said with a lecherous grin. Naruto gave his master a disgusted look. I hope one of them gives you syphilis and herpes. They can try. As Jiraiya was about to leave the room, the Jinchuriki stopped him, his face showing that he wanted to ask something truly important. What is it, Gaki? One last thing before you go, why did you choose to train me? I mean, I know you train my father and all, but that doesn't necessarily mean you're obligated to train me as well. So why are you really training me, Jiraiya? The cerulean-eyed boy asked with curiosity on his face. Oh fuck. Jiraiya suddenly found himself in the same predicament he was in just a few minutes ago. This kid was surely going to kill him this time. Well, at least he couldn't say he didn't deserve it. Do you remember when I said that I loved Minato like a son? The Toad Sage asked with a mix of nervousness and fear in his tone. The Jinchuriki nodded, and he continued, well, it turns out Minato and Kushina reciprocated those feelings because when they were expecting you, they named me your, godfather. What, so this was his ancestral home? The place where his mother, grandparents, cousins, uncles, his entire clan lived. His body trembled slightly as he took a few steps away from Jiraiya. At this point, the Kyuubi Jinchuriki hadn't even registered his presence. He was simply overwhelmed with emotion at seeing what was left of his clan's home. It seemed that going to Konoha had saved his mother's life. Naruto couldn't help but imagine what it would have been like if he had grown up here, in a place where he wouldn't be an outsider, an outcast, or a demon brat, as some would call him. A place where he wouldn't have been looked at with hateful eyes. Now there was nothing left. Just ruins. Jealousy and fear had driven some people to destroy this beautiful home of his. How cruel people could be. "How are you feeling?" Jiraiya asked quietly, even though he already had a good idea of what must have been going through the young boy's mind. "I feel lost," Naruto answered simply. "My father was a Hokage, my mother was the Uzumaki clan head's daughter, my clan was the sister clan of the Senju, which means I was distantly related to 4 of the past 5 Hokage, the other Hokage treated me like one of his grandsons, my godfather is a Sunin, my Jonin sensei is Kakashi the copy ninja, and my teammate was one of the last Uchiha. With all these connections, anyone else would be living the life of some noble prince, but somehow, with me." Naruto spoke, then looked at his godfather and continued, "My parents are dead, my clan was slaughtered, our home is left in ruins, the village they served despises me, my godfather abandoned me, my friend drove a Chidori through my chest, and everyone else knows so many important things about me but was more than happy to keep quiet and preferred to watch from a distance as I suffered." Jiraiya looked away from his student, not knowing what to say. Everything Naruto was saying was true, and it brought him great shame to admit it. He could have easily given him a happier childhood, free of loneliness, depression, and scorn. But he didn't. His cowardice prevented Naruto from getting everything he deserved. Kushina and Minato must have been rolling in their graves with anger and hatred. The Toad Sunin looked away from his student with deep regret and shame in his heart. He wasn't fit to call himself the boy's godfather. "But do you know what the worst part of all this is?" the Jinchuriki asked his master, not really expecting an answer. "All my life, I've been living a lie, and I think most of it has been my fault. I've spent my entire life trying to gain people's love and affection so much that I've somehow managed to delude myself into living in some fantasy world. Maybe I've always hated the villagers of Konoha. Maybe I've always held self-loathing. Maybe I'm just another hateful human being, more hateful than Gaara ever was. Maybe I've been like this all my life, and I've been running from the facts all along. I don't know who I am, Jiraiya, I'm lost," Naruto finished, wiping away the tears from his eyes. A few minutes of silence passed, with both master and student contemplating what Naruto had just said. Jiraiya sat down and motioned for the young boy to do the same. The Sunin sighed and said, "Listen, I cannot pretend to know or even understand your pain. Your childhood has given you more hardships and trials than anything I could ever imagine, and admittedly, it was only made worse by my absence. But just as you've done so much in your life, you have to look at the positives here." Naruto scoffed and asked, skepticism bleeding into his tone, "Really? Well, then do tell me what positives I have going for me at the moment." "Well, first of all, you don't have much to lose at the moment. Any person in this situation sooner or later realizes that they have everything to gain. The world is at your feet, Naruto. Your dreams, your clan's former glory, your love, and so much more, all those things are right in front of you, and it's up to you to decide which path you want to take. And secondly, you may not have had anyone in the past, but now I'm here for you, Naruto, and I swear on everything I hold dear that this time, I will not abandon you," Jiraiya responded, finishing his sentence in a firm tone. The young Jinchuriki looked his master in the eyes, trying to find some sort of deception in his words, but the older man did not waver. After about a minute of the staring contest, the Jinchuriki finally gave him a small, genuine smile, which was returned. Naruto then turned his gaze to the destroyed buildings and temples. He took a few steps toward a broken wall with the Uzumaki insignia on it, and he placed his hand on it, trying to wipe away the dust that had accumulated on it. His clan, his family, his village, his heritage, his home, his identity. "You know, I don't know if I truly want to become Hokage or not, or even if trying to get Sasuke back is worth it or not, but this," Naruto said, pointing at his clan's emblem, "I will fight for this, my clan, my fallen family, my heritage. I will fight for it, and I will make sure that the Uzumaki name is great again," he finished with fire and determination in both his tone and expression. The young Uzumaki felt his sensei's hand on his shoulder and a whisper close to his ear, saying, "You have to be strong in order to accomplish that. Don't you worry, Arrow Sennin. By the time we're done with this training trip, I'll be beating your ass black and blue, and I won't even need the Kyuubi for that." Scoff, as if. "Oh yeah. Just watch me, you old pervert. My old man will be wishing he was me from the grave." 1 week later. "Alright, Naruto, before we start with the training, we need to first address your strengths and weaknesses," Jiraiya said as he stopped walking and sat down on the grass. They had finally found a good clearing to begin the young Jinchuriki's training. "Firstly, your weaknesses, your taijutsu is average at best. I've seen your fights a couple of times and I've noticed that you usually fight like a brawler. Your opponents easily overwhelm you in taijutsu, so you use the Kage Bunshin to try to retaliate and cover your area of weakness. Your ninjutsu is excellent for a genin, but the way you use it is what bothers me. You haven't fully mastered the Raise Non, you misused the Kage Bunshin, and you have never bothered to summon the toads to help with your training. You have no knowledge of Genjutsu to speak of, Fuinjutsu is basically non-existent, you completely missed the basics, and your chakra control completely sucks. The Sunin said this seriously, and Naruto frowned at the revelation. He hadn't expected to have so many weaknesses. As for strengths, your unpredictability is a huge asset to have as a shinobi, and thankfully, you have that in abundance. You have more than enough chakra and stamina, even without the Kyuubi, and you have the unique ability to talk your enemies out of their edginess, he finished with a smile. Great, so my greatest strengths are that I'm a walking battery that never shuts up, Naruto said with frustration and annoyance. If you want to look at it that way, then, yeah. Naruto groaned at his master's response. This was going to be harder than he expected. Guess we have a lot of things to cover then. Yep. You still remember what I told you about the Kage Bunshin? Yeah, I do. I even checked it out. Good, then make about 200 clones so we can get started. Naruto was all too happy to comply. He was finally getting the training he had wanted ever since he became a shinobi. Alright, separate them into 2 groups. Jiraiya waited for the Jinchuriki to complete his instructions before he also created 2 clones. Okay, so this group will work on chakra control, and the other one will work on improving the ninjutsu you already have in your arsenal. You will have to master them and know how and when to properly use them before I teach you more ninjutsu. My clones will be there to watch over and give further instructions if need be, Jiraiya instructed. The real Naruto looked at his master and asked, what will I be doing? Make 5 more clones. You need to learn. Have your clones study these books, Jiraiya said, taking some books out of a scroll. While your clones are busy with other things, you and I will work on your taijutsu and your calligraphy, he finished. Months later, Naruto dodged a punch to his face before jumping over a kick aimed at his midsection from his opponent. His opponent rushed toward him once again, their long yet spiky white hair billowing in the soft breeze. Entering his stance once more, he prepared to defend himself. His opponent threw a fist at his face, which he dodged, following up with another kick to Naruto's gut. The blonde blocked it but was pushed backward from the force of the kick. Sticking to the surface of the water, the blonde skidded across it, creating a small wave-like path as he disturbed the serene waters. He came to a stop as a loose wall of water rose from behind him, and he smacked softly into it. Regaining his bearings, he saw an axe kick descending toward him from his opponent. The blonde rolled out of the way before attempting to take out his opponent's legs with a low kick, which the man leaped over. Charging toward his opponent, a wave-like trail of water rushing behind him, he engaged him in a bout of taijutsu. The two were mere blurs to the naked eye as they clashed against one another, throwing punches and kicks at speeds that were impressive to watch. Naruto twisted his body in a 180-degree motion as he sent a roundhouse kick toward his opponent, which was blocked, before following it up with another long kick that connected with his opponent's chest, albeit with the metal armor covering them taking the brunt of the attack. His opponent responded with a knee to the gut and a kick to the face of the blonde, which he blocked with both of his arms. Leaping backward to put some space between himself and his opponent, Naruto took stock of his current situation. He and Jiraiya were engaged in a sparring match on the water, and the blonde was looking worse for wear. He was bruised and battered, and hunger gnawed at him, though that could wait. The weights he was wearing didn't make things any easier, hindering his movements and speed. He panted heavily, a stream of sweat tracing a path down his face, a testament to the strenuous workout. It had been 5.5 months since his training with Jiraiya had started, and it had only grown more intense each day. With every passing day, his perverted sensei would introduce a new obstacle or a ridiculous rule that put him at a disadvantage or handicapped him, like the one they were currently engaged in. The man had decided to add weights to his clothing, and now the blonde was not only fighting the redhead but was also fighting with every muscle fiber in his body to prevent himself from sinking into the cold water below. This was another one of Jiraiya's self-created training exercises, where he had to stand and spar on the water while wearing 150 pounds of weighted metal plates all over his body. Although it was troublesome, the effects and results of this particular exercise were extraordinary and astonishing, making it well worth the effort. It not only significantly improved his chakra control but also went a long way toward increasing his speed, endurance, and strength. The blonde was quite pleased with how much he had progressed from just the basics of physical training. That, however, didn't mean he neglected his studies, spiritual, and cognitive training. No, he read every book and scroll he could get his hands on to improve his grammar and vocabulary, and Jiraiya also dedicated some of his time to teaching him calligraphy. The blonde recognized that the efficiency, control, calm, and elegance that went into the art calmed him down significantly. Naruto dodged his opponent's punch, retaliating with one of his own that connected with his opponent's face. Instead of the opponent reeling on the ground in pain, they simply puffed out of existence in a cloud of smoke. The blonde silently praised the genius who had developed the jutsu, whether used by his opponent or not. He could not deny that it was arguably the greatest jutsu ever created. Unlike the Bunshin no Jutsu, which had been a bane of his existence during his short time at Konoha's academy, this jutsu favored high chakra usage and practically no chakra control at all, the former of which he had in spades and the latter of which he had impeccably improved. His thoughts, however, were interrupted when Jiraiya appeared, delivering a brutal axe kick to his shoulder. Instead of wincing, he simply grinned and made the rat hand sign. Super explosive clone jutsu, he said, exploding in a huge burst. As the real Naruto panted heavily, he couldn't help but feel a sense of dread creeping up inside him. He knew full well that the Jiraiya he had blown up was also a clone, and if the past few months were any indication, he was in for a world of hurt if he dropped his guard for even a moment. Since he had started this serious training 6 months ago, he had finally understood why Jiraiya was so feared and respected throughout the elemental nations. The Sudden did not allow Naruto to gain any false confidence in anything they did. He would tear down the Jinchuriki piece by piece, give him a brutal beatdown, and admonish him for making foolish mistakes. All in all, Naruto had finally understood that if Jiraiya was taking anything seriously, mediocrity was not accepted. All of a sudden, Naruto felt his feet being dragged deep underwater. He tried to fight it off but was met with a brutal uppercut for his troubles, sending him flying upward. He quickly formed a Rasengan in his right hand, knowing that Jiraiya would appear. Just as he predicted, the Sunin appeared above the Jinchuriki and quickly caught the hand holding the A-rank jutsu. The man brutally punched the boy in the stomach, making him spit out some blood, then pummeled him to the ground. The force of the attack was enough to send Naruto crashing back into the water. "That's enough for now," Jiraiya said with a small smile, obviously happy with his student's progress so far. 2 years later, Naruto leaped back, avoiding a punch from Jiraiya that slammed into the ground, creating a small crater. Naruto dashed forward while the Sunin's fist was still planted on the ground. He swung his right foot, attempting to land a kick on Jiraiya's face. Jiraiya sensed the attack and looked up. He positioned both his hands and blocked the kick. The kick had so much force that it pushed Jiraiya back and made him wince. Naruto continued his assault by raising his other foot. He swung it and attempted a roundhouse kick at his opponent. The kick came at Jiraiya with so much speed that he could not avoid it. His hands were still recovering from Naruto's previous kick. He only managed to get one hand up to block the kick. It was not enough, as the kick sent him flying. Naruto didn't give Jiraiya time to recover as he appeared above him. He applied wind chakra to his fist, preparing for a bone-cracking punch. He punched Jiraiya in the chest, sending him crashing down like a bullet. As soon as Jiraiya hit the ground with a loud crash, Naruto noticed that something was wrong. Jiraiya was too powerful and experienced to be caught that easily. Genjutsu? Naruto thought to himself. He made a single-hand seal, Kai, he muttered, dispelling the illusion. He sensed something from behind. Spinning around, Naruto saw Jiraiya dashing at him at high speed. Naruto could do nothing as Jiraiya's knee crashed into his gut. Jiraiya added to the assault with a powerful punch to Naruto's face. The punch sent Naruto flying. Naruto recovered quickly before he hit anything and flipped in midair. He landed on the ground in a crouched position before standing up and looking at Jiraiya impassively. "It seems I'm still having some trouble with genjutsu if I was caught that easily," Naruto stated. Jiraiya nodded. "You are getting good at detecting it, though," he commented. It was indeed true, Naruto had become good at detecting his illusions. When they started training, Naruto had no skills in genjutsu. He could be caught in one for the whole day and still not be able to recognize that he had been trapped. Naruto said nothing more. There was no need for him to say anything, but he made a mental note to work on genjutsu later on. He got into his taijutsu stance and prepared to face Jiraiya once again. Both opponents ran toward each other and clashed in the middle. Jiraiya attempted a high roundhouse kick at Naruto. Naruto saw the attack coming and crouched down, dodging Jiraiya's kick. He spun around and attempted a leg sweep on Jiraiya. Jiraiya was too experienced to be caught by something like that. Thus, he jumped up, avoiding Naruto's leg sweep. While still in the air, Jiraiya flashed through hand seals, gathering enough chakra for his jutsu. Fire style, Great Fireball. A large fireball expelled from Jiraiya's mouth and raced down at Naruto, who was still in a crouched position. The flames hit Naruto and consumed him before dying down. Jiraiya was on alert, knowing that something like that would not put Naruto down, despite him firing the jutsu at close range. He was not disappointed as Naruto charged at him from behind. He quickly spun around to block a kick aimed at his head. Another Naruto appeared behind Jiraiya and threw a number of shurikens at the Sunin's back. The Naruto who had attempted to kick Jiraiya disappeared in a puff of smoke. Jiraiya realized that it had just been a distraction. He quickly used a substitution technique to avoid the shurikens that were undoubtedly going to pierce his back. A log appeared in his place, taking the hits that were meant for him. Naruto narrowed his eyes, searching for his sensei. He did not have to wait long as a bundle of shurikens flew toward him at high speed. Naruto gathered the wind around him and mixed it with his own chakra. Wind release, wind palm. Gusts of wind sped toward the shurikens. The two attacks met, and Naruto's jutsu propelled the shurikens away from him. The gusts of wind continued to make their way toward Jiraiya, who simply leaped away. Naruto went through a number of hand signs. As he did that, the wind around him turned into at least 20 wind shurikens that were spinning around him. Wind release, wind shuriken. The wind shuriken sped at the unmoving form of Jiraiya. He knew that the shurikens were sharp and could leave a few gashes if they hit him. He had seen the attack before, and it would be nasty if he were to be hit. As soon as the wind shurikens got into touching distance with Jiraiya, he disappeared in a perfectly timed body flicker. Naruto cancelled his technique and looked to where Jiraiya had disappeared. Earth-style, instant earthquake. Naruto barely had a chance to defend himself when the ground he was standing on suddenly opened up and swallowed him whole, crushing him in the process. Jiraiya, seeing his student seemingly get crushed by the small earthquake, simply stretched his sensing abilities. The Sunin knew full well that while that attack could have easily killed any Jonin, his student was far too unpredictable and too resilient to allow himself to lose a battle like that. Jiraiya's thoughts were interrupted when he heard the blonde say, Earth-style, projection fish-style jutsu. Naruto performed his jutsu while he was underground and attempted to pull Jiraiya into the ground, but the Sunin reacted faster and jumped away, avoiding the jutsu. His relief was short-lived when the blonde appeared above him holding a very, very dangerous jutsu that was making screeching noises. Wind-style, Raisin Shuriken, the blonde said and threw the jutsu at Jiraiya. The Sunin's eyes widened in panic. For the first time in a long time, Jiraiya was actually afraid for his life. The Raisin Shuriken was nothing to scoff at, he knew exactly the kind of damage that the jutsu was capable of. He had labeled it an S-rank jutsu for a reason. In an act of desperation, the Toad Sage created a Raise-Non of his own and quickly added his fire affinity to it. Fire-style, Raisin Infernal, he said and quickly threw the burning jutsu at the Raisin Shuriken, hoping that they would cancel each other out. However, he quickly realized his mistake when he saw the two jutsu combine and create the biggest fire he had ever seen in his life, barreling down on both student and master. Naruto went through several hand signs and then clasped his hands together, releasing a wave of chakra. Sealing art, chakra barrier. Naruto muttered as a barrier erected around him. The barrier was orange, taking the color of Naruto's chakra. It did not cover a wide area, it did just enough to shield Naruto. The fire hit the barrier but was unable to break through it. Meanwhile, Jiraiya used multiple body flickers to get away from the fire. Jiraiya sighed slightly with relief and was about to attack the blonde again when he sensed something on the ground about 5 meters away from him. It looked like a normal Raise-Non, but it was glowing, so Jiraiya immediately recognized the jutsu. Shit, he had already planted the Raisin Bomb, he thought, and quickly used another body flicker to escape before the jutsu exploded, leaving a huge crater on the ground. Jiraiya went through a set of hand seals. Fire-style, Dragon Breath, he said, and then expelled a jet stream of hot and intense flames toward Naruto. The flames sped toward Naruto with amazing speed. Earth-style, Mud Wall, the blonde said, creating a huge wall that blocked the fire jutsu from reaching him and burning him alive. His celebration was short-lived, however, because while he was still holding up the wall, Jiraiya appeared behind him holding an Otama Raise-Non. Without looking back, Naruto quickly created a seal-less clone that formed an Otama Raise-Non of its own and clashed with Jiraiya's while he was still dealing with the fire. When the flames died down, Naruto deactivated his Earth Jutsu and charged at Jiraiya. They engaged in a fierce taijutsu battle that ignited sparks around the small training ground. Naruto was faster than Jiraiya, but Jiraiya had the power and the experience to predict Naruto's attacks. This only made the battle even fiercer than it had been, as neither let their guard down. Punches and kicks were thrown at one another, each being either blocked or dodged. Well, that was before Jiraiya suddenly blurred out of sight and appeared behind Naruto, positioning a kunai on his neck. Jiraiya was alarmed when he felt a sudden rise of chakra from Naruto. The Naruto suddenly exploded into gusts of wind. The explosion caught Jiraiya, giving him multiple cuts on his front and sending him flying away. Jiraiya recovered quickly and flipped twice before landing on the ground on his feet. The moment he landed, he felt a spike of chakra from Naruto. The said blonde appeared in front of Jiraiya with a Raise-Non in his right hand. Raise-Non! Naruto yelled as he tried to slam the Raise-Non into Jiraiya's gut. The Toad Sage was saved by his experience, leaping sideways from the attack. Naruto missed, and his Raise-Non slammed the ground, creating an explosion. The explosion was a testament to the power of the Raise-Non. As the lifted debris cleared, a rather large crater was formed in the middle of the training ground, and Naruto was standing still in the middle of the crater, panting slightly. Jiraiya stood not far away from Naruto, his clothes tattered because of the explosive clone that hit him, but he was otherwise okay, if not counting his slightly labored breathing. Despite it all, Jiraiya couldn't help but give a proud smile to his student. He had truly grown since they started their training. He had expected Naruto to be a powerhouse, but those expectations were blown to pieces every time he sparred with the blonde. In just 2.5 years, the blonde had gone from a weak, loud, and obnoxious child to a warrior capable of going toe-to-toe with him, a Sunin. This definitely confirmed it, he was the greatest shinobi teacher of all time. Nobody, not Orochimaru, or Sarutobi, or Hashirama, or even Tobirama, could claim to be better than him at this. I mean, sure, Sarutobi had taught the 3 Sunin, but he taught a Rinnegan wielder, the Yellow Flash, and another S-rank shinobi in the making. He would bet anything that Naruto would not only surpass his father but would also achieve more for the world than anyone could even imagine. Alright, Naruto, that's enough for now, the Toad Sage said, walking toward the blonde. When he was within arm's length of the boy, he placed his hand on the boy's shoulder and gave him a warm, proud smile. I'm proud of you. A week later, Mount Mayuboku. So this is where all the toads live? Naruto asked, looking around with fascination. Never in his life had he imagined that the toads lived in such a beautiful place. Amazing, isn't it? Jiraiya said, knowing exactly what the Jinchuriki was thinking. Why yeah, I mean, wow. So this is the Naruto I have heard so much about, Naruto heard someone say, and when he turned his eyes to the source of the voice, he was surprised to find two short, yet old-looking toads staring at him. Who are you? Well, please excuse my manners. This is Shima-chan, and my name is Fukazaku, and I'm going to teach you Sage Mode, the now identified Fukazaku said. Pa, I will go get some food for Naruto-chan. He has to taste my delicious food before he begins his training, Shima said, looking at her husband. Fukazaku just nodded, he didn't want to deal with his wife right now. Naruto was more important. Follow me, Naruto-chan. Naruto crouched out of the small house and followed Fukazaku. They went to a clearing, which had statues of large toads. Naruto just walked over, enjoying the cool breeze that washed over him. The air around him was pleasant and not the same as the air he breathed at the hideout. The air at the village of the toads felt natural. Fukazaku ordered Naruto to sit down while he stood, staring at the blonde with a serious look on his face. Before I even begin to teach you Senjutsu, you have to know the risks, he said, making Naruto raise an eyebrow. Learning Senjutsu requires you to absorb chakra from nature and balance it with your own physical and spiritual energy. The chakra you absorb from nature is extremely powerful. Absorbing too much of the chakra or not having enough control of the chakra will turn you into one of those, he said, pointing at the statues that seemed to decorate the area. Naruto was certainly not expecting something like that to be a risk of learning Senjutsu. Jiraiya had said Senjutsu was powerful. Naruto could now conclude that nothing of great power came easy. Nevertheless, to achieve great power, one had to deal with the risks. Do you still want to train even when knowing that you can die? Fukazaku asked. Yes, I have never been one to back down from anything, Naruto replied with a smile. Fukazaku smiled. I thought you might say something like that. He then instructed Naruto to sit beside a waterfall. That was what Naruto thought, but it was not actually water that was flowing, but oil. To be able to absorb natural energy, you must be able to be one with nature, feel nature, and hear nature, he said as Naruto took a meditative pose. Getting in touch with nature should be easy for you, given that you meditate a lot, he said. Is it possible to train somewhere else in the elemental nations other than here? Naruto asked. Fukazaku nodded. Yes. However, due to the risks, you have to train here. This oil helps you to absorb nature chakra easily. It is only found here and cannot be found anywhere else. He then poured the oil on Naruto. When you absorb too much chakra, I will hit you with this, he said as a black stick suddenly appeared in his hand. This stick will force natural chakra out of your body when the process of purification begins. With those things said, Naruto began his Senjutsu training with the Toad Sage. Jiraiya looked at the toad and gave him a nod. He had talked to them about training Naruto in Senjutsu, and while they had expressed their concerns about the Jinchuriki being too young, Jiraiya had still managed to convince them that the boy needed all the strength he could get. He told them about the Akatsuki and the danger they posed to Naruto's life, so the toads finally agreed, knowing that they could lose another summoner if they didn't train him. I leave him in your hands. I'll be meeting some contacts and hopefully get some more intel on the Akatsuki and their motives. I'll be back in a month or two, he said before disappearing in a puff of smoke. 2 months later. I'm impressed, getting a grasp of Sage Mode at such a young age is quite a feat. Meeting a young one who can stay still at all is rare enough, but sensing and absorbing natural chakra is near impossible, Fukazaku said, bringing his stick back into his cloak. Thanks, Fukazaku-sama, heh. I can't wait to use this to beat Jiraiya's ass. He'll be so jealous that I managed to master Sage Mode while he failed, Naruto replied with a shit-eating grin. Oh ho ho, mastered, eh? I'd say you have a ways to go before you've mastered Sage Mode. What kind of enemy would let his opponent sit there and charge up energy for 10 minutes? As it is now, your Sage Mode is useless in combat, said Fukazaku. Well, what else can I do, huh? You said it yourself, one must be absolutely still when gathering natural chakra, or risk losing control and joining these poor fools who tried and failed, said Naruto, gesturing to the surrounding statues of toads in meditative poses, those who had failed their Sage Mode training and paid the price. Yes, one must be still when gathering natural chakra, but not when using it, and it's child's play for one sage to give natural chakra to another sage. Using a technique I developed for just such a use, the Sage Art Amphibian Technique, Shima and I confuse with you. We gather the natural chakra while you do the fighting in Sage Mode. Pretty useful, said Fukazaku, obviously pleased with himself for creating such an amazing technique. Meanwhile, Naruto was imagining what a fusion of himself and Fukazaku would look like, his mind conjuring monstrosity after monstrosity for him to be horrified by. Seeing the look on his face, Fukazaku quickly explained, "It's not an equal fusion. It mostly looks like we're just sitting on your shoulders." Naruto let out the breath he had been holding in relief. Fukazaku quickly jumped on his shoulder and began the technique. It didn't last long, as the small toad was violently ejected from his perch. Fukazaku picked himself up and began thinking as to why his wonderful technique had failed so catastrophically. He came up with nothing and decided to try again, brushing off Naruto's concern for his well-being. Upon attempting the amphibian technique again, the jutsu seemed to work as intended for an instant. "I refuse to share this cage with some pathetic little frog. Out!" And the instant was gone, as Fukazaku was launched across the clearing once again. This time, however, he had a much clearer idea of what had gone wrong. "Pa, are you okay?" asked Naruto in concern. Yes, I'm fine. It's the Nine Tails that's rejecting the amphibian technique. I'm afraid that you won't be able to use Sage Mode. I realize this must be a lot to take in, but the toads and I think nothing less of you. This is..." "Stop," interrupted Naruto, his hair shadowing his eyes. "I won't let this stupid fox dictate what I can and can't do. If I can't fuse with you to use Sage Mode, then I'll just learn to use Sage Mode while moving." "What? That's impossible. Gathering natural chakra, whose entire purpose is to be gathered while still, while moving, is impossible." "It can't be done," said Fukazaku in disbelief. "Before you, Sage Mode was next to useless. You invented the amphibian technique. I'll invent something to gather natural chakra while moving," said Naruto determinedly. Fukazaku's eyes widened before he smiled a devious smirk. "All right, if anyone can do it, it's you. But I don't want you trying this without me nearby to knock the natural chakra out of you," said Fukazaku, brushing himself off. "No worries, I've been studying Fuinjutsu for the past 2 years now, so I'm sure I can create something that can allow me to maintain Sage Mode without having to stay still," Naruto said, ever confident in his skills. 2 weeks later. Fukazaku didn't know what he liked most about Naruto, his determination or his talent. First, the 15-year-old surpassed all his expectations when he mastered Sage Mode in just 2 months. Not even Minato managed to do that. Then, 2 weeks later, the Jinchuriki created a seal that allowed him to maintain Sage Mode at all times, even during sleep. Fukazaku was never one to believe the constant bullshit that the great elder toad kept spilling about some child of prophecy, but now he was actually starting to believe. The toad looked at the grinning young boy again, paying close attention to the seals on his chest and back. The seal on the chest was designed with a kanji 4 inlet and outlet for the one on his back. Apparently, the seal he had created was in 2 sets, namely, the inlet seal and the outlet seal. After countless days of trying and failing to come up with a suitable seal, the Jinchuriki had gone to a river to freshen up, but after observing the water pass through a tunnel and go out through the other end, the blonde realized that if he was to make Sage Mode easy for himself, he had to act like the tunnel. If he had created a seal that only allowed nature chakra inside his body, then his body would not be able to contain the constant chakra getting into his system. It would only be a matter of time before he would blow up like some overinflated balloon. Even the Kyuubi's chakra was held by a seal, so he realized that having an unlimited amount of nature chakra in his body was just asking for trouble. Thus came the creation of the sealing art inlet and outlet seal. The inlet seal allowed the nature chakra to get into his system, while the outlet seal took the chakra out of his system as soon as it entered, creating a perfect balance. The seal acted in such a way that as long as there was nature chakra in the environment, which there was, he would always be in Sage Mode unless he closed both sets of the seal. "Fukazaku-sama," Naruto said, bringing the older sage out of his musings. "What is it, my boy? Is there a problem?" he asked with a bit of concern in his tone. Not at all. It's just that ever since I started learning elemental ninjutsu with Jiraiya-sensei, I learned wind and earth manipulation quite easily since wind is my primary element while earth is secondary, but since the likes of Kakashi-sensei and Sarutobi-Jiji are able to use all 5 elements, I train harder to try and master the other 3 elements as well, but I couldn't even get down the basics of them. Yesterday, though, when I was in Sage Mode, I tried to burn a leaf with fire chakra, and surprisingly enough, it worked. When I tried it again in my normal state, I failed miserably. "Can you explain that to me?" said the blonde, looking at his teacher intently. "Well, it's really not that surprising, really. You see, nature chakra does not belong to any specific element, water, earth, wind, fire, neither lightning nor any other element. That's because nature has them all. That's why when one completely masters Sage Mode, they become aware and in tune with the world that surrounds them. Sage Mode is not just about gaining some more power or sensory abilities, it's the ability to feel and understand the world as a whole. That's why one of the first stages of mastering Sage Mode is meditation. So yes, while in Sage Mode, it will be easier for you to learn and execute elemental ninjutsu," the toad explained to the blonde. "I see. It's quite fascinating. No wonder Jiraiya-sensei values it so much, Naruto remarked. Pa and Naruto-chan, food is ready. This time I cooked a lot cause I know that you two must be really hungry, Shima said, approaching master and student. While Fukazaku's face showed an excited grin, Naruto couldn't help but pray for Jiraiya's immediate return. He was really getting sick and tired of eating bugs and caterpillars all day. Natural energy is energy that can be collected from the atmosphere and terrain. If one can collect the natural energy from around them and combine and balance it with the spiritual and physical energy that makes up their chakra, they can become sages, allowing them to use senjutsu and enter sage mode. Due to it being the energy of the planet, if the world's natural energy is interfered with, powerful natural disasters ranging from earthquakes to tornadoes occur instantly. Mastery over such energy, whether mild or complete control, is an ability almost all shinobi would dream of having in their arsenal, but like all things that are truly worth possessing, it takes the hardest of training sessions, blood, sweat, tears, meditation, concentration, and pushing your body to the absolute limit, breaking those limits while creating new ones. And when it's all said and done, very few shinobi have ever managed to truly master senjutsu. Some shinobi were known to use jutsu that utilize nature energy, but that's not the same as mastering nature energy. In fact, out of the hundreds of shinobi who have tried to master senjutsu, only Hashirama, Jiraiya, and Minato were known to have mastered the power of senjutsu, and even then, the last two had never truly completely mastered it. All these facts, though, didn't seem so significant when Jiraiya looked at his latest student with wide eyes. Sage mode, a technique that he had spent years upon years trying to fully master, a technique that Minato, a once-in-a-lifetime genius, could only use for less than 5 minutes, and yet his son, the so-called dead last of his class, had somehow managed to not only master senjutsu but also figured out a way to maintain it at all times. Can't believe it, the Sun and Sage said, walking around Naruto in circles as if he were trying to confirm that what he was seeing was real. Well, I'm just that impressive. Suck it up, Naruto responded smugly, still in Sage mode. Honestly, he had yet to deactivate the seal since he created it. Impressive indeed, he has shattered all my expectations and then some, Fukazaku remarked, standing next to the two summoners. Why yeah, he's managed to surpass me. It really is unbelievable, Jiraiya said, obviously agreeing with Fukazaku while Naruto merely stood there, soaking up the praise like a sponge. Damn right, Aro Sennin. I told you I'll be more powerful than you by the end of this training trip, he said. Ho ho, I said that you've surpassed me, that doesn't necessarily mean you're more powerful, Blondie. You're 100 years too young to hold a candle to my awesomeness. You want to test that, perv, the younger sage challenged. Fine. I've always enjoyed putting my foot up some wannabe's ass, but I'll particularly enjoy this one, considering you'll have no excuses to give afterward. Jiraiya, already in a fighting stance, replied, it goes both ways, sensei. Alright, enough, you two. Geez, and you're supposed to be our strongest summoners, Fukazaku chided playfully before master and student could start their brawl. Before I forget, Naruto-chan, Ma and I made this for you. We hope you like it, he said, presenting Naruto with a black cloak that had flames at the bottom and the kanji for sage written in red on the back, with an Uzumaki swirl just above it. Wow, thanks a lot, Fukazaku-sama, Naruto said happily, hugging the cloak. It was obvious to both the Toad and the Sunnin that the blonde didn't receive many presents. Hey, wait a minute. Minato and I were sages way longer than this squirt. How come you didn't give us anything? Jiraiya asked. Because Minato-chan and you didn't master senjutsu the way Naruto boy has, and what's more, he did it in just a month and a half, the elder Toad responded while Naruto snickered, earning himself a glare from the older sage. Naruto-chan's accomplishment makes him our first complete sage, he finished, giving the blonde a proud look. Yep, that's right, me, Naruto Uzumaki, the one and only real Toad sage, unlike those other fools, the blonde gloated, gesturing to the surrounding statues of toads in meditative poses, those who had failed their sage mode training and paid the price. His boasts, however, were interrupted when he felt a pole coming down on his head with enough force to sink a nail into metal. Stop disrespecting your predecessors, you fool. They might have failed to master sage mode, but they were still Toad summoners just like you, Fukazaku scolded, putting the pole he was using to beat the extra nature energy out of him down. Ow, okay, I'm sorry, geez, Naruto said, placing his hands on his bruised head. That was definitely going to leave a mark. Anyway, before you go, why don't you go and thank Ma personally for being a good host? She was very excited and proud of you, so she prepared a huge congratulatory banquet, the Toad said, his eyes seeing stars while he salivated at the prospect of an all-you-can-eat feast. Fukazaku was so excited that he failed to notice the panicked and horrified looks on his two students' faces. Well, unfortunately, I had already eaten before coming here, Jiraiya lied smoothly, patting his stomach for emphasis. Well, come on, one true sage, you wouldn't want to keep Shima-sama waiting, would you? Don't be disrespectful, the Sunnin said, interrupting Naruto's mumblings. The younger blonde glared at his master, giving him the finger, only for the Sunnin to respond with a cheeky thumbs up and an enjoy yourself look. Go fuck yourself, sensei, the blonde said, verbalizing his earlier thoughts. A week later. Ever since Orochimaru killed Sarutobi-sensei, Jiraiya had never felt so pissed off before. He was really boiling with so much rage that he felt like putting his hands around his blonde companion's neck and strangling him to death. He gave a death glare to his student, who was doing an amazing job of ignoring him as they walked away from a small village in the land of honey, having run out of supplies and everyday necessities. It was during his everyday research sessions when his student, his stupid student, his fucking asshole of a student, decided to go to the bank and somehow managed to withdraw half of the Sunin's money and deposit it into his pathetic little account. Seriously, half. That's about 45 million ryo. Cages didn't have that much money in their accounts, not even Onaki, who has been in that damned seat for almost half a century. If he had only withdrawn $1 million or $2 million, the white-haired sage wouldn't have minded much, but 45 fucking million ryo. He looked in the direction of his student, who was sporting an obnoxious grin. Right then and there, Jiraiya was really tempted to smash a Raiznan on the back of Naruto's stupid head. The silence went on for about 5 minutes until Jiraiya finally exploded. "Why the hell did you steal so much of my money, you stupid brat?" he shouted. Meh. The Sunin's left eye twitched with annoyance as he continued staring at his student. "Naruto, I swear to you, I'm going to beat the living shit out of you if you don't give me a proper explanation. Now, talk," he threatened. Tisk tisk, Erosenin, 3 years ago, maybe that threat would have had me shaking in my pants, but today, with my perfect sage mode, your old ass cannot keep up, the young sage said, giving him that annoying, unbearable grin. Arrogance. Sure, a few days ago, master and student had gone toe-to-toe in a full-blown spar, and by the slightest of margins, the blonde, assisted by his sage mode, of course, managed to topple the Sunin. It just goes to show how much the blonde had grown since they started this training trip. Still, I still want a reason, you blonde bastard. It will be useful when I start restoring my clan, plus I need a new apartment. A real sage cannot live in such a place. Will you stop with the real sage bullshit? Heh, jealous, sensei? Jiraiya merely mumbled about disrespectful, arrogant brats as they continued walking. But did you have to get so much money? Half of that amount is enough for restoring 2 clans and more than enough for 2 whole lifetimes, the veteran shinobi said. Which should mean that it's more than enough for 1 pervert, the student countered. I have a spy network to run. And whores to visit? Exactly. Well, then, consider it punishment for taking a 15-year-old to a brothel as his birthday present. Honestly, how irresponsible can you get? Naruto scolded. Last I checked, you enjoyed yourself immensely, Jiraiya retorted, giving his student a pervy grin. Naruto looked away from his sensei, his face containing a blush that would make Hinata proud. I'm a teenager with raging hormones. What the hell did you expect? Besides, that's really not the point, Naruto responded, making a silly excuse for himself. It's exactly the point, making some pathetic excuses for yourself, especially when we both know just how much you enjoyed it, is quite retarded, Jiraiya said. Whatever, Erosenin. It's just that I'm still trying to figure out a way to properly deal with Hinata's feelings for me when we go back to Konoha, so you paying some random whores to flash their D-cup-sized titties at me is not helping things, the Jinchuriki said. There's nothing to worry about, squirt. Just tell her to flash her tits to the one and only complete sage, and if you like them, then she's as good as yours. Besides, from my experience, shy girls are quite freaky in bed, the Sunin said, whispering the last part of his sentence with a perverted giggle, obviously remembering something that would give even Orochimaru a bloody nose. I'm serious, you stupid pervert. Can you not think with your dick for once? Naruto angrily shouted, his face going red from the wanted images his brain was creating. Stupid hormones. I am being serious, and that face of yours is already clear proof that you're also thinking about it, said Jiraiya, his ever-present smirk on his face. You're impossible. The two continued walking in comfortable silence for a few minutes, giving the Sunin time to really think about his godson's growth and what possibly awaited him in the future. Akatsuki. The criminal organization he had been investigating for years without much success. For a group of shinobi who walked around in black cloaks with red clouds on them, information about their whereabouts and activities was rather scarce. That, and the fact that they had a spy network much better than the older sage's own, made them a much bigger threat. Ever since he started investigating them, the only information he got was that they were only comprised of S-rank shinobi, Orochimaru was once a member, and its other members are Itaki Uchiha and Kisame Hashigaki, and that they were targeting all the Jinchuriki. For what purpose? He had no idea. Why did Orochimaru leave? He had no idea. Who was their leader? He had no idea. Who were the other members? He had no fucking idea. It was honestly frustrating trying to find anything out about this organization. The only thing he could do was hope Naruto's training was enough to beat these guys. The Sunin made a silent vow to protect Naruto at all costs. He had already failed to protect his first students, the AIM orphans, his prized student Minato, and he also failed to look out for Naruto during his rather harsh childhood, but this time, he would be damned if he let anything happen to his godson. Jiraiya took a quick peek at his blonde student, who had been in sage mode ever since they left Mount Mayaboku. His eyes were a golden yellow with bar-like pupils, and natural chakra showed itself as orange markings around his eyes, and he was wearing the cloak that the toads had made for him. Well, despite his obnoxious boasts, the blonde Uzumaki had really grown during these last 3 years, not only in strength but in intelligence as well. Looking at him now, he's such a stark contrast to the person he was when they first started. The 12-year-old child who struggled for recognition and acceptance and looked like he had the weight of the whole world on his shoulders but skillfully hid it behind the face of a smiling knucklehead. Now he is a 15-year-old real shinobi who is confident in his own abilities and his place in the world, and Jiraiya couldn't help but feel a bit of the guilt that had been within his heart concerning his abandonment of the blonde Jinchuriki. "Yo, Aro-senin," the Jinchuriki said, interrupting his thoughts. You know how my chakra is so condensed and just too damn much that I couldn't manage to use the academy's basic jutsu like the Bunshin, right? What of it? Well, 2 days ago, I was messing around with the cage Bunshin because I was just bored, but then I realized something when I tried the transformation jutsu on the clone. What? Jiraiya asked, getting curious as to where the Jinchuriki was going with this. Yes, well, I hung into a toad yesterday, and I actually turned into a real, durable, and tangible toad, Naruto said, earning wide eyes from the veteran shinobi. Naruto, that is not how the transformation technique works. I know. The henge is a weaker class genjutsu, and all it does is allow you to apply an illusionary layer over yourself that merely looks like a different thing. If the henge was a solid transformation, every shinobi with access to it would use it to grant themselves shapeshifter abilities, like turning their hands into swords. But you've somehow managed to do something that no shinobi has ever done before, and that's to make yourself a shapeshifter using the henge, the Sunin said, wondering if his student was quite possibly one of the most talented shinobi out there because this was just getting ridiculous. I could do this since I first started using chakra, and I've just noticed it now. Honestly, it's like I was awesome long before I became the one and only real complete sage. Aha. Naruto frowned at his sensei's less than believing response. Taking it as a challenge, the blonde quickly made a cage Bunshin and instructed it to turn into a giant eagle, which it did without any objection. The huge smoke cleared, showing a perfect brown giant eagle that looked like it was a summon animal. Amazing, the sage said, walking around the hung Naruto in circles, touching it in various places, trying to confirm its tangibility. He moved away from the clone and looked back at the blonde, who was grinning with an "I told you so" expression on his face. You're oversaturating the technique with chakra, I know. His tone took on one which befitted his title as a legendary Sunin. Fundamentally, when you oversaturate a technique, like say, a fireball, all you would get would be a roaring wildfire, and likewise, when you oversaturate something like a water gun, you would get a tsunami. Of course, this lack of control and precision is expected with elemental techniques, but the henge isn't an elemental jutsu, hence, all the excess chakra had nowhere else to go but back into the technique, granting the illusion tangibility and giving you the properties of whatever you transformed into, though I highly doubt it grants you the same durability. It does, actually. Look, the grinning blonde said, jumping on top of his hung, which quickly launched itself into the air, flying as fast as it could with the blonde Jinchuriki on top. See, I just made transportation easier for myself without even thinking about it. Awesome, huh? Yeah, it is. Now, come down here so that we can ride together and make this trip shorter, Jiraiya said, grinning at his student's genius. Nope. Eh? You want a free ride? You have to catch it first. With that being said, the hunged eagle flew as fast as it could to the land of fire, leaving the Sunin behind. It took Jiraiya several seconds to process what had just happened. Jiraiya had never experienced this level of disrespect from any of his students before, ever. And so the great legendary Sunin, Toad Sage of Mount Mayaboku, the man men want to be and women want, was reduced to chasing his student on his hung clone. Come back here and let me ride you, you stupid brat. I mean, let me get on top of your clone. I mean, just get here, damn it, the white-haired sage screamed out while comically chasing after his student. 2 days later, the two sages of Mount Mayaboku were now currently on their way to the land of fire as they passed through the land of wind on Naruto's hung clone, who was now hung into an owl by the Sunin's insistence, claiming that owls were wiser than regular birds, thus befitting of a sage to ride on. The blonde didn't put up much of a protest, considering the henge would last for about 4 to 5 hours before running out of chakra, thus helping them cover a bit of distance. Naruto looked back at his mentor, who was busy scribbling into his notebook with a pervy grin plastered on his face. A few hours ago, Jiraiya had forced Naruto to fly above the water springs of some random village so that the older man could do his research from above with a pair of binoculars. Where the hell did he even get one? All in all, he had never seen so many naked women in his life, and he could admit that a tiny bit of him enjoyed the view as much as the pervert himself. His pervy thoughts, however, were disturbed when he sensed something 3 somethings, actually. He didn't know if these people were allies or not, but their chakra levels were definitely way above that of a regular jonin. Naruto frowned at that as he tried to quickly discern what was going on. Apparently, his facial expression did not go unnoticed by the older sage, who wasted no time in asking what was wrong. I'm sensing 3 powerful chakras approximately 15 miles north, the Jinchuriki responded, his face becoming serious as he mentally prepared himself. It could be Suna Shinobi, Naruto. We are in the land of wind, after all, Jiraiya said, not seeing what was making his students so agitated. No, these are above-average chakra signals, and I can sense a tailed beast in one of them, and whoever they are, their chakra keeps flaring like they're in a battle, Naruto replied. Jiraiya quickly understood the implications of those words the minute they left Naruto's mouth. Akatsuki. But who could they be fighting in a place like this? Gaara? No, his spy network kept him up to date with the major events of the elemental nations, so he knew that Gaara was now Tsunagakure's newest and youngest kage in history, and being the Kaze kage, he wouldn't be battling the Akatsuki alone while the village's shinobi seemed to be enjoying their peace. Alright then, let's check it out. Those simple words seemed to prompt the Jinchuriki into action, who quickly created 2 clones that transformed into hawks. Both master and student sages jumped on the 2 transformed clones and quickly flew to the site of the action. 15 miles away. Fu was not having a good day. A few months ago, her team had finally been allowed to participate in the Chunin exams by the village leaders. She was so excited at the prospect of meeting new people and making friends that she happily took the opportunity. Despite the fact that the majority of her village ostracized and made her an outcast since she became a Jinchuriki, Fu has always loved Kusa, so she wanted to make a good impression at the exams to bring more clients for them. The first part of the exams, the written portion, had been interesting, to say the very least, but with enough help, be it reluctant, from her teammates, they had managed to pass. The second part of the exams, surviving the treacherous desert of Suna, had been harder than she had anticipated. They were required to deliver a scroll to the main tower of Suna within 3 days and had to be among the first 5 teams to get there, so competition was always going to be fierce, not to mention dealing with the bandits, wild animals, and traps set up for them. The first 2 days had been really hard, trying to get her teammates to work together with her rather than brush her off like some curse they had to endure on their way to glory, especially now that their sensei was not around, so progress was low. On the 3rd day, things picked up when she ran into the teams from Konoha. She had immediately befriended them because they seemed like nice people, and they helped each other pass the exams. Unfortunately, the 3rd and final portion of the exams could not take place because some emergency issues had come up that the higher UPS had to deal with, meaning that the Chunin exams were cut short, so they would promote based on the performance of the 2 portions only. On their way back home, after saying goodbye to all her newfound friends and making them promise to visit her, of course, her team ran into none other than the immortal Kakuzu himself, a man whose legend was so well known in Kusa that parents used it to scare their kids into behaving. Apparently, the 90-plus-year-old man had joined some criminal organization called the Akatsuki who were targeting Jinchuriki. Honestly, being teammates with a Jinchuriki was a hard enough task, and yet these guys deliberately chose to pick fights with them. What kind of monsters were they? Oh right, S-ranked shinobi. And so, here she was, her entire team completely slaughtered by Kakuzu's sadistic partner while she defended herself against the immortal man himself. The battle, if it could even be called that, was pretty much one-sided. He used every jutsu in her arsenal, even her tailed beast's chakra, but Kakuzu somehow managed to take everything she threw at him and walk out of it with nothing but a mere scratch. Fu was no fool, eye roll. She knew from the moment it started that this battle was going to be her last. Every part of her knew, and yet she didn't want to give up. She wanted to push on, give it everything she had, and hopefully find some sort of lifeline, anything to ensure her survival. Her hopes, however, were crushed when the sadistic man who had massacred her team came rushing at her with his bloody scythe in hand, screaming maniacally. Fu quickly ducked to avoid the clearly crazy man's initial swing. She quickly brought her left hand up to block his following punch. Her Baijuyu's wings quickly sprouted, allowing her to fly away from her attacker, though she didn't get far before Kakuzu's lightning mask came flying up to her, ready to roast her alive. She closed her eyes, finally having resigned herself to her impending fate. She could feel the mask charging its chakra in preparation for a jutsu, so she waited. Then, raising shuriken, she heard someone scream. Fu heard a screeching noise and quickly opened her eyes, trying to see what was happening, and saw a Fumashuriken-like jutsu crush into the lightning mask, destroying it instantly. A blonde-haired boy quickly jumped in front of her, his eyes venomously staring at her assailants while the older man quickly shunshine next to Kakuzu's partner and slammed a big ball Raisenon into his gut, sending him flying into the woods. She quickly recognized the older white-haired man as Jiraiya of the Sunin from the bingo books, but she couldn't recognize the blonde-haired boy that had just saved her life. "Are you okay?" he said, bringing her out of her thoughts, though his eyes never left the 2 Akatsuki members. "Why yeah," she said, inwardly cursing her weak response. "Ow," the scythe-carrying nin screamed angrily. "That hurt, you stupid, ugly piece of shit," he finished, pointing his scythe at Jiraiya. "Haiden, shut up. "That's not some ordinary shinobi you're talking to," dumbass Kakuzu said, not only annoyed with his partner's ever-present stupidity but also with the fact that the blonde brat just seemingly destroyed his mask with practiced ease. For a bounty hunter like Kakuzu, battling shinobi with large bounties was his most favorite hobby, so he always made a point of keeping up with the latest entries in the bingo book, but he had yet to see this blonde brat before, and his chakra was quite interesting. He couldn't distinguish it from nature itself, and he had never seen or heard of any dojutsu that had described the ones in the blonde's eye sockets. Another Konoha upstart, he thought, getting ready for what was quite possibly the fight of his long life. Although he masked it perfectly with a look of calm, Naruto couldn't help the nervousness he was feeling at the moment. These guys were one of the biggest reasons he had been busting his ass for the past 3 years. He was still confident in his own abilities, but still, these bastards were purposely targeting Jinchuriki, which meant that they were at least prepared to fight him should he transform. Taking a quick peek at his fellow Jinchuriki, Naruto confirmed his theory. Despite the fact that she was still standing, the girl looked like she was knocking on death's door. For a split second, Naruto wondered if he was really ready to face these people. "Naruto, get ready. This is what we have been training for. Now, snap out of it," Jiraiya said, easily deciphering the blonde Jinchuriki's thoughts. Naruto quickly shook his head, disrupting the negative thoughts going through his mind, and took a fighting stance. "Well, I guess there's only one way to find out." Jiraiya narrowed his eyes at the 2 Akatsuki members. He knew of Kakuzu and the notorious history of the rogue Taki shinobi. He was one of the few ninjas to ever survive a battle with Hashirama Senju, though instead of being honored, the village cruelly punished and imprisoned him. It is said that after escaping prison, he stole the scroll containing his village's forbidden jutsu, where he learned Earth Grudge Fear and used it to take the hearts of the village leaders before leaving the village. His name did pop up here and there during the Second and Third Shinobi War when reports came that the former Taki ninja was working as a bounty hunter and as a freelance shinobi, taking on some of the most dangerous missions for big money, which was something else the former Taki nin was notorious for: greed and a deep lust for money. Jiraiya knew of many bounty hunters, all of whom were mostly interested in going after the big fish, and admittedly, he had faced quite a lot of them, but none of them could ever match Kakuzu's ambition. This man was crazy enough to go after one of the strongest shinobi in Hanzo the Salamander simply because the man had one of the largest bounties in the entire elemental nations. Of course, he failed, but the mere fact that he survived the one-on-one encounter with Hanzo when the entire Team Hiruzen had barely escaped with their lives is nothing short of amazing. But that was a long time ago. Jiraiya was still an inexperienced jonin at the time he was fighting Hanzo. Now he could comfortably say that he was one of, if not the most powerful shinobi in the elemental nations, with tons of experience and wisdom to back up his power. Not as much experience as the 91-year-old rogue nin, of course, but still enough that mattered. The Sunin's eyes narrowed further as he eyed Haiden. It irritated him to realize that he knew next to nothing about the man. His name is Haiden, and judging by the slashed forehead protector placed around his neck, he was from Yugakure. That's all he knew about him. His face didn't ring any bells from any bingo books, and from what he knows of Yugakure, the village turned from being a shinobi village to become a tourist attraction years ago. This man has no reputation whatsoever. Jiraiya knew nothing of his skills, past battles, or even a dangerous mission Haiden had been on. And yet, he found himself in the Akatsuki, the most dangerous threat to the elemental nations in history, comprised of only S-rank shinobi. So it was quite right for Jiraiya to assume that Haiden was also an S-rank shinobi himself, despite the fact that he didn't know or recognize him. If participating in 2 major wars and countless other battles had taught him anything, it would be to never underestimate his opponents simply because of reputation, or rather, a lack of it. If the Akatsuki trusted him enough to hunt down Jinchuriki for them, then he sure as hell won't underestimate him. Hell, Naruto was basically a nobody in the elemental nations, and the Sunin himself knew firsthand just how powerful the blonde was, so who's to say that Haiden wasn't the same? And because of that, Jiraiya deemed Haiden as the most dangerous of the two, but he wasn't going to make any decisions based on assumptions alone. Then again, considering that this was a 3-on-2 situation, he guessed the odds favored his side. Nevertheless, he still wasn't going to make any reckless decisions. The older sage looked at his student, frowning and seemingly ready for action. "Well, I guess now's the time to find out if you are really ready, Naruto," he thought. "Come on. Just what the fuck are we waiting for?" Haiden screamed with frustration, much to the annoyance of his partner. "Shut up," Haiden, Kakuzu said in a dangerously low tone, though he was interrupted when Jiraiya spoke out loud. "Now, Naruto." No sooner had Jiraiya said those words than 2 Naruto clones puffed into existence. A second later, they disappeared. A shift in the wind was the only warning they got, as both clones were behind the 2 Akatsuki members, each clone swinging a Raiznan across their backs. Kakuzu's eyes widened when the clone slammed Haiden with the Raiznan so hard that he sent the Jashinist back into the woods with incredible speed. Though the clone targeting him didn't have the same luck because the moment it connected with the Raiznan, Kakuzu used his experience with fast opponents by using the Earth-style Iron Skin Jutsu. His skin instantly turned darker, and his body became as hard as iron. Therefore, the Raiznan didn't do much damage to him. The clone's eyes widened, but he used that moment to execute a high roundhouse kick that connected with its head, immediately puffing it out of existence. The next second, the other clone was on him, but again, Kakuzu was prepared. The clone delivered an axe kick, which Kakuzu easily blocked with his hands, but he didn't give the clone any other chance as he countered with a brutal uppercut on it. Super exploding clone, the clone said before it went out with a big explosion. When the smoke cleared, it revealed a harmless Kakuzu staring at Naruto with an irritated expression. "That won't work on me, boy. You're gonna have to try harder," he said, rubbing some dust off his cloak. "Well, it seems that settles it. I'll handle Kakuzu while you two should go after that Haiden guy," Jiraiya commanded. "But be careful. Don't underestimate him, and if he proves to be too much to handle, then just hold him off until I'm done here." "Got it. Fu, since you're still injured, you will be my backup." "Right." Fu's expression hardened as she nodded, too, slipping back into her combat stance and summoning a water sword again, ready to fight alongside her fellow teen. Jiraiya of the Sun and Kakuzu said as he evaluated his opponent. "Well, this is a surprise. Today seems to be my day. Your prowess and actions as a spy master have given you an enormous bounty." "Damn it," Haiden cried as he emerged from the woods, rolling his shoulder as he shrugged off the pain of the attack. "That hurt, you little shit. Where the fuck did you even come from?" He may not be fast like his partner, but it seems that he can at least take a hit, though I still can't believe he just shrugged off the Raiznan like that, Naruto commented. "Ha! Like I told that little cunt, we are immortals," dumbass, Haiden taunted with a grin spread across his face. "And I've told you a million times that there is no such thing as an immortal," Jiraiya grunted in response before making two hand signs and slamming his palm into the ground. "Earth style, dark swamp." Both Akatsuki members' eyes widened as the earth transformed into thick mud at the Sunin's touch, rapidly spreading across the ground towards them. The two leapt in different directions to escape the spreading bog which chased after them in both directions. Jiraiya released his jutsu and sped after his opponent as Naruto and Fu did the same with Haiden. Fire style, flame bullet. Jiraiya inhaled deeply and breathed out a massive, oil-filled ball of fire which barreled towards the missing nin, who leapt over the attack. Kakuzu was very fast, very strong, and highly skilled in taijutsu, but Jiraiya outdid him in all these areas. However, he was still pushing Jiraiya back against a wall. Why, you might ask, was the sage having so much trouble? All one needed to do was look at Kakuzu to find the answer. Though he still looked normal, his skin had taken an unnaturally dark tone. He was using a jutsu Jiraiya recognized as Earth-style Iron Skin to harden his body, making every inch of himself nearly as hard as tempered steel. Jiraiya had punched him earlier, sending him into a tree, but all he got out of it was a stinging hand as it felt like he'd really punched metal. This was why he hadn't been damaged by the Raiznan earlier, and Jiraiya was having a hard time finding a way around this defense. Flipping in midair, the man threw his forearm out toward the Sunin, which shockingly detached from his arm, connected to him by the numerous threads, and flew toward the Sunin. The Toad Sage leapt back to dodge, only to look on in shock as the limb changed direction, shooting toward his throat and gripping his neck as the threads ensnared him. He tried to pry off the hand that was choking the life out of him, only for the threads to entangle themselves around his body, restraining his arms and preventing him from fighting back. Is that the best you can do?" Kakuzu asked. Despite this, his senses were warning him of danger. This had been too easy. There was no way someone with a bounty as large as his would be taken down this quickly. Sure enough, his instincts were proven right when the Sunin smirked and burst into smoke. Kakuzu frowned as he recalled his now empty appendage. "When did you?" Suddenly, he was doused from behind with a sticky green fluid. Kakuzu struggled, but he quickly found himself encased in the mass and unable to move. "Ha, you should have known that it would take more than that to bring down the great Jiraiya-sama," Jiraiya said as he stepped out of the foliage, though he kept his distance. "I suggest you don't struggle. A single spark is all it'll take for you to go up in a ball of fire. I doubt your jutsu would protect you from the raging inferno this stuff would make." Kakuzu responded. "You vastly underestimate me." Surprisingly, without hand signs, the Extaki ninja inhaled deeply. Water style, exploding water shockwave. Kakuzu spit up a massive surge of water, blowing his mask off his face and revealing his lower jaw was stitched to his head as well, each side beginning at the corner of his lips, giving him the appearance of an ear-to-ear grin. The flood of water was so massive it pushed Kakuzu off the ground and sent a wave toward the Sunin, which he dodged by taking to the trees. He looked down on him from a branch with a grim expression. This wasn't good. To be able to use a jutsu without a single hand sign was an extremely advanced art. It required total mastery, not only of the element but of that jutsu itself. It showed he hadn't been wasting the decades since his defection. "It was foolish of you to leave those two with Haiden," Kakuzu stated as he looked up at the Sunin, his expression neutral. "Though you were right in believing I was the greater threat, but Haiden may very well kill those two." He then shook his head, his gaze turning in the direction of the other battle. "I get enough complaints from our leader for killing my previous partners. The last thing I need is flack for him killing one of our targets and delaying our plans. Jiraiya's frown deepened at that. This guy killed his own partners? Either he was a complete bastard, or despite his calm demeanor, he was just as likely to go into a blind rage as his partner. Taking note of that, Jiraiya questioned, so, you said the last ninja of our village you fought was the first? And I heard you once engaged Hanzo the Salamander in one-on-one combat. Pretty impressive that you actually managed to survive. Kakuzu grunted in response. Survive is too strong a word. I dragged myself back to that pitiful excuse for a village half-dead after that battle, and how do they respond? He scoffed. That's when I learned a valuable lesson. The only things in this world you can really count on are yourself and money. With a smirk, Jiraiya nodded. Yeah, seems to me you did learn something valuable. Oh, Kakuzu tilted his head. You said he was the last Konoha ninja you fought. You learned not to mess with our village, Jiraiya replied tauntingly, though Kakuzu's expression didn't change. Jiraiya then raised his hand, holding his palm up and parallel to the ground as he added, not that I blame you. If I'd been beaten that badly, I'd probably run scared every time I saw the Konoha symbol too. Don't flatter yourself, brat. While my battle with the first was many years ago, the only reason I haven't faced a Konoha shinobi since is because I don't go after small fry. Since the deaths of your second, third, and fourth Hokage, the only shinobi your village produced with bounties worth my time are yourself, Tsunade, Orochimaru, Might Guy, Asuma Saratobi, and Kakashi Hatake, not counting Itaki, of course. I simply haven't had the opportunity to pursue them yet since I've been collecting valuable bounties from all the other villages. Perhaps you'd like me to collect Tsunade's head after yours since she'll be the next Konoha ninja with the highest bounty after yours, and she's nowhere near as powerful as her grandfather was, Kakuzu said darkly with the clear intention that he'd do what he said. Jiraiya's face darkened, his fists clenching when he heard the Extaki ninja threaten Tsunade. He would make the man regret threatening his old teammate. Before he could respond, the Akatsuki member continued, but maybe you'd like to see how much I changed since that day. With that, Kakuzu's face twisted in effort as he clenched his fists. His back began to shift unnaturally as the massive threads beneath his skin shifted in unstitching his back, until finally, his back burst open. 3 masses of threads tore themselves out of him, each one with a mask, and shaped themselves into a monster. One appeared to be a demonic tiger, another a 4-legged creature with small, makeshift wings, and the final a twisted, 2-tailed wolf. Jiraiya stared down in disbelief and disgust at what he saw, the forbidden jutsu making him think of his former teammate, Orochimaru. This seemed like it was right up his alley. Which brought the question, what kind of monster had this guy turned himself into? I normally have 5, but that other brat killed my lightning heart, Kakuzu said, then lightly shook his head to Tisk. It really doesn't matter now, I will still kill you. How about this? The tiger-like construct leapt into the air and opened its mouth, revealing a small fireball. Jiraiya's eyes widened as he recognized the jutsu as fire style, searing migraine. He quickly bolted to another tree just as the tiger-like monstrosity released a small fireball about the size of a fist, which erupted into a massive firestorm the moment it came into contact with the tree, destroying it and setting the nearby trees ablaze. The creature rapidly fired the attacks, causing Jiraiya to bound through the trees as it rapidly decimated the forest. While still in midair, Jiraiya sensed something wrong. His gaze fell downward to see the winged construct flying at him. It opened its mouth, and wind spiraled toward it, compressing into a small ball. Jiraiya's face became a mask of shock. There was no way. This guy was using high-level techniques from 4 different elements. Even factoring in his long life, he shouldn't have been able to master the elements to this degree. The creature released the jutsu, wind-style, pressure damage. The small ball of compressed air struck true, slamming into the center of Jiraiya's chest and exploding into a twisting maelstrom on contact, hiding him from view. When it cleared, however, nothing but torn pieces of a log fell to the ground. What? Kakuzu questioned as Jiraiya came at him from behind, wielding another Raiznan. He slammed it into his back, aiming for the stitches that held his body together in hopes of ripping his body apart. The Extaki ninja was pushed forward by the attack for a moment before he fell apart into water. Jiraiya's eyes widened as the other constructs leapt away from him. He looked up to see the fire and wind-spewing creatures coming at him together, combining their attacks into a single ball of fire and wind. Oh, shit, was Jiraiya's sole thought before they released a massive wave of wind and fire that destroyed a huge section of the forest. As Naruto and Fu faced down Haiden, Kakuzu stared after the devastation his attack caused, tilting his head, knowing that wouldn't be enough to take care of the legendary shinobi. Minutes had passed, and still no sign of the Sunin. You can drop the act. It would take more than that to finish one of your caliber, the Extaki ninja stated as his eyes wandered the area. Sure enough, a massive spiky white hair burst out of the ground, shaping into a form reminiscent of a lion's mouth as it lengthened and sped toward the missing nin. Kakuzu leapt back to avoid the attack, but it moved too quickly for all his masks to dodge. The winged construct was caught in the hair and driven through the air, slamming it into a tree with enough force to nearly break it in half. The strands of hair hardened to the point that each was like a steel needle, piercing the creature's mask. The construct writhed disturbingly in the grip of the Sunin's hair before seeming to melt, liquefying and slipping to the ground before the hair retracted. Kakuzu snarled at seeing his water-using mask destroyed. The Sunin burst out of the ground, immediately running through the hand signs for the fire-style, flame bullet technique once again, this time partitioning the oil to fire off small fireballs instead of one large one. The constructs quickly dodged through the air, flying even though they had no wings. Sensing danger, he spun to see Kakuzu himself coming down on him from behind, grabbing him by the shoulder and grappling with him through the air, trying to stab him through the chest with his hand as his tendrils burst from his body to ensnare him. Jiraiya managed to fight back, overwhelming Kakuzu's grip and manipulating his hair to fight the threads and stab Kakuzu, only for it to bounce off of him as he hardened his body. However, the hair did serve a purpose, winning out against and tearing through the tendrils while entangling Kakuzu's arms and allowing Jiraiya to get the upper hand. Jiraiya gripped the missing nin's shoulder and maneuvered them so Kakuzu's back was facing the rapidly approaching ground. Jiraiya pulled back his hand and clawed it. The iron skin technique was extremely difficult to overcome. Explosions, taijutsu short of the upper levels of the hidden lotus, and most ninjutsu were rendered useless due to the damage resistance the technique offered. There were only a few ways to counter it. First, use genjutsu. Not an option, genjutsu was never the Toad Sunin's thing. Second, use a lightning technique to pierce it. Again, not an option, as though the Toad Sunin knew enough to teach one how to use the element and had access to scrolls detailing advanced lightning jutsu, he didn't have the affinity and had never learned to use it. That left option 3, an extremely powerful attack that could shatter even the damage resilience the technique offered. Fortunately for the Sunin, he had just the thing, and he owed it to his most recent student. During training, Jiraiya had commented on the giant Raiznan Naruto had created. The technique was far more powerful than the basic Raiznan, a testament to this being the fact that the attack was absolutely lethal, whereas the basic Raiznan was incapable of killing on its own. Inside Jiraiya's hand, just a few inches away from his palm, chakra gathered and formed into a swirling orb, but unlike the normal technique, this Raiznan was only 1/4 the size of a basic one, a variant of the Raiznan created specifically to pierce powerful defenses. He thrust his hand forward, slamming the tiny orb into the missing nin's chest. Great Spear Raiznan. The attack drilled into Kakuzu's chest. With Jiraiya's hand and lengthened hair holding him in place, preventing the attack from pushing him back, it instead drilled into his steel-hard skin. Kakuzu cried out in pain as his chest was torn open, sending the black threads that seemed to hold his body together spiraling out and ripping his heart apart. Red blood and black, liquefied tendrils flew from the site of the impact before finally, Jiraiya released him, allowing the orb to burst, releasing a wave of chakra that sent him flying, slamming into the ground and kicking up a cloud of dust. Jiraiya landed only a few feet away. The Taki missing nin lay there, motionless, lifeless eyes staring up into the starry night sky. Naruto and Fu vs Haiden. Naruto was confused as hell. For all the hype surrounding the Akatsuki's power and perceived threat to the elemental nations, he had really expected them to be the toughest ninja he would ever have to face. I mean, this was a criminal organization comprised of S-rank ninja, the toughest of the tough, the kind of ninja that could destroy a small ninja village by themselves and could also hunt down Jinchuriki like they were ordinary shinobi. And yet, his fight with Haiden was going in the opposite direction that he would have expected. The Akatsuki member was slow, short-tempered, impatient, and he telegraphed all his moves. He only used taijutsu with his triple-blade scythe as a weapon. Sure, he had tremendous control of his scythe, amazing stamina, and healing abilities, but other than that, the man showed no qualities that would warrant him an S-rank status. Despite the fact that he was losing the battle, Haiden did not stop to re-evaluate his opponents or form some sort of strategy, nor did he use a single ninjutsu or a genjutsu against them. Due to the enhanced Sage Mode speed and great control over the wind element, Naruto was able to easily avoid, dodge, and counter Haiden's attacks. Finally, Naruto got fed up with the man's predictable routine as he ducked, avoiding the outstretched scythe, and then countered with a brutal wind-powered uppercut that sent Haiden flying into the air. He quickly pressed the attack as he reappeared behind Haiden in the air and delivered another Raiznan on his back that sent him crashing back down on the ground. Fuck, Haiden cried out as he stood up again, ripping his torn Akatsuki robe off him. I'm really getting sick of that jutsu of yours, you little bastard, he said as he glared at Naruto. I could say the same with you, Naruto replied with a frown. How are you even in the Akatsuki? Because you are, quite frankly, one of the weakest people I've ever faced. Oh yeah? Wait until I put my curse on you, you little shit, Haiden lashed out, giving a fierce grin in the end. Trust me, I will enjoy our pain. Naruto's frown deepened because he didn't understand what the man was saying. He tilted his head to look at Fu, who had been pretty much non-existent throughout this battle. Hey, is this guy capable of anything other than swinging his scythe and cursing people out, he asked. I'm sorry, I was fighting Kakuzu while he was fighting my teammates, so I didn't see much of what he can do, sorry, the girl answered, slightly put out by the fact that she was basically useless in this battle. Don't underestimate me, Haiden shouted, enraged. So what if I'm the slowest member in the Akatsuki and not the smartest? There is a reason I belong to the fucking group. Oh, and I can't wait to show it to you. I've already prayed for forgiveness from Jashin-sama, so all I need is just one thing from you, and I will get it the slightest chance I get, the Jashinist said, seemingly losing himself in thought. Once our bodies are linked, you will witness just how great Jashin-sama really is, and you will realize the great power he has bestowed upon me. Oh yeah? Well then, let's see how your great Jashin helps you deal with this, Naruto said as he charged at Haiden with great speed, using his wind manipulation to once again appear behind Haiden. Naruto attempted a high roundhouse kick, which Haiden dodged and quickly countered by swinging his scythe upwards. Naruto simply stepped on the cable connecting the scythe and used it as a launching pad to take to the air. Haiden followed after him but quickly regretted the idea when Naruto came back down with a huge Raiznan. Massive Raiznan, Naruto said as he drove the jutsu into the Jashinist's chest, going back down with him as they reached the ground with enough speed to cause a sizable crater. Naruto used a Shunshin to stand next to Fu as he said, well, it appears that's that. We should go help Jiraiya. Ow, man, I really hate you, kid. Haiden screamed out, interrupting him as he once again stood up. What the hell? You're still alive? Naruto exclaimed, shocked that Haiden was still able to stand despite the really large hole in his chest. Told you I'm immortal, dumbass, the Akatsuki member replied with a furious grin as his wounded chest started to heal. He further shocked the two teens when he brought the scythe up to his face and gave the two Jinchuriki a feral look. I also told you that all I needed was one chance, didn't I? Haiden's face lit up in a sadistic grin as he leapt away. As he moved backward, he brought the scythe to his mouth and licked blood off of the blade. When he was satisfied with the speed, he quickly drew a seal on the ground. The preparations are complete. Haiden cackled in an almost insane manner as he stepped into the seal. You're now under my curse. The Jinchuriki would have commented on this before his body began to shift. His skin turned black with white, skeleton-like patterns appearing over his body with a skull-like symbol covering his face almost like a mask, giving him an appearance slightly reminiscent of a stereotypical Grim Reaper. I have been waiting for this, he said as he reached into the remnants of his coat and pulled out a collapsible pike, which he promptly opened up. And I want to make it slow and enjoyable, so then, let's revel in some glorious pain. Jiraiya vs Kakuzu. Jiraiya sighed as he looked down at the defeated Akatsuki member. That had been a fairly difficult battle. Now all that was left was to. Suddenly, he sensed something coming at him, fast. Looking up, his eyes widened in shock as he saw the three remaining masked creatures flying toward him and their master. The Sannin had expected the jutsu to be cancelled as soon as Kakuzu fell, but apparently not. He jumped backward as the three slammed into Kakuzu, breaking apart into masses of threads as they neared him and re-merging with his body. Jiraiya watched, disbelief written on his features as the man rose to his feet, the seams in his body bulging and retracting as the threads beneath his skin shifted, and they burst from his body in masses. His arms separated from his body, linked together via the threads, and a large mass of it spilled out from his lips. His back completely opened up, allowing writhing tentacles made of the tendrils to form as the earth and wind-spewing masks fastened themselves where Kakuzu's shoulders should have been, the fire mask vanishing into his body. Jiraiya took stock of his adversary's new form with a grim expression. How was he still alive? There was no way he'd missed his heart, and for that brief moment, he'd definitely been dead. The way that he revived when those things returned. I see, there's so much more to the Earth Grudge Fear Jutsu that I didn't know about, Jiraiya began, his mouth twisting in revulsion as he understood. That's how you've survived all these years. You've been using the forbidden jutsu you stole to take the organs, more precisely the hearts of shinobi you killed, and used them to replace your own. That's also what lets you use all the elements. You've been running your chakra through those stolen hearts and using the element of its original owner. You certainly are worthy of your title of Sannin, Kakuzu commented, speaking perfectly clearly despite the massive tendrils coming out of his mouth. You're exactly right. But now I've already lost 3 hearts because of you and that other brat. I'll need to restock, yours and his will do. Jiraiya jumped back off of a branch as a massive tentacle of threads, which tore about a fourth of the branches off of the tree, landing on the ground in a crouch and bolting to the side as the tentacle came back and slammed onto the spot he'd been standing on a mere moment earlier. Kakuzu had transformed once again. His lower and upper jaws had completely separated, allowing a massive tentacle to come out of his mouth, accompanied by 7 more coming from his back and where his shoulders should be. They were linked together by bundles near their bases, allowing him to fly, if need be. The area around them had been devastated by their battle. Dead and torn up trees littered the area, and all the underbrush had been burned and ripped away. Scattered fires slightly illuminated the area, and deep wounds had been carved into the ground. Kakuzu seemed to favor massive, overpowering attacks that were difficult to dodge. Together with his speed and skill, Jiraiya could see why he'd been recruited into the Akatsuki. He idly wondered what Kakuzu would do normally, when he has a teammate he has to watch out for. Remembering his earlier comment, he figured he probably either didn't care and let them get caught in his attacks, or was easily enraged into doing so. which begged the question of how his current partner was still alive. Hopefully, it was either due to luck or simply not having been his partner that long. As Jiraiya dodged the attack, he saw the masks beside Kakuzu's head open up, revealing a mass of wind and an orb of fire. Jiraiya slammed his palms together as the masks released their attacks, creating a massive vortex of electrified water, and slammed his palms to the ground. Barrier, three-pillar formation. A curved, triangular barrier appeared before him, protecting him from the firestorm. He grit his teeth as he channeled chakra into the barrier to block the massive attack. Eventually, the attack passed. Jiraiya released his jutsu the moment it did and bolted forward, but the moment the smoke cleared, he saw the wind mask's mouth was still open, shooting out fast arrows of wind. Jiraiya tried as best he could to dodge them, but they were too fast, thus ended up piercing him in various parts of his body, though fortunately for him, Jiraiya was able to protect his vital spots. But Kakuzu pressed the advantage as he quickly delivered a brutal high kick to the Sunnin's jaw, sending him flying, then used his outstretched hand to grab the sage's foot and slammed him back down to the ground, resulting in a small crater. Before Jiraiya could truly recover, another tentacle then slammed into the Sunnin's chest, sending him flying through one of the damaged trees and into another, creating an indentation in the bark before he fell to the ground, trickles of blood leaking out of his mouth. As he fell through the air, another tentacle sped toward him, separating into its component threads and moving to ensnare him and tear out his heart. Jiraiya managed to recover and land on his feet. Ninja Art Needle Jizo. His hair once again became a mass of needles hard as steel that completely covered every inch of his body just as the tentacle reached him. He then spun on his feet so quickly he appeared to be a miniature tornado, tearing up the mass and causing it to back away. The moment he sensed they were gone, he let up his defense, jumping over the threads when they lashed out again and ducking and dodging them as he charged toward Kakuzu. He snaked around several tentacles that moved to strike him as he neared the Extaki Nin and pulled his arm back, ducking below one final attack and knocking Kakuzu's arm aside before punching him in the gut, causing him to bend over. He then grabbed his head and slammed his knee into his face right between his eyes, dazing him slightly. Jiraiya then summoned a kunao to his right hand and slammed it into the water mask, causing it to cry out as a black substance leaked out, before forming a raisonnan in his free hand as the tentacles moved in to ensnare him. He slammed the orb into Kakuzu's stomach, causing the tendrils to cease their assault and writhe before the attack exploded, sending Kakuzu flying back and away from him. He unfolded his tentacles and used the net of bundles between them to hover in the air, growling in frustration as the remains of his wind heart and mask were expelled from his body, replaced by the fire mask, which began to rapid-fire fireballs at him. Jiraiya quickly body flickered to avoid the barrage of fireballs, which created a massive conflagration when they hit the ground. Feeling the searing heat wash over him as he watched from behind a tree, Jiraiya smirked as he wiped the blood from his chin. There was a reason Itaki and Kisame had feared the prospect of facing him, as Kakuzu was beginning to realize. 3 down, 2 to go, Jiraiya thought as he looked for an opening. Naruto vs. Haiden. Naruto and Fu stared at the silver-haired man, who stood in the center of the seal he had engraved in the ground in blood, his skin black with white, skeletal patterns. What's he talking about? Fu asked, her eyes narrowed and her body tense in concern over their immortal adversary's transformation. While Naruto felt the same trepidation she did, he made a cross-shaped hand seal, summoning 5 more shadow clones. It doesn't matter. If that's what he's been hiding all along, then it's better we know about it now. With that, he sped after him, ready to engage the man and see what the purpose behind his transformation was. Haiden just grinned as he raised the pike and stabbed himself in the leg. Suddenly, Naruto's eyes widened as pain shot through his system. He grit his teeth and gripped his leg and fell on one knee as blood suddenly seeped into his pants, in the exact same place where Haiden had just stabbed himself. Fu ran to the blonde's side, panic clear on her face. "Are you okay?" She stared at his wound, her gaze returning to the Akatsuki as she understood what was happening. Both Jinchuriki had realized that Haiden had somehow just linked their bodies together. Naruto finally understood why Haiden was recruited by Akatsuki. He was unkillable by being able to shrug off any injury, and by taking in the blood of his opponent, he could curse them and link their bodies together, and with his immortality, he could run himself through his heart and act like it was nothing. His opponent, however, wouldn't be so lucky. Haiden cackled as he took in Fu's panicked expression and Naruto's pain-filled, furious one. "The pain as my enemy passes from this world radiates through my body and transcends agony into ecstasy. What's wrong with this guy?" Fu wondered in the back of her mind in disgust over his sadomasochistic tendencies, but that thought was far from the surface of her thoughts. She had to stop Haiden from hurting Naruto through their link. Haiden dropped his scythe, holding onto its cord, before giving her a murderous grin. Fu's eyes widened as she saw what he was going to do. No! All 3 of the scythe's blades stabbed Haiden diagonally through the stomach, though the man didn't seem to react beyond being pushed back by the impact. Fu's horrified gaze turned back to Naruto as he coughed up blood, holding his stomach as blood seeped into his clothing as Haiden began to chuckle, his cackle slowly building until insane laughter echoed through the clearing. Then Haiden's laughter quickly turned to shock as instead of Naruto screaming in pain and dying, he suddenly puffed out of existence. Hayden's transformation then turned back to normal as both he and Few had confused looks on them. Earth-style, headhunter jutsu. Hayden heard from underground as he was quickly grabbed by the feet and dragged down into the earth from feet to neck, thereby completely immobilizing him. I see, so that's why you're considered an S-rank ninja. It has nothing to do with your skills but your inability to be killed and that curse of yours, Naruto said with a condescending smile. What the fuck? How the hell are you still alive? I put my curse on you, Hayden yelled, still unable to believe that the blonde was still alive. You put a curse on my shadow clone, fool. It seems your curse cannot tell the difference between clone and original, Naruto replied. Hey! Few exclaimed, what the hell is wrong with you? You could have at least warned me of your plan. I thought that crazy bastard had managed to kill you, you know? Naruto merely tilted his head and gave the girl a sheepish grin as he scratched the back of his neck. Sorry about that. I just wanted to see what this idiot was capable of, and using a shadow clone seemed like the best way to do so, he said. Still could have warned me, Few mumbled. She felt stupid that she fell for something like that. You know what? Fuck rituals. I'm going to kill you with my bare hands. The enraged Jashinist roared, apparently about to start digging himself out of the ground with his bare hands while yelling out curses. I'm going to chop off your dick and feed it to you. I'm going to. Not without a head, you're not. Naruto took out a kunao, coated it with wind chakra, and cut the head off the crazed Jashinist. Well then, that should do it. The fuck? How dare you cut off my head? Now Kakuzu is going to bitch at me all day, the bodiless head of Hayden roared, incensed. It continued spewing profanities until Naruto got fed up and sealed it in a scroll. Why are you sealing it away? Why not just burn him or something? Few asked. Well, he belongs to a group of S-ranked criminals currently hunting down people like us, so it would be better to take him back to the village to be questioned, the blonde replied, giving her a small smile. People like us? Oh right, sorry, I am a. Hayden, a voice called out. All eyes were drawn to its source as Kakuzu entered the clearing, the Jinchuriki's eyes turning to him. So you're still alive, huh? Where is Jiraiya? The blonde Jinchuriki asked in a dangerous tone. In hell. Where is Hayden? Countered the Extaki Nin. Naruto pointed at the headless body of Hayden, still underground, and answered with a glare, dead, just like you will be soon. He knew that Kakuzu was lying because he could still sense Jiraiya's chakra. Plus, if Kakuzu's appearance was anything to go by, then he must have used some sort of distraction to escape Jiraiya, hoping that he'd find his partner and escape. Kakuzu growled irritably as more tendrils snaked down the missing nin's back. He had underestimated Jiraiya and lost all his last remaining hearts, and he wasn't planning on losing his last one to this upstart. He was still surprised that Hayden had just been defeated, but now he had to escape before Jiraiya got here because the odds were too heavily stacked against him. Before anything more could be said, Kakuzu opened his mouth, channeling 90% of his remaining chakra before spewing a large wave of fire at the pair. Both jumped back before it exploded in front of them, the shockwave pushing both through the air and creating a large smokescreen as they skidded across the ground. Once their line of sight was clear, they saw that the Akatsuki member was gone. Sensing someone else approach, they turned to see Jiraiya drop into the clearing from the treetops. The man's Haorian shirt were torn slightly in a few places. He sported scratches on his cheek, and there were drops of blood on his shirt, but otherwise, he was okay. Should we go after him? Naruto asked, ready for pursuit. He could sense where the defeated shinobi was, and due to his injuries, he wasn't moving that fast. No need. How did you guys fare over here? The Sannin responded, panting. Once again, Naruto pointed at the headless body of Hayden, still underground. As you can see, I was too awesome for him. Kind of a bit too brutal, don't you think? Jiraiya frowned as he looked at the body. Well, the bastard wouldn't die by conventional means, so I chopped his head off. Plus, believe it or not, he's still alive. I just sealed away his head for questioning later, Naruto said as he gave Jiraiya the scroll with Hayden's head in it. I see. Well, congrats on defeating your first S-rank shinobi. The Sannin took the scroll and sealed it in another scroll. With the danger taken care of, all attention was now turned on Few. Jiraiya asked the girl to identify herself, to which Few replied with her name, rank, village, and how the Akatsuki members found her. Jiraiya frowned as he listened to the last part. His spies had reported to him that the Akatsuki wouldn't move after Jinchuriki for 3 years. It had only been 2.5 years. Could it be possible that he was wrong and the Akatsuki used his spy network to spread false information while they worked in the dark? He wasn't sure about the answer, but if that's what it was, then he needed to warn the other villages, and quickly. Turning back to his student and the Nanabe Jinchuriki, both of whom seemed to be just fine. Naruto had a few abrasions on him, but they weren't of any significance. Compared to him, Naruto seemed to have had the easier battle, so he congratulated himself for the decision to hand Hayden over to them. It seems he overestimated the Exugakur Nin after all. On the other hand, while Few had only taken one small slash to the side as far as cuts go, she had obviously taken quite a few blows herself in her earlier battles with the Akatsuki duo. Though all the Jinchuriki had enhanced healing, only the Kyuubi allowed its host to heal from minor wounds in seconds and critical injuries overnight or in moments when its power was applied. While her injuries had somewhat healed and there were no bruises, it was still apparent she'd suffered some blunt force trauma, though considering the fact that she was still standing, Jiraiya took it as a sign that she was fine. "Looks like you two had a tough time of it," Naruto said with a smirk, eyeing Jiraiya. "You don't know the half of it, kid," the Sannin replied. "Well, at least your opponent was capable of more than just taijutsu, stupid curses, and useless monologues," Naruto complained. He expected a battle for his survival and all he got was a sadistic maniac who wasn't even Gai-sensei's level of taijutsu, though he quickly frowned as he thought about it. "I get the feeling that Guy wasn't particularly high up on the food chain in their group. He was probably the weakest one, seeing as how I easily defeated him," he explained. "Probably. Kakuzu was a different beast. If he still had that remaining heart you destroyed, I might have had to use Sage Mode, just to defeat him," agreed Jiraiya. "I guess, so what now? If these guys have already started hunting down tailed beasts, then we need to warn the other villages. Fortunately, Suna is a couple of miles away, so we can go there first and drop the girl there." A few minutes later, both Jinchuriki and Sannin were atop two clones transformed into hawks, Jiraiya on one and the two teens on another, as they flew to Suna. "So, thanks a lot for saving me," Fu said, giving the blonde a small bow. "No problem. Those guys were already on my shit list from the beginning," the blonde replied with a grin, now fully facing the dark-skinned girl. "You said something about people like us earlier. What did you mean?" Right, I'm a Jinchuriki as well." "Wait, you're just like me?" Fu asked, shocked. "Yep, I got the 9 tails, and you?" "Kome, I mean the 7 tails. It has a name?" Naruto seemed stunned at that. Who in their right mind would start naming tailed beasts? The girl nodded, though it likes to be called Lucky Number 7, and it couldn't sense any tailed beast in you. It says your chakra can hardly be distinguished from the environment, that's why I was so shocked that you're also a Jinchuriki. Well, that's just a technique I use. Never mind that, it sounds like the two of you have a friendly relationship. Are you the one who named him Kome? The blonde asked. No, he told me his name when I was being trained to use his power. Apparently all tailed beasts have names, he replied, further shocking the blonde. He has never heard anyone calling the fox any name other than Kyuubi, so he doubted if what the girl said applied to all other beasts. Then again, he recalled when he was battling Gaara and Gamabunta referred to the one tail as Shikaka the Sand Spirit. Perhaps they did have names after all. That's something he's going to have to look into. Hey, can you teach me this technique of yours? You know, the one that conceals the tailed beast's chakra? Fu requested hopefully. Naruto had explained to her who the Akatsuki were and what they were after, so she hoped that if she could learn a way to hide her status as a Jinchuriki, then maybe it would boost her hopes of survival. Sorry, I can't, the blonde replied, though he did feel bad when he saw the disappointed look on the girl. He explained to her why Sage Mode was unique to him and why he couldn't teach it to her, which she accepted but was still disappointed. It seemed her life was anything but lucky after all. Just when Fu thought she had finally created some friends and everything was beginning to look up, she finds out that an organization full of S-rank ninja was after her. Her heart sunk further when she thought of what her village would say if they found out about this. No doubt they would hate her more, claiming that she has brought a curse upon them. She didn't even have her teammates to back her up, though thinking back on it, her teammates wouldn't have been any help either. She sighed sadly, wondering if it would have been better if the Akatsuki had taken her after all. Hey, Naruto put a hand on her shoulder. You're not alone in this, we are going to defeat those guys together. You can count on it, the blonde said with determination, hoping it would lift her spirits up. Yeah, hopefully though beating these guys isn't my only problem. I see. It's your village then? Naruto asked, getting a surprised look from the girl. She wanted to ask how he knew but then remembered that he was also a Jinchuriki, which meant that he was probably going through the same situation as well, so she opted to keep quiet. Does it ever get any better? The Nanabe Jinchuriki finally asked after what seemed like an eternity of silence. She was looking away from Naruto as she asked this question because she didn't want the boy to see her resigned expression. In her heart, she knew that though she was asking that question, only a miracle would turn the villagers' views of her. Naruto frowned as he thought of his own situation. He didn't know if his life was better. 3 years ago, he would have definitely said that it was, but now, looking back on it, it seemed he just wanted to believe what he wanted to believe. I honestly don't know, he finally responded truthfully. But I know that having someone you can talk to helps. Fu only gave a bitter laugh at that. Easier said than done. I've been isolated and ostracized by the entire village all my life, and now it's gotten to the point that I've since accepted my fate in Taki, so my only hope of ever having friends is outside the village, like during the Chunin exams. I'm sorry to hear that, but you can always count on me as a friend and fellow Jinchuriki. Maybe we can send letters to each other? Naruto said with a smile as he put a hand on her shoulder. I'd like that, said Fu, returning the smile. You know, this really is a small world. You are already the second Jinchuriki I've met, and as soon as we reach Suna, I will introduce you to the first, the blonde said with a grin. Really, who is he? Fu asked, obviously excited with the opportunity to make a new friend and a fellow Jinchuriki as well. Gaara. He was a crazed maniac at first. He believed that only killing people would prove his existence to the world, but after our battle, he mellowed out, the blonde said fondly. I know, I'm kind of excited to see him after so long. I'm interested in seeing what he's doing these days. Wait a minute, Gaara? As in the Kaze cage? Gaara. Gaara is the Kaze cage. The hell? With Kakuzu. Kakuzu was running through the woods with an angry look on him. He has truly never been this incensed in his entire life. First, he loses 4 of his hearts, his stupid partner somehow gets himself killed, which he found to be quite ironic considering the Jashinist was a self-proclaimed immortal, and now here he was, still looking for a heart to restock. Honestly, at this point, it didn't even matter if he ran into some weakling, all he wanted was a heart. His mood darkened further when he heard a voice requesting his presence through the Akatsuki ring. It seemed the leader was somehow aware that Haydn had died, which got him to question what else could be done through the ring other than communicating and locating someone. None of that matters now, he thought as he continued hopping on trees. He didn't have the time or patience to deal with the Akatsuki right now. Honestly, you would think being so close to a major village I'd run into some ninja, the rogue nin thought with a growl. When he reached the Suna Desert, the Akatsuki member ran into quite possibly the worst ninja he would ever wish of running into in his current state. Kukikiku, such an interesting coincidence to run into an old friend, at Kakuzu-kun, the man said in his usual playful yet condescending tone. Very pale skin, golden eyes with slitted pupils, purple markings around his eyes, and fang-like teeth. This person needed no introduction at all. Orochimaru, Kakuzu growled back. When it came to Orochimaru, Kakuzu knew that there was no such thing as coincidence. This day just wasn't his day. Orochimaru stood on top of his main summon, Manda, with a menacing grin plastered on his face and Suzuki and Kabuto on either side of him. What the hell do you want? Kakuzu asked, making sure not to make any unnecessary moves lest he regret it. How rude, is that any way to treat an old friend? The snake Sunin commented with a fake hurt look. What do you want, Orochimaru? So eager, the Sunin shook his head as he tisked, resembling the way a parent would act when scolding a child. Well, since you're such in a hurry to die, I'll tell you. Kakuzu narrowed his eyes at that and assumed a defensive position, leaking his killer intent in the process. Still, Orochimaru ignored him or just didn't acknowledge his actions as he continued speaking. You and I are both ambassadors of immortality, Kakuzu-kun. We have our own ways of pursuing it, but the end result is still the same. We both desire to live forever and achieve our own ambitions, and thus we have conditioned our bodies to be able to withstand and match our ambitions. So I thought to myself, what would happen if we merged our bodies into one being? We'd be one step closer to true immortality. What do you say, Kakuzu-kun? Tempting, but I'll have to pass, Kakuzu responded, not really liking where this conversation was going. Kukikiku, but I'm afraid you don't have a choice, the Sunin said, giving a look to Suzuki. Would you please do me the honors, Suzuki-kun? The only warning Kakuzu got was Suzuki appearing in front of him with a sword in hand. Yep, today really wasn't Kakuzu's day. Suna. No matter how many times Jiraiya and Fu told him, he still couldn't believe it. He wouldn't believe it until he saw it with his own eyes. As soon as they reached the gates of Sunagakur, Naruto took off at top speed for the Kaze Cage Tower. He was so excited that he almost ran into a dozen people, so he decided to take to the rooftops instead. The blonde sage couldn't keep the grin off his face. During the entire training trip, he had always found himself wondering if it was truly possible for the Hidden Leaf Village to look past his Jinchuriki status and finally accept him. He couldn't count the nights he sat up wondering if he would get the chance to settle down and have children who wouldn't be tormented by the village because of him, and now it looks like he finally had the answer. If it was true and Gaara really was Kaze Cage, then it really was possible. Just like him, the one-tailed Jinchuriki had been criticized and shunned by the Suna citizens. Even his own father had even tried to have him assassinated, and he retaliated by murdering people to prove his own existence, further straining the relationship between village and Jinchuriki. But now, just 2.5 years after Gaara stopped murdering people, he actually managed to earn their admiration and acknowledgement so much so that they named him the 5th Kaze Cage. It really gave him hope. Naruto was so lost in thought that he didn't recall when he reached the cage tower or even ran up the stairs, but he just opened the door of the cage office with fervor, ignoring the receptionist's protests, and there he was. Fair skin, green eyes, short, spiky red hair, a kanji for love tattooed on the left part of his forehead, and now wearing cage robes. The now 5th Kaze Cage had an irritated look on his face which quickly turned to shock when he saw who just rudely entered his office. And Naruto, you bet your ass I am. You're the Kazekage now, the blonde countered, walking into the office and giving the redhead a hug. Yes I am, Gaara replied with a small smile. Although he was surprised with the hug, he couldn't remember the last time anyone had ever done that, and what was more surprising was the fact that his san did not move to protect him. I'm sorry, Kazekage-sama, the receptionist said, giving him a low bow. I tried to stop him but he just wouldn't listen. It's alright, Naruto is a close friend of mine, the redhead said, waving her away. 3 years later and you're still a handful, he said to the blonde, who merely gave him a foxy grin. Trust me, he's even worse than he was then, Jiraiya quipped from a window, giving the two a smile. Jiraiya-sama. Kazekage-sama. Gaara nodded in greeting as he took his eyes to Jiraiya's neighbor on the window, Ataki Genin he recognized as Fu. Fu? What are you doing here? Kazekage-sama, I was attacked on my way to the village by the Akatsuki, and Jiraiya-sama and Naruto-kun saved me, he responded respectfully, though she couldn't keep the blush off her face. Akatsuki, yes, that's why we are here. To warn you about them, Jiraiya answered in a serious tone. Gaara nodded and brought his eyes back to Naruto. He didn't see it at first but now he could see how his fellow Jinchuriki had grown. He was no longer wearing orange clothing but black shinobi pants, boots, and a dark blue long-sleeved shirt with a black cloak with orange flames at the bottom on top of it all. But what truly caught the young Kage's attention was the power he could feel radiating off the blonde in his eyes, golden yellow eyes with bar-like pupils and orange markings around them. You've changed, Gaara commented with a raised brow. Oh you mean my eyes? Just a product of my training. I'll tell you all about it when you're done with the perv. I like that, Gaara responded with a smile as Naruto and Fu left the room to give Jiraiya and him some privacy. Orochimaru's hideout. Orochimaru couldn't get the grin off his face as he watched Kabuto experiment on an unconscious Kakuzu. The Akatsuki member had put up a good, desperate fight for survival but Sasuke prevailed in the end. He watched, fascinated, and thoroughly pleased as Kabuto put Kimamaro's heart into the Extaki Nin where his stolen hearts would normally be, earning a pained groan from the man. Anyone else seeing this would have surely been creeped out, but it only formed goosebumps on Orochimaru's person. May I ask you a question, Orochimaru-sama? Kabuto asked, his mind still on his work. You may, Kabuto. You've wanted an Uchiha to be your vessel. It's practically the main reason you wanted Sasuke as your apprentice, so why have you suddenly chosen Kakuzu as your next one? Orochimaru chuckled at that, fully expecting the question. To be honest, I've always been interested in Kakuzu's technique, and yes, I still want an Uchiha vessel but Itachi still remains my primary target, the Sannin said, moving closer to Kabuto as he continued watching. You see, ever since Sasuke-kun came here, I've always known that he wouldn't allow me to get his body unless I forced it with all my power. The boy's a genius, yes, but he's not as smart as he thinks he is. Chances are that he would have betrayed me after his training was done, he finished. So why continue to train him? Kabuto pressed. He was clearly getting even more curious about his master's plans. To hunt down his brother, of course. The Snake Sannin said as he started inspecting the blood samples and the data Kabuto was collecting. When we're done with his training, I will give him a team and allow him to go after his brother, and when that glorious day comes that they do battle, you and I won't be far away, Kabuto-kun. The day Itachi-kun and Sasuke-kun have their long-awaited battle, I will truly be invincible, Orochimaru stated in a menacing yet determined tone that quickly changed into full-blown maniacal laughter. Haiden and Kakuzu are both dead, the commanding yet slightly sexy voice of Pain stated. It was clear that the man was not in a good mood. Truthfully speaking, he never was, and now it just somehow seemed to get worse, and who could blame him? He had gathered the most dangerous S-rank shinobi in history to bring peace to the world and then suddenly two of them dropped dead before their missions truly begin. Someone was going to pay dearly. All members of the Akatsuki were surprised by the revelation. Even Itachi looked quite shocked at that. Even though he would never show it, he felt quite elated that Haiden was actually dead. The one time he was forced to be partners with the Jashinist had been the worst mission of his life. He shuddered slightly as the memory resurfaced. The former Umbu had to give a bit of respect to Kakuzu for dealing with Haiden every day since his introduction to the criminal organization. What the hell, an equally surprised Kisame said. He really liked that duo, or, more specifically, he really liked messing with them. The zombie brothers are dead. Quite ironic that the so-called immortals are the first to die. Sasori commented. Who killed them, Leader-sama? Itachi asked, his monotone expression giving nothing away even though he really was interested in finding out who killed Haiden. It is still unclear, Pain admitted. Though all signs point to Orochimaru. Kakuzu's ring and Orochimaru's Akatsuki ring are at the same location, and I can't sense Haiden's. I'm guessing it's sealed somewhere. Wow. Tobiad, earning an annoyed expression from everybody, except Kisame, who seemed to find the mask-wearing fool to be quite funny. Orochimaru must have gotten super strong to be able to defeat the zombie brothers, so it would seem, the Akatsuki leader agreed. Ever since he left the organization, Orochimaru has always stayed clear of us, but now, all of a sudden, the snake has the audacity to actually attack us. Konan pointed out as she assessed this new situation. He's plotting something big. Nevertheless, such actions will not be tolerated. If he really wants to provoke us, then it must mean that he's at least ready to deal with the consequences, said Pain, giving everyone of the Akatsuki a look before finally deciding. I will go to the Sound Village myself and flush him out. But, Naga, Pain, wouldn't it be better if Itachi and Kisame went instead? I'm pretty sure Orochimaru was expecting you to hunt him down, and knowing him, he's probably got something up his sleeves, Konan appealed with her last friend, her concern for him clear in her tone. Seriously, she knew very well just how powerful Nagato really was. Only a few shinobi could ever hope to touch him, but Orochimaru was a different kind of shinobi. There was a good reason why he was called a once-in-a-lifetime genius in Konoha. This was the same shinobi who attacked Itachi despite the fact that he knew that the odds were stacked against him, went to one of the big five in Suna and killed them, and did it again in Konoha just a few weeks later. When it came to Orochimaru, it didn't matter how powerful you were, the fact remained that if he was actually willing to face you in battle, then that means he definitely had something up his sleeves. It matters not what the snake has planned, I will go, and he shall realize the true power of God, Pain commanded in a tone that invited no objections, and yet, I agree with Konan-san, Itachi said, surprising everyone. Kisame and I are much closer to the hidden Sound Village than you, so we can easily go there and hunt down Orochimaru. The Uchiha criminal was rewarded with looks of astonishment. Even Pain raised his brows to signal his surprise. Ever since he joined the Akatsuki, Itachi has never volunteered for any mission that would most likely involve battle. It was actually well known within the Akatsuki that, despite the violent past of the Exumbu, the man himself avoided battle and would most of the time put his opponents in a fatal genjutsu rather than fight them head-on, so why would Itachi volunteer for such a mission when all signs pointed to Orochimaru seemingly being ready for them? While everyone else was pondering about this, for Itachi, the objective was clear, he was going to do everything in his power to avoid any meeting or confrontation between Pain and Suzuki, at all possible costs. The very idea of his little brother being so close to Orochimaru filled him with sleepless nights. Adding Pain to the equation is something he wouldn't even dare think about. Itachi had no idea how powerful their leader was, but any man capable of controlling a criminal organization of 10 S-rank shinobi was a man to fear. No, he won't allow this to happen. He was even willing to attack the Akatsuki leader himself in order to protect his brother. So you want to go snake hunting, huh? I like it, Kisame said with an excited grin, his shark-like face lighting up in anticipation. I was kind of pissed that we ran from Jiraiya 3 years ago. Now I get another chance to tussle with another Sunin. Not so fast, Shark Boy. I already declared Orochimaru to be my target. So if there's anyone going to Sound, it's me. Deidara spoke for the first time. Besides, I've been dying to display my art on a village. Only one C3 is enough for such a lousy village. Get in line, girly. We've already decided. And how many times do I have to tell you that blowing things up isn't art, real art is? Enough, Pain ordered. He wasn't in any mood to deal with stupid arguments. Leader Sama. Tobi's voice was heard as he raised his hand, waiting to be given permission to talk, and Pain nodded. Perhaps I should go to Sound. No one is interested in your stupidity, Tobi. I'm going to Sound, and there's nothing this blue fish can do about it. How about if I cut your legs? True art doesn't need legs, But that's what I'm talking about, Deidara-senpai. Everyone here is so cool and dangerous, so I want to go so that I can become just like you, pretty please, Tobi begged childishly, which only served to annoy Deidara all the more. I said shut up, Tobi. This mission is mine and I'm not going to say it again. Enough. Their leader commanded in a dangerously low tone. A few minutes of silence passed as Nagato considered his choices. On one hand, he really wanted to personally search for the snake himself and show him what happens when one defied a god, but then again, Itachi and Kisame were also fully capable of doing so. He also had to put Konan's reservations into consideration. No matter how powerful he was, Nagato knew that Orochimaru was too sneaky an individual to not have something up his sleeves. Perhaps he was even doing this to draw out Nagato himself for the Rinnegan, or Itachi for the Sharingan, or even both. And so he decided, Tobi, you and Zetsu will search for him. I will give you the exact coordinates of the Akatsuki rings, because it is high time you proved yourself useful to the Akatsuki. Yes, Tobi exclaimed obnoxiously, receiving an annoyed look from Deidara. Though I do have to warn you, failure will not be tolerated, the leader warned. Don't worry, boss man, we've got this in the bag. Suna. Kankuro was not a good cook, which was quite surprising to Naruto, considering the fact the man wore makeup. He would claim it to be war paint, but considering Suna was not in any war, the blonde still maintained his belief that it was makeup stolen from his sister. Which was another thing he found disheartening to hear, that Temari was an even worse cook than both their brothers. No wonder Gaara was once demented. By the way, where is Tamari anyway? I haven't seen her since we came, the blonde asked the two Savika brothers as he tried not to grimace from the taste of the food. He was definitely going to a ramen stand after this. She's in Konoha discussing Ichinen exams with the Godame and some other trade business, Gaara responded, having already finished his meal. It seems he had gotten used to the atrocious food. Poor Gaara. She will be back in 2 weeks' time, though, Kankuro finished with a satisfied smile on him and a hand on his belly. Stupid bastard. Naruto really felt jealous that Jiraiya was somewhere else having a proper meal while doing his research, though it did give him a small smile when he saw Fu also struggling to keep the food down. So, have you made any preparations for the Akatsuki? Yes, traps and battle strategies are being set up as we speak. Plus, Master Jiraiya was kind enough to help us create a better seal for the village, Gaara explained. We will not allow the Akatsuki to enter this village, much less get what they're coming after. That's good to hear. We need to put an end to those bastards as soon as possible. Their conversation was halted when a messenger entered the room, delivering a message requesting for Gaara and Kankuro to the council chambers. Excuse us, the two brothers said. No sooner had they disappeared than Naruto stood up as well, and, although he didn't wait for a response, he said to his fellow Jinchuriki, "Great, let's go to a ramen stand before they come back." 15 minutes later. So what do you think of Gaara? Great guy, huh? The blonde asked, mid-slurp, therefore unable to see the blush dawned on Fu's face. Yeah, quite young as well. It is quite inspirational to meet such a young Kage who also happens to be a Jinchuriki, she answered, getting a grin from her companion. Yeah, it is, he agreed. I guess seeing what he has accomplished finally answers your question, huh? Things can get better for us. Yeah, the girl smiled softly. So, have you gotten in touch with your village? Naruto asked, getting a frown from the girl. Yeah, they're sending a couple of jonin to come and get me, and Kazekage-sama is also going to send his shinobi to escort me, as well. They should be here in 2 weeks' time, she answered, though she really hoped that they never showed up. The few weeks spent outside the village would have been the best moments of her life, barring the Akatsuki attack, of course. She had finally made some friends, felt welcome, and she was actually growing attached to the village hidden in the sand. Nobody gave her eyes of disapproval here, no insults, glares, or mistreatment, and a lot of people actually treated her like an honored guest with so much respect because they had spotted her with Gaara in the streets. The Nanabe Jinchuriki could only imagine how her life would be like living in such a place. She wanted to plead to her village to allow her to stay in Suna, but she knew that it would be impossible. Hell, they might even accuse her of being a traitor for simply suggesting such a thing. You know, constantly worrying about something doesn't really help your state of mind, Naruto commented as he sat down his fifth bowl. I know, I just can't help it. You guys are still hungry, the two heard, and when Fu turned around, she found Gaara staring at them with a raised brow. Well, we are. Kankuro's cooking sucks, Naruto replied bluntly, not bothering to turn. Is that so? The young Kage asked as he joined them, sitting next to Fu. Yeah, I'm surprised you haven't tried to kill him yet. That actually got the redhead to smile. Trust me, Uzumaki, if you've ever tasted Tamari's cooking, Kankuro would seem like a gourmet chef. Why not hire a cook? Fu asked curiously. We do have one, Kankuro just likes to cook sometimes. Well, he sucks. Just don't tell him that. The three Jinchuriki spent close to an hour at the ramen stand talking about different topics, and it could have been even longer if one of Jiraiya's agents hadn't disturbed them. Excuse me, Kazekage-sama, Fusan, Jiraiya-sama has requested Naruto-kun's presence at the hotel. He didn't say what it was about, but he did say that it was urgent, the middle-aged man said with a bow. Well, I guess that's my cue to leave. Let me see what the perv wants, the blonde said, standing up. I'll see you guys tomorrow. With that, he disappeared with a wind vortex shunshin. So, Gaara started, looking at his fellow Jinchuriki, what do you think of Suna? The girl's face practically lit up at that. Gaara never thought that he could ever hear someone else sound so patriotic about a place that wasn't their home, and he did smile happily when she told him about how welcome she felt in this place. Being a Jinchuriki himself, he understood just how toxic one's own village can be towards you and your state of health, so seeing her happy warmed his heart. I'm really glad you like it, he told her. Have you had a tour around the village? Not really, I didn't want to trespass, she responded. In Taki, practically everywhere she went was trespassing, whether it was in the streets, the stores, even at the waterfall. The people always made sure to make her feel unwanted, therefore she learned to keep to herself in her own home or training grounds. That way nobody would reprimand her for daring to breathe the same air as them. Old habits, she thought miserably at those memories. Well, perhaps I could show you around. He stood up, his cheeks the slightest shade of pink, though he looked away to hide it. That is, if you're not too busy. Fu gave him a smile as she stood up as well. I'd love to, Kazekage-sama. You don't have to be so formal. All my friends can call me Gaara. Friend. The pair paid for their food and started their walk as they learned more about each other. By the time they were done, neither realized that it was well past midnight. Meanwhile, "So, what's up?" Naruto asked from the hotel window, having just arrived, though his guard went up as soon as he saw his sensei's serious expression. "Is something wrong, Jiraiya?" "I don't know, you tell me," the older sage responded evenly, his expression as serious as the blonde has ever seen it. Hell, the atmosphere was quite literally cold. "I don't understand. I hear the Kaze cage is creeping into your girl." Care to explain? The Sunin moved closer to the blonde, eyeing Naruto with a penetrative gaze. "Yeah, this wasn't creepy at all. What the hell are you talking abo? Naruto, I'm serious. What's going on with Fu and Gaara?" The Sunin placed both of his hands on the Jinchuriki's shoulders, his face 5 inches away. The blonde could practically feel the warm air coming out of Jiraiya's nose and mouth. "What the? Nothing is going on, they're just friends, that's all." Naruto tried to shake his sensei's hands off of him, but his grip was too firm. "Oh really? What about the long gazes, the subtle flirts, the blushing?" The Sunin proceeded to shake Naruto. "The blushing, man. That's a dangerous sign right there." "Aha." The blonde gave his clearly insane sensei a sweat drop expression, which got the said to raise his arms in the air as a sign of frustration. "I can't believe this," the Sunin exclaimed. "I have taught you many things, Naruto, more than I have ever taught my previous students, but how in the hell have I failed to educate you in the arts of women and seduction, huh?" Jiraiya was now kneeling in front of Naruto, both his hands around the blonde's legs and his eyes on the verge of tears. "Please, at least tell me you did something with those girls at the brothel." "Jiraiya, that's it, I'm a failure. I acknowledge it. First Nagato, then Minato, and now you. I claim to be the greatest teacher and yet I couldn't even open your eyes to the wonders of the female form," the devastated man cried. Well, technically, the statement wasn't completely correct, as Minato was popular with Kunoichi, but still, the man settled down way too early for Jiraiya's tastes. "Your only option now is to kidnap Gaara and..." "Hey," Naruto scowled, clearly hurt that his master thought he was so clueless with women. "First of all, Gaara and Fu are just friends, there's nothing going on there." "That's what he wants you to think," Jiraiya interjected. "Shut up. Secondly, I didn't do anything with those girls because I'm not stupid enough to give my first time to some whore in a brothel. And thirdly, I'm not romantically interested in Fu, alright. If I was, trust me, Jiraiya, she'd be mine by now." The Jinchuriki finished smugly. "Hey," Jiraiya snorted. "That's what you nice guys want to believe. I mean, who do you think you're attracting with those lines, 'What's your name? What's your sign?' But as soon as you buy that wine, Gaara just creeps up from behind and asks her what her interests are, who she's been with, things that make her smile, and what numbers to dial. She's gonna be here for a while, and she's gonna call her crew, and he's gonna call his crew, and they can rendezvous at the bar around 2. The pervert breathed heavily when he was finished with his tirade. The hell are you quoting Biggie Smalls? That doesn't matter. What matters right now is that you've lost another girl to another one of your so-called friends. Okay, this is now becoming stupid." The blonde's hand sat on his forehead, signaling his frustration. "Is it? I say this is becoming a trend. Next thing you know, is this why you called me here? Yeah, well, this, and also the scroll on the table," Jiraiya said, a bit flustered that he actually forgot the real reason he called his student. When Naruto walked to the table and picked up the scroll, what he read gave him the shock of his life. Name: Karen Uzumaki. Age: 16. Gender: female. Clan: Uzumaki. Rank: N/A. Classification: Censor, Medic Nin. Affiliation: Otogakur. There's another one. Naruto couldn't keep the disbelief out of his tone. Yeah, it was real. There was another Uzumaki in this world. He couldn't believe it. Naruto read over the details again just to make sure that he hadn't misread. He had spoken a lot about reviving his clan, bringing back their lost glory and seeing their insignia on the backs of its members. But his hopes of ever finding another Uzumaki were rather slim. He had always thought that he would have to be put in the CRA, Clan Restoration Act, to regrow the clan, but now, maybe this was only the beginning, maybe there were more Uzumaki out there. Surely a few of them would have managed to escape the destruction of Uza just like Karen's parents, and if they were, then he would surely find them and bring them home. He looked at the picture on the scroll again. Karen, huh? Well, just give me a few more days, Karen. I'm coming for you, he thought as he looked over the information on her again. Is she Orochimaru's prisoner or subordinate? He asked his sensei. Subordinate, Jiraiya responded seriously before taking a sip of his sake. Reports say that her parents left Uza right before it was destroyed and they took refuge in Kusagakur. Nothing much is known from there, but sometime 3 years ago, Orochimaru apparently took some interest in her and her chakra, so he recruited her in his entourage. I see. That was not something Naruto ever wanted or expected to hear. Anything that has to do with Orochimaru was just bad news. That man did the vilest of things and anyone linked with him was bound to be messed up. Orochimaru was quite honestly one of the few people that Naruto despised with a passion. His heart sank as he considered the possibility of Karen happily carrying out Orochimaru's distasteful deeds. He didn't want to think of what he might be forced to do if it turned out to be the case. She is currently in charge of Orochimaru's southern hideout, though I'm not quite sure of its exact location, Jiraiya said seriously. We should go. Naruto looked at his master with a pleading expression. This girl is possibly one of the few remaining full-blood Uzumaki, the closest person I could ever have to a relative. Other than your crazy ass, of course. That's all well and good, Naruto, but what if she turns out to be dedicated to Orochimaru like Kabuto? Jiraiya asked, causing a flinch to appear on Naruto's face. Not only that, but what if we find Orochimaru and his lackeys there as well? This could turn out to be a suicide mission, you know. Jiraiya understood just how important this girl was to his student, but they also had to take a lot of things into consideration here. I know, the blonde said, his hands clenching into fists as he also considered this situation. Anything that has to do with Orochimaru has danger written all over it, and I know there's a possibility of facing that snake, but I can't just ignore this. This is the biggest opportunity. One have to start reviving my clan, and if she turns out to be an enemy? Jiraiya asked in a hardened tone, their gazes locked on each other. I guess I'll have to do what needs to be done, he answered, though he couldn't find the conviction to back up those words. Could he truly end up killing the only hope for Uzu's legacy even if she was too dangerous to be left alive? He didn't know. A few minutes of silence passed before Jiraiya finally said, if we end up falling into a trap, then we'll reverse summon ourselves to Mount Mayaboku. Please, Jiraiya. Jiraiya finally relented after what seemed like an hour to the blonde. Fine, we'll start off tomorrow morning. We might even make a detour to Kumo to warn them about the Akatsuki. But, I'm cautioning you, Naruto, don't put all your hopes in this girl. Naruto's expression lit up. He would have been jumping for joy, but he was now too mature for that. Now, if you'll excuse me, I would like to enjoy the rest of the night doing my research, the Sannin said before he walked to the window, giggling perversely. You know, due to the village's unfavorable location and weather, there is only one hot spring, and the place is always filled with gorgeous babes. He didn't get to complete his sentence before Naruto forcefully kicked him out, breaking the closed window in the process. Border of the land of fire. Itachi couldn't help but frown as he looked at the clearing that his partner had just filled with the blood of a hunter-nin from the hidden mist. Samehada was blood-stained, with Kisame himself having some spots of blood on his Akatsuki cloak. In situations like these, he would always allow the former hidden mist swordsman to deal with it, seeing as the Sharkman was always bloodthirsty. The Uchiha preferred to use genjutsu on them, but since his health started deteriorating at a quick pace, he participated in as few battles as he possibly could. Though seeing how Kisame was slaughtering his former comrades, Itachi was almost tempted to ignore the illness. Speaking of his teammate, Itachi's frown deepened as he thought of the past month. Pain had requested Kisame and Kakuzu to go to Omegakure, citing that he needed the two for their large chakra reserves, though for what, he didn't say. Itachi had been forced to tolerate Haiden as his temporary partner for over 1 month, and he could honestly say that he really missed Kisame during that period, and his respect for Kakuzu grew immensely. I bet Pain called for Kisame and Kakuzu because he needed help gangbanging that bitch Konan, ha ha. Oh man, I'm so funny. Itachi fiercely shook his head to banish that terrible memory. If he wasn't already scarred from his Umbu days, then the Jashinist would have surely taken it upon himself to do so. The Uchiha liked to think of himself as a pacifist, but during that time, he was rather tempted to use Tsukuyomi on the Jashinist and cut apart his body piece by piece. Hell, Itachi would even bet that Haiden was the reason his condition was reaching a critical stage. Hypertension was never good for a sick person. What did worry the ex-Umbu most, though, was the fact that Kisame couldn't remember anything after coming back from AIM. Itachi had tried to enter the swordsman's mind, but somehow Kisame's memories were completely blank from the previous month. No barriers, traps, or genjutsu trying to protect the memories, but just plain blank. This kind of thing pointed to Madara also getting involved, but he felt he had to erase the memories, and Itachi had no idea why. Was he trying to hide it from him? Did it have something to do with the hidden leaf? Were they working on a different objective while the elemental nations were busy trying to protect their tailed beasts? There were too many questions surrounding the Akatsuki at the moment and very few answers were provided. Itachi couldn't help but fear for the state of the shinobi world. Madara, Pain, Orochimaru, all these people were planning something, and he knew that it would never be good. He wanted to warn Jiraiya, at least, but the Toad Sannin was really good at covering his tracks, and going to the Hidden Leaf now was not only suspicious, but it was also really dangerous for him, especially considering the state of his health. So, any chance that we might run into your little brother? Kisame asked with a grin, pulling Itachi out of his thoughts. I'm not sure, but if we do, it's a given that Orochimaru will be with him, the Uchiha replied. It was just a few hours earlier that Pain had informed them of the Three Tails reformation. 3 years had passed since Itachi killed Yagura, the Mizukage, which also resulted in the death of the tailed beast. The Akatsuki had been forced to wait 3 years for the tailed beast to reform so they could begin hunting them down, and apparently, they were now assigned to capture this one, which just happened to be an Oto. Their leader had even taken the time to warn Itaka not to kill it again, or else he would face the wrath of God. Yeah, right, he thought. The Uchiha wanted to scoff at the threat, but that wasn't becoming of an Uchiha. I wonder why he didn't just send Tobi, or Madara, or whatever he likes to call himself, considering the damn thing is reforming in Oto, Kisame mused, brushing his cloak with his hand. He'll have his hands full looking for Orochimaru. The snake never stays in one place, and if they do find each other, I'm pretty sure it won't be easy to kill him, Itake responded again, his mind preoccupied with his younger brother. He hoped Sasuke wouldn't be foolish enough to get between those two. Itake's eyes narrowed as a swirl appeared before them, signaling Tobi's presence. Has he already found Orochimaru? Are you ever going to smile? The masked man asked Itake, who didn't reply. So, Kisame gave Obito a curious look, pointing at the masked man with his same hata. Are we supposed to call you Tobi or Madara when we're alone like this? Obito simply shrugged, not caring either way. His name was forfeited the moment Rin died. I'm guessing you haven't found Orochimaru yet, Itake deduced. Obito reached into his pockets and pulled out 2 Akatsuki rings, one for Kakuzu, the other for Orochimaru himself, and a note that read, "Sorry, I've gone out for a bit." That man is more slippery than we could ever give him credit for. I'm starting to think he might not even be an Oto, he said, shaking his head. Possibly. Just then, both Itake and Obito's eyes transformed into Mangekyo, each putting the other in a genjutsu. Itake found himself in Obito's dimension, and Obito found himself in a world of black and white. Yet, somehow, both of them were in the same place, with just 3 meters being the only distance between them. What did you want with Kisame this past month? Itake asked, not wasting a second. Again, Obito shrugged nonchalantly, something that greatly irritated Itake as the masked man answered, nothing much. Pain needed his chakra, that's all. What for? He pressed. To strengthen the Akatsuki, the masked man answered, still coy. I looked for Heiden's ring all over Orochimaru's hideouts, but I couldn't find it. Pain himself said he couldn't sense it, which means Orochimaru wasn't involved with Heiden's death. So I started to wonder. You wouldn't have something to do with it, would you, Itake-kun? Itake's eyes narrowed at the insinuation. Of course, he would have been more than happy to kill that insane bastard, but what would drive Madara to suspect him? Why do you think it was me? He asked curiously. If it wasn't Orochimaru, then the only possible conclusion points to the hidden leaf. We just got intel that Jiraiya is currently in Suna, 25 miles away from where Heiden's ring signal was cut. Coincidence? Huh? Obito asked, tilting his head. Yes, it was a coincidence, Itake responded bluntly. 3 years ago, you deliberately killed the Mizukage, knowing he was a Jinchuriki, and then a few months later you revealed our objectives to Kakashi and Jiraiya. Another coincidence? Huh? Itake's eyebrow twitched at that. What did Madara want him to say? That he was sorry? That he wouldn't do it again? Forget that. And so he settled for a bad mistake on my part. Obito simply chuckled. Well, I guess everyone makes mistakes every once in a while. The masked man stepped closer to Itake, entering his own dimension. He put his hand on the Exumbu's shoulder as their genjutsu started to dissolve. All we can do is make sure it never happens again. When the genjutsu completely dissolved, Itake only had to look at the still grinning Kisame to confirm that less than a second had passed in the real world. The 3 tails are south of Otogakure, Obito informed them as a swirl formed, sucking Obito's body into it. Before he completely disappeared, he added, we don't expect any more mistakes. Well, at least this saves us the time of looking everywhere for the damn thing, Kisame said as the two started walking. Jiraiya and Naruto. Adrenaline was not good for Naruto, Jiraiya concluded. The blonde was already an overenthusiastic person, complemented by an endless supply of chakra, so adding more excitement to the equation was pretty much dangerous for him and everyone else involved. At the break of dawn, the young sage woke him up and practically pushed him to get himself ready for their trip to Oto, having already done so himself. They said their goodbyes to the Kaze Cage and Fu before the day could properly start, forcing Naruto to explain to the young Cage why he was leaving so abruptly, though he did wish him good fortunes, as he was able to understand why going to Otogakure was so important for the Uzumaki. He was almost tempted to force the blonde to question Gaara about his friendship with Fu, but he thought better of it. What annoyed Jiraiya the most, though, was that the little brat was in such a hurry that he didn't even give him any chance to do some final research on the beautiful ladies of Suna before Naruto quickly summoned a clone, transformed it into a falcon, and started flying at top speeds. They had been traveling at over 150 miles per hour since then, which was pretty ridiculous just thinking about. At this rate, they were going to be in Otogakure in just under 2 days. Jiraiya couldn't even remember when they passed the desert. All he could think about was making sure not to fall off the transformed clone. Do you have to be so damn fast? He asked, his words barely even heard due to the strong winds in the air smashing them in the face as they flew on. I'm sorry, pervy sage, but if this girl truly exists, then Orochimaru is the last person she should be near. She's my family and quite possibly the only hope I may have of meeting a full-blooded Uzumaki. The blonde turned his head to his master as he responded. Just don't let your guard down. Spending any sort of time with the current Orochimaru is bound to get you messed up, and you don't want to give this girl any chance to put a kuno in you simply because you're too trusting for your own good, the Toad Son advised his charge. The last thing you need is more betrayals, Naruto, he thought solemnly. Got it, Naruto shouted back with a grin, all without a clue of his master's thoughts. By the way, do you know that Earth-style Jutsu Kakuzu used to block my attack? Yeah, it's called the Iron Skin. Why, well, I'd really like to learn it. You know, sparring with Gaara just showed how much I could benefit from having a defensive jutsu, Naruto responded. The jutsu itself may not be perfect, being vulnerable to lightning and all, but I really like the concept of it, and it could still be really useful. I see, Jiraiya agreed, being able to see the merits in it. But, unfortunately, I don't know how to execute the jutsu itself. Sorry, kid. Oh, well, I guess I'll just have to look for one then. Perhaps the toads have one. Perhaps you could create one yourself. You already have the chakra, the Fuinjutsu, and already a good idea of what you want, the Sunin suggested. Minato created a barrier jutsu that could not only absorb a tailed beast bomb but also relaunch it back to the tailed beast itself. The Toad Sunin smiled, remembering his late student. He had been fortunate, and sometimes unfortunate, to come across some genius shinobi over the years. Hiruzen, Orochimaru, Nagato, Kakashi, Itachi, and Hanzo, just to name a few, but Minato was a different breed of genius. A little boy armed with no dojutsu, Kekkai Genkai, powerful clan, or any other special abilities, other than the desire to learn, the will to surpass his predecessors, and a creative streak a mile wide. Minato wasn't the kind of student to just absorb what he was being taught like a sponge, but he was the kind that absorbed the lessons and reproduced bigger and better things. He was one of the very few that even the likes of Orochimaru admitted to being inferior in terms of natural ability. He remembered the time where the Snake Sunin wanted to train Minato. He saw just how talented the boy was. But now, looking at how his one-time best friend had turned out, Jiraiya was really glad that he acted faster than him. As a peace-loving man, Minato still killed over 1,000 shinobi and brought an entire major village to its knees. The Toad Sunin dreaded to think what kind of destruction Minato would have caused if he had ended up in Orochimaru's hands. Dad was pretty amazing, huh? You have no idea, kid, you have no idea. Jiraiya found his ability to speak hampered when a fly flew straight into his mouth, causing the self-proclaimed super pervert a coughing fit as his less-than-helpful student laughed at him. Orochimaru's hideout. Orochimaru couldn't fully express just how much he loved his life at the moment. He supposed that everyone felt their lives to be precious to them, but with the Snake Sunin, his life was always above everyone else's. Ever since he was a child, Hiruzen had spoken much about his genius, often putting him in higher esteem over his other two students. When he finally opened his eyes to the shinobi world, he grew to realize just how vulnerable life was, how vulnerable his precious life was. And so he sought to search for something that mere men had only dreamt about, something that had only been an illusion to most, and a myth to others, immortality. A lot of people expected him to get things right on the first try due to his reputation, and if he was being honest with himself, he expected it as well. But when he failed, that's where the real fun began for the Sunin. Contrary to popular beliefs, he also respected people who didn't give up. Hell, he was just like that himself. If Orochimaru felt the cause to be worthwhile, then it didn't matter how much time he spent, how many sacrifices he made, or how much of his effort he put into it, he wouldn't stop until he achieved it. And now, finally, he could taste it, he would reap the fruits of his labor. He showed a grin when he heard another pained groan coming out of Kakuzu as Kabuto continued operating on him. It wouldn't be long now, he would have a suitable body for him as he awaited the Uchiha battle. The Snake Sunin had been hiding for long enough. He couldn't wait to remind the world just why he was such a feared shinobi, and most of all, he couldn't wait to dance with the Akatsuki. His old companions must surely be looking for him at the moment, and if it wasn't for the fact that he destroyed the seal that Sasori put inside of Kabuto's head, they might have already found him. But very soon, though, he would let them find him, and on that dia. Orochimaru's thoughts were disturbed when a shinobi appeared next to him. He quickly recognized said shinobi to be Fu Yamanaka, one of Danzo's most trusted pawns. The man didn't say a word but just handed over a scroll, and he was a blur as he quickly vanished. Orochimaru couldn't help but widen his grin when he opened the scroll and found the Shinigami masks and classified information about all of Konoha's shinobi, including Umbu, that he asked Fu for. A few weeks ago, Danzo had contacted him again, having formed a new plan to take over Konoha without having to try to assassinate the Hokage. The root leader had requested help from the Snake Sunin himself, and Orochimaru was more than happy to help, as long as Danzo provided him with everything he asked for, and the Shinigami masks from the Uzumaki temple were one of them. With the masks, he could finally get his hands back, and everything else would be falling into place. The body is ready now, Orochimaru-sama, Kabuto informed, fully satisfied with his work. Ah, excellent, the Snake Sunin said, his dark grin somehow getting even wider. And as if things couldn't get any creepier, Suzuki's Kirin roared outside the hideout. Perfect. It seems Suzuki-kun's training is also complete, Kukikikwa. 3 days later. For 3 days, Naruto and Jiraiya had been flying to Otagakure at top speed, only stopping at night for rest, food, and starting off early in the morning again. For 3 stinking days, Jiraiya had been forced to sit atop some clone high in the air and have his butt almost thrown back down due to the ridiculous speed. He fully understood that Naruto was really excited to finally meet another member of his clan, but this was just ridiculous. He would be quite surprised if he wasn't jet-lagged after this. "Hey, you think you can slow down a bit?" he shouted, putting his hands embarrassingly tight around the blonde's abdomen. "We're already in Oto, so there's no need Toa. I've found her," Naruto shouted happily, interrupting his master. "What? How's that even possible? You don't even know her chakra signature," Jiraiya said, honestly shocked. "It's hard to explain. It's like her chakra is a satellite, constantly searching for other chakra signatures. She doesn't have massive chakra reserves, but she is somehow able to spread her chakra evenly across the terrain," Naruto explained, finding himself impressed with such an ability. "That's impressive," Jiraiya agreed with his thoughts. "It could be why Orochimaru was interested in her. Maybe. And it seems like she has also managed to sense us as well. And even better, I'm not sensing Orochimaru's chakra anywhere near her. Then this will be easier than we thought," Jiraiya grinned, relieved. "Yeah, well, it seems she's running away from us," and the blonde stopped before screaming out in frustration and annoyance. "Oh, fuck me, what? Has something happened to her?" Jiraiya curiously asked, though he only needed one look from the blonde to understand. "Akatsuki. Yeah, I can sense another tailed beast about west of here, which is where the 2 Akatsuki members are," Naruto responded with a frown. "Karen must have sensed them as well, because she's running the opposite direction at top speed. What are they going to do now? If Karen gets far enough, it's very possible that they might lose her. But then again, this was another chance to take out another team of the notorious criminal organization." "Naruto, I'll try to send a clone after her," the younger sage interrupted Jiraiya once again. "I don't know how powerful she is, but if she's capable of defeating my clone, then we may end up losing her. But still we need to deal with Akatsuki now, before they do any real damage." Jiraiya couldn't help but give a proud smile to the blonde. He was able to recognize the threat posed by Akatsuki and even chose to engage them at the risk of losing the only clanmate he will ever have. Jiraiya put his hand on the blonde's shoulder as a sign of encouragement. "You did well. Now we just have to make sure to deal with these bastards quickly." And with that, the 2 Toad Sages went to confront the Akatsuki duo. Though it never occurred to both that their would-be adversaries had also already noticed their presence until they also a single crow fly past them, its eyes red as the Sharingan. Just then, fire-coated Shuriken rushed at them from all directions with great speed. The Shuriken would have surely killed them if Naruto hadn't used the enhanced speed of Sage Mode and Jiraiya his experience to their respective advantages. The 2 quickly jumped off the falcon and dispelled the genjutsu. They were about to counter but soon realized that while they could sense their opponents, they still couldn't see them. A double-layered genjutsu, Jiraiya realized, so dexterously done so as not to make it so apparent. The first layer being one masks the user's voice, location, and causing a slight shift in the target's senses, while the second one only there to supplement on hiding the user's location. No doubt this was Itaka's work. He was the one only member of Akatsuki he was quite sure was capable with such. The sudden really had to give it to the rogue shinobi. He had fought a lot of genjutsu-type shinobi before, but the skill required to not only put 2 S-rank shinobi in the same genjutsu but also make it so that they notice no changes in their environment was something only a true genius would be capable of. Jiraiya quickly dispelled the genjutsu and was relieved to see Naruto had done so as well, but the relief quickly turned to curses when both master and student found themselves falling into a torrent of water with 5 water sharks waiting for them. Jiraiya never got the chance to shunshin himself out of trouble before the sharks leaped and attacked both Naruto and he, dragging them down to the water, thereby reddening it with blood. Just a few meters away, on a tree branch, sat a grinning Kisame and Itaki, who were watching diligently. Kisame tilted his head to the side, grinned still in place as he along with his partner jumped down to on top of the water. "That would be very easy, Itaka-san," the former hidden mist swordsman said, not really looking at his partner. Itaki gave a small nod nonetheless. "Yes, too easy for a Sunin," the Uchiha said, calling out their opponents. The Toad-affiliated shinobi didn't disappoint as just then Itaki widened his eyes when they heard Sage Art Toad Oil, Wind Style, Great Wind Breakthrough, Fire Style, Toad Flame Stream, Kisame. Itaka shouted, but the Sharkman seemed to be one step ahead as he easily tossed his blade up into the air and weaved through hand signs. Water Style, Exploding Water Shockwave. He threw up gallons upon gallons of water and watched as the rising tidal wave crashed into the wave of flames launched towards them. The 2 Akatsuki members watched with wide eyes as the water jutsu did nothing to stop the biggest firestorm they have ever seen as it came hurtling towards them. The oil also doubled as a highly powered fuel, stoking the ever-growing fire, burning the oil quickly and hotly. Any other opponent would have been terribly roasted by such a devastating attack, but the Akatsuki members were too experienced and powerful to go down like that. Both quickly shined away right before the flames could reach them. As soon as Itachi reached the ground, Jiraiya was on him with a hard right punch which he blocked. Kisame appeared right behind the Uchiha ready to slice Jiraiya in half, but then got the surprise of his life when he felt a large tongue wrapping itself around his waist. The swordsman was awkwardly pulled towards Naruto with his tongue, the blonde ready to smash a large raise-non into him, but also got shocked when Samehada absorbed the jutsu instead. Kisame then used the blonde's shock to his advantage by delivering a brutal kick to the gut that sent him flying. While all this was happening, Itachi used his free hand to quickly weave through hand signs, and just as he was about to spit fire on Jiraiya, the Sun proved just why he was an S-rank shinobi by yanking his hand free from Itachi's grip and spitting glob of mud on the ground, erecting a mud wall that blocked the fireball jutsu. Well, it seems the brat has grown up some, Kisame said, putting his sword on his shoulder as he appeared behind his partner. He grinned when Naruto did the same with Jiraiya. So, feel like hanging with the big boys, huh? Naruto responded with a low growl, quite annoyed with himself for allowing his shock to get the better of him. He was battling S-rank shinobi, so surprises were always on the card. If stupid mistakes like that were to happen again, it could end up being fatal. Hey, is it just me, or is there something different about the brat? You know, other than the fact that he is taller and not wearing retarded colors. Kisame asked, only further annoying the blonde. It seemed Itachi had noticed as well if the raised brow was anything to go by. Yes, it seems Naruto-kun has grown exponentially over the years. The jutsu he's using has only ever been attained by the strongest of shinobi. It's what gave Jiraiya-sama so much fame after all. The Uchiha said, honestly surprised that Jiraiya would teach such a high-level technique to Naruto. But then again, the blonde will be forced to battle against some of the most powerful shinobi in this world, so maybe it wasn't so surprising. Kisame simply gave Itachi a curious look, obviously waiting for him to explain, not much concerned on their powerful opponents. Those eyes are proof of a dangerous technique, Kisame, Sage Mode. Those that master it get their body, senses, skills and movements heightened to greater degree than what they are normally capable of. The Uchiha explained quietly, even their jutsu are much more dangerous than they would ever be. Hashirama, the god of shinobi in first Hokage, Minato, the Yellow Flash in fourth Hokage, and Jiraiya, a Sunin, they all managed to attain this technique, and all their enemies have found out one thing, that why they try with their might to use nature to their advantage. A true sage becomes nature itself. Impressive, Kisame said, his grin only getting bigger. If what Itachi was saying true, then he was really going to enjoy this battle indeed, even more so that he mastered it at such an early age. Itachi agreed. I don't really need to say this, Kisame, but do be careful. It seems Naruto-kun's new skills have some form of resistance to illusions, making it significantly harder for me to put him in a genjutsu than I would have expected. Plus we mustn't forget Jiraiya as well. Genjutsu allowed the user to take hold of their target's chakra and use it against them, but with Naruto, it was different. Due to the nature energy constantly going in and out of him, his genjutsu wouldn't last for more than a second. Unless he used real high-powered ones that bypassed the nature energy and went straight for the Jinchuriki's real chakra like the one he used in the beginning in Tsukuyomi. But the Uchiha wasn't in the right physical condition to do that. Jiraiya narrowed his eyes as he looked at the two criminals. This pair was definitely more dangerous than the last two. In the last battle they had the numerical advantage and Haiden wasn't really that impressive, but this time, things were different. It was a 2-on-2 battle of S-rank shinobi, each just as dangerous as the next. The carnage about to take place was inevitable, but which side was it going to favor? Jiraiya had no idea, but one thing was clear though, Naruto's inexperience with high-level battle was going to play a major part in this. Unlike the last battle, he wasn't going to allow himself to be separated from the blonde, seeing just how powerful their new opponents are. Teamwork remained their best option, but even that didn't guarantee anything because Itachi and Kisame have obviously been partners way longer than he and Naruto have been together. If last battle was Naruto's test against high-level opponents, then this one was going to be a baptism of fire. Suna, it had been 3 years since Itachi had killed the Three Tails. The beast had no doubt reformed by this point, and Sasori and Zetsu had their spy networks working overtime to try and find it. A few days ago, they finally heard some reports that it was reforming in the Hidden Sound, putting the Akatsuki mission back on track. They were free to gather tailed beasts once more, with the threat of a painful death delivered by God himself should they delay the plan further. Deidara and Sasori decided to be the first ones to capture one of their targets, and so it struck out to the Hidden Sand, where they had been informed that the one-tailed Jinchuriki had actually been appointed Kazekage. "Do you have all the clay you'll need?" asked Sasori, almost worriedly, but covered with a mask of calm. "Yeah," Deidara responded. "I've even got some pre-sculpted art ready to go. When I let loose C3, they won't be able to find the village hidden in the sand," patting his bag for emphasis. "Fine, as long as you're careful. I won't be able to help you up in the sky. I'll make good our escape, but that won't mean anything if you die," chided Sasori. "Alright, I get it," exclaimed Deidara. "Fight the Jinchuriki, don't kill him, get out." "With the Jinchuriki," added Sasori. "That's implied," said Deidara. "I have more than enough clay, and I won't need all of it. It's not like he can fly. Yeah, just don't take long, you know just how much I hate waiting. It's good that you feel that way because here you won't have to wait to be buried. Sasori of the Red Sand. The two art lovers heard they didn't have to wonder who the voice belonged to as the Kaze cage, Fu, and some jounin landed in front of them ready for battle. Well, it seems we really don't have to start looking for the Jinchuriki after all, as Sasori Dano, the Mad Bomber, said, giving the Suna group a predatory grin. Yes, and look, Deidara, we have two for the price of one. Sasori said. What does Akatsuki want in my village? Gaara asked, though only out of courtesy more than anything. He knew what they wanted, and his village has been preparing itself ever since Jiraiya came to warn them. He also had the Toad Sunin to thank for the improved seal he set up in the village. It spread to the entire Suna desert and was working better than he would have ever expected. Just a few minutes ago, he had been informed that two powerful chakra signals had just entered the Suna desert, and it wasn't Jiraiya and Naruto, thereby leaving only one possible outcome. Akatsuki. He used his third eye technique in order to confirm, and once he did, Gaara had ordered a level 1 defensive barrier to be activated around the village and ordered both Beiki and Kankuro to remain in the village in case the Akatsuki somehow bypassed the barrier and threatened the village's safety in the pursuit of the Baijuyu. He would have wanted to deal with situation himself, but Beiki and Kankuro had insisted that he needed backup and Fu had volunteered. Gaara didn't want to risk the girl's life like this, but she convinced him that she is a capable kunoichi able to hold her own, so finally he relented. The young cage took 5 of the best jounin in Suna and Fu, then started off to confront the S-ranked criminals. Hey, Deidara said, taking out some clay from his pouch, you know, the one tail is known as the weakest of the Baijuyu, but with you being a cage and all, I really hope you don't disappoint HN. You don't have to worry about that, Gaara responded as his sand started rising. He may hold the weakest Baijuyu, but Gaara was anything but weak. The fact that he was the youngest cage proved that point. Plus, the desert was his home ground, the place where he was at his strongest. Born of the desert, warrior of the desert, leader of the desert, he was Gaara of the desert. The terrain was silent as a shadow, no rustling of leaves, chirping of birds, or anything that would confirm the presence of life. Nothing showed that the land was about to cry with chaos about to occur, as the 4 dangerous shinobi eyed each other, none making a single sound. Just then, Naruto realized just how different these guys were to the last Akatsuki member he fought. Unlike Haiden, Kisame and Itaki were patient, cunning, skilled, experienced, and well-balanced. He didn't sense a lot of chakra in Itaki, but Kisame more than made up for it. Kisame may not be the smartest of shinobi, but Itaki was a beast in that regard. Itaki was subtle and Kisame was overwhelming. Kisame had water and Itaki had fire. And while Kisame was a huge man who preferred brutal short-range combat and a devastating water affinity, Itaki on the other hand was reserved, short, fast, smart, and was fully capable of fighting at any range he desired. These guys were the perfect partners. They covered each other's weaknesses and supplemented each other's strengths as well. It was going to take something really special to defeat them. Luckily for the two sages though, Naruto had his own secrets and trump cards. He silently took out 3 Shuriken from his pouch, coated it with wind chakra, and launched them at the Akatsuki duo. Shuriken Shadow Clone Jutsu Wind Style, Great Wind Breakthrough. The blonde said as the launched Shuriken multiplied to 20 as the wind jutsu doubled the speed. The two criminals quickly jumped to opposite directions in order to avoid the Shuriken. Naruto used their separation to his advantage as he took out 2 more wind-coated Shuriken and once again launched them. Kisame was ready to parry the Shuriken away from him, but as soon as it reached close enough, it turned to a puff of smoke, showing that it was in fact a Naruto clone instead. It threw a punch aimed at the swordsman's face, yet Kisame blocked it with one hand and used his same hata to pierce the clone in the gut. He was surprised when instead of puffing out of existence, the clone merely grinned and held on to the sword. Kisame tried to pull the sword out, however found it to be stuck inside the clone. One look at the penetrated stomach later confirmed that the clone was somehow made of oil, very sticky oil. Change the wording of all the sentences of the story. Don't change the word count or shorten the length of the story. Just change the wording of all the sentences. A good counter, Kisame thought. Samehata is notorious for absorbing chakra and sensing strong opponents, but against natural things it's just like any other sword. The Akatsuki shinobi was then forced to abandon the sword as the clone went out with an explosion sparking an oil-fueled fire. While this was happening, Itaka didn't let the shuriken anywhere near him as he responded and turned into a flock of crows, suddenly appearing behind Jiraiya. You have taught him well, but will it be enough? The Uchiha said, a kunao in his hand. Itaka slashed at the back of the Sunin's neck, only for his hair to suddenly elongate and harden, rendering the kunao ineffective. Jiraiya quickly countered with a low sweeping kick to knock Itaki off his feet, yet the Uchiha easily jumped over it but couldn't do anything about the raise non brutally delivered to his gut. The kick was a feint. Jiraiya looked at the bleeding Uchiha, not believing for one second that he could be defeated that easily, fearing that he was in a genjutsu until Itaka pointed to the spot he was previously standing on. Jiraiya turned his head and was forced to erect a mud wall when the real Itaka spat another fireball jutsu at him. Naruto then appeared in front of the Uchiha, ready to slam a brutal jab to the face. The Uchiha easily dodged but was still sent flying when an invisible force hit him square in the face. The blonde didn't get the chance to press the advantage as Kisame appeared in front of him, having finally recovered his sword. The bluish man sent a punch to his gut that would have surely connected, if not for the Sunin defending him with a high kick that Kisame was forced to block with his same hata. Before either of the two Toad-affiliated shinobi were able to take advantage of their temporary numerical advantage, Itaka delivered a brutal kick to the Sunin that sent him flying and followed him to press the attack, leaving the chakra tanks by themselves. Kisame swung same hata at Naruto, however the blonde was fast enough to take out another kunao, coated with wind chakra, and meet Kisame's same hata slash for his neck. The two, with their blades locked, glared at each other, Naruto sneering and Kisame with a smirk on his face. He blocked Kisame's first swipe, and the next, and countered with a slower kick that Kisame sidestepped but was still sent back by an invisible force. Kisame regained himself and continued with his attack as same hata's scales absorbed the chakra on the blonde's kunao with tiny sounds of steel scraping on steel. Kisame pushed Naruto back and began hacking continuously at him with same hata. Kisame's hacks increased in speed, each swipe faster than the last, each one Naruto blocked and parried and dodged. Then after one very long swipe, Kisame overextended himself and Naruto once again got into his defense, delivering a kick across his chest that the man ducked over but was once again sent flying. Kisame came back swinging same hata sideways in order to slice the Jinchuriki, but Naruto was able to quickly block with a kunao, having continuously coated it with wind chakra despite the fact that same hata was absorbing it. As the weapons clashed, a battle of strength and power began, Kisame trying to overwhelm Naruto with his strength and Naruto pushing back trying to avoid being sliced open by the huge sword. "Perhaps you've grown a little, so why don't we up the ante, eh?" the swordsman said as he jumped back, wove through hand seals, and unleashed a solitary water shark headed for him. Naruto easily destroyed the shark with his kunao before realizing that it was just a ploy when massive torrents of water came rushing toward him soon after. "Earth-style mobile core," the blonde said as the ground he stood on suddenly rose high enough above the great flood that Kisame had just released. "Crazy fast hand signs these guys have," the Jinchuriki thought as he tried to think of a strategy to defeat this battle-crazed man. In less than a minute, he had not only sent a shark after him but was also fast enough to create a jutsu that suited his preferred environment. He wanted to use frog kata, but he also needed to find a way to use ninjutsu on him without his precious sword absorbing the chakra. This was a fight that Naruto would need to use the full measure of his abilities to win, that he could use to test how far he had really come, with the dark cloud looming overhead that countless other things would fall apart if he found himself unable to pull through. Kisame continued grinning as he stood at the surface of the water. "Well, come on then, let's play," he said as he motioned for the blonde to get in the water as well. "No, come on, I won't kill ya." "Nope, I promise. Kiss my ass, shark face. You think I don't know what's waiting for me down there?" At that moment, sharks and water clones rose out of the water and came rushing for him. Fortunately, Naruto was a master of the numbers game, easily countering with the multi-shadow clone jutsu. Smoke and water flew through the air as clones clashed and dispelled each other in a stalemate. When he was finally sure that there were no more surprises waiting for him in the water, the Jinchuriki jumped back down to the water, but as soon as his feet touched the surface, the blonde appeared in front of Kisame with a Rasengan in hand aiming straight for the gut. Kisame gleefully brought same hata down to once again absorb the jutsu, grinning in the process. "So you really want to donate some chakra, eh? Well then, by all means, give it to me." Just then, another Naruto appeared in front of Kisame with a big ball Rasengan in hand, and this time the former hidden mist swordsman was slammed so hard that he was actually sent flying by the force of the jutsu. "Well then, take it, Jiraiya and Itaki." This was exactly what he was trying to avoid, one-on-one battles. He didn't want to be too far from Naruto in this kind of battle, and it really irked him that they were separated so easily. He needed to think of something that would allow him to neutralize Itaki and regroup with his student before anything damaging could happen. Of course, that was easier said than done. Itaki was no walkover. He gave as good as he got and then some. Despite his small stature and disarming looks, the Uchiha was a force to reckon with. Devastating genjutsu skills, perfect mastery of the Sharingan, incredible taijutsu, and a ninjutsu arsenal perfectly supplementing his style. Itaki was the kind of opponent that didn't waste anything, every move was perfectly executed, nothing was ever without purpose. All in all, Jiraiya finally understood just why there was so much hype surrounding the former Umbu. Itaki's foot came up to kick Jiraiya in the face, but the Sunin was able to block it and countered with a punch to the face, but once again, Itaki burst into a flock of crows. The Uchiha was in the middle of weaving through hand signs as Jiraiya quickly created another mud wall to block Itaki's jutsu. Something is wrong here. Throughout the battle, Itaki had shown an ability to weave through hand signs faster than the eye could follow, then all of a sudden Jiraiya was capable of erecting a mud wall before Itaki could execute his jutsu. Genjutsu. Jiraiya quickly dispelled the jutsu, widening his eyes when he saw Itaki appear in front of him, who then sent him flying with a brutal kick. A few quick hand signs later, Itaki pressed the attack with the fire-style Phoenix Flower Jutsu. The former Umbu spit countless small fireballs at the Sunin, which he tried with all his might to evade, but one eventually caught him on the arm. Jiraiya didn't get the chance to put out the fire before Itachi appeared before him and delivered another kick. A puff of smoke was the result, signaling that it was only a clone, though Itachi didn't seem surprised at that. If anything, he seemed to be expecting it. The Uchiha was quick to hop over a hand that reached up from the earth to pull him under. He landed lightly and burst forward as he felt Jiraiya pull himself from the ground. Itachi never got the chance to attack as once again, Jiraiya's hair elongated, needle-like pieces of it shooting toward Itachi with the aim to impale. Needle Jizo. As soon as one of them touched him, Itachi simply broke apart into a flock of crows, reappearing 15 meters away. The two S-rank shinobi faced each other down, no one making a move or a single sound, but knowingly to both, a battle of strategy had begun. Perhaps it's now time to take things seriously, Jiraiya-sama. Before either of them could make a move, an ocean of water rushed toward them at full speed, threatening to swallow them if they didn't do anything to avoid it. Though two quick shunshin later and the two shinobi found themselves on the surface of the raging water. Kisei must be getting excited. It would be in your best interest to end this quickly, the Uchiha bluntly said, to which Jiraiya inwardly cursed. Though I do wonder, will you be able to defeat me, Jiraiya-sama? Suna. As it turned out, the one-tailed Jinchuriki could fly, or at least his sand could, which amounted to the same thing. The mad bomber couldn't help but grin as he thought of the last battle he had in the sky. After being declared a rogue ninja by IWA, that Tsuchikage had taken it upon himself to hunt down the art lover. Though he may have been past his prime, Oniki was no pushover. The longest reigning Kage took to the sky and personally confronted Deidara, and on that day, Deidara realized just how beautiful his art could be. He held his own against the famed particle style, his art getting as good as it got. The battle was so fast and furious that seasoned jonin were not able to follow it. He would have loved to defeat the old Kage and leave Iwagakure in debris and smithereens, but he was forced to flee when he ran out of clay. An exciting day for him that ended in disappointment, but then he at least learned some things from it. His clay was not invisible and he always has to prepare himself for anything. He had never thought that he would ever find another shinobi that could fly, but his expecting the unexpected allowed him to not be too surprised when it turned out that not only could the Kaze Kage fly but the seven-tailed Jinchuriki could as well. Deidara was taken from his mental musings by the large stream of sand that shot toward him from the massive grains in front of the Kaze Kage. As he absent-mindedly sent his hawk into a steep dive to avoid it, he continued thinking about the kid he was supposed to capture and later kill. He was quite skilled, but still he, Deidara, was out of his league anyway. While Gaara's sand provided most of his arsenal just like his clay, the young Kage didn't have the same kind of diversity. Gaara depended on his sand to capture opponents before hurting them, his art, on the other hand, didn't have that problem. Gaara's sand was slow, but his clay was fast and destructive. On any other opponent, Deidara would have written them off as unfulfilled potential, but considering this boy was still a Kage and the battle had only begun, he guessed he needed to keep a watchful eye. He looked up to see a massive face looking back at him, mouth wide as his bird hurtled toward it. He pulled up, and the mouth reached up to snap at him. He pulled up, and quickly spun to the side to miss the stream of sand from before. The art lover had heard what the Kaze Kage could do with his sand, and he knew if he was caught in it, he was done for. He tossed his right hand out, then the two birds inside it came to life and sprinted for the Kaze Kage from opposite directions. The sand beneath him shot up from both sides and blocked the birds, which exploded anyway. The sand retreated back to ominously float around its red-haired master, and Deidara pulled up across from him. He had gathered that the young Kage wasn't one to talk, so he was slightly surprised when he deigned to do so. I have been warned of the Akatsuki and their intentions toward me, but know that as Kaze Kage, I cannot lose. Cool, yeah, but you're gonna have to try harder if you really want to kill me, HN, shouted Deidara, emphasizing the point with a small, four-winged bird that went flying from his left hand. He had perhaps hoped that the bird would prove faster than the sand and defeat the Kaze Kage then and there, but he wasn't overly annoyed when the sand came up to block the bird and succeeded. After all, the smoke from the failed explosion concealed the first bird's twin that had emerged from her right hand moments later. The Kaze Kage would lower his sand to try and keep an eye on her, and the second bird would swoop in and detonate. Sasori had been worrying too much when he had insisted he bring a third bag of clay. The second bird swooped around the edge of the sand shield to escape any remnants, and Deidara was shocked to see a large mass of sand move to the left to block her second bird as well. He growled under his breath at the sight, which came with the knowledge that this might not be as easy as he had first thought. Responding to the Kazekage's emotionless gaze, the sand began to chase Deidara across the sky once again. Meanwhile, Fu was a proud kunoichi, one who worked hard for everything she has gained in life. Unlike other girls, she didn't grow up to be a fangirl that was only interested in boys and relationships. Even before Kome was sealed inside of her, she had the desire to be the strongest kunoichi Taki has ever known. When she was made a Jinchuriki, the desire only grew. She wanted to be strong enough to protect her comrades and her friends, assuming she ever got any. The village elders convinced her that she was tasked with the honor of being Taki's guardian, even though no one else saw it that way in the village. Her strength would be key to Taki's survival. But every time she saw these Akatsuki agents fight, Fu was more and more convinced that she couldn't possibly hope to defeat them on her own. Even though Haiden was still easily defeated by Naruto, she still didn't have any jutsu that worked like the shadow clone, leaving her with nothing to use to draw out the Jashinist's true power. And now, here she was battling Sasori of the Red Sand along with 5 other Jonin, and despite the numerical advantage, they found themselves still on the losing end of things. Sasori, or Hiriko as the man liked to call it, was the most dangerous man-made weapon that Fu has ever come across. From head to tail, everything about it screamed terror. Hiriko's tail, which comes out from the back of Hiriko, was very flexible and could withstand much powerful attacks before breaking. The tail is easily maneuverable and can be used as a defense against non-elemental attacks. It can extend about 20 meters from the puppet. At the tip of its stinger is a dose of poison, created by Sasori himself. Lethal and potent, as one unlucky Jonin found when he got closer to the puppet in his bid to slice it in half. The tail lunged itself at him and scratched him on the forearm. "One down," Hiriko said as its tail somehow reattached itself to his back. "Unfortunately for you, every part of my puppets is coated with a poison of my design. One touch is all it takes for you to be affected. Now it's only a matter of time before it affects your entire system, 3 days to be exact. If I were you, I'd be rushing back to the village to get an antidote, that is, if there is one." The shinobi in question merely gave him a hateful sneer. "If I'm going to die, then fine. Then I'll make sure my last act on Earth is to rid this world of scum like you." Laughable, Hiriko responded as its mouth opened, releasing countless senbon after senbon. Fu took to the sky, trying by all and any means to dodge, but the senbon were just too much, and some could have definitely impaled her were it not for one of the Jonin, a middle-aged bald man, who took out a war fan like Tamari's and released a wind jutsu that pushed the senbon away. "Impressive," Hiriko said, his face giving nothing away. "Though I wonder, how long can you hold out?" The puppet's mouth still opened, it started releasing more and more senbon, shooting at impossible speeds, causing the fan-using shinobi more pressure as he tried by all means to defend while the others tried to do the same with their wind jutsu. Before anything else could be done, the poison man appeared behind Sasori and quickly grabbed hold of its tail, refusing to let go even as it separated itself and made him a human pincushion. With the head busy shooting senbon and the tail caught, Fu took the advantage and immediately flew to where she assumed the heart of Hiriko to be located, intent on striking a killer blow. Though once again, she was reminded why he was an S-ranked shinobi when Hiriko's left arm detached itself and flew at her, turning into a rocket and started shooting out bars. The bars then opened up and sent on more senbon at the dark-skinned Jinchuriki. The little needle-like weapons would have surely skewered her if not for the poison shinobi to suddenly shunshin in front of her with Hiriko's tail still lodged in him. The man ended up taking the fall for her as the senbon impaled him all over his body. He grunted as he fell to the ground, blood leaking all over. "Why would you do that?" Fu asked, stepping closer to the man. "I'm not even from your village." I know, but we're still a T-team, plus we don't have a C chance of beating him without you. Isn't that what comradeship is about?" the man responded. From the moment he was poisoned, he decided to make himself the decoy, the one to take Sasori's attacks, as it wasn't going to make any difference since he was bound to die anyway. But you didn't have to sacrifice yourself like that for me." Despite knowing his rather gruesome fate, the man managed to give Fu a small smile. "No, I did it because I wanted to," he said in his labored breath. "What a fool," Hiriko stated as it stopped firing senbon, looking at Fu directly. "He deludes himself into thinking he's made some heroic move, but what he doesn't understand is that your death is inevitable." "Shut up," Fu growled as her body was wrapped by Komei's cloak. She flew faster than ever at the puppet, yet he once again opened his mouth and started shooting out more senbon. This time, instead of dodging the poisonous weapons, the senbon failed to penetrate her Baijuyu's cloak, giving her an opportunity to reach Hiriko and land a powerful hit on its chest. "Bug bite," she said as she hit Hiriko with what appeared to be a glancing blow but was actually a piercing bite that completely obliterated the puppet. She stood for a few more seconds to see if it would move. When it didn't, she and the rest of the Suna Jonin breathed a sigh of relief. She looked back at the man who had taken a hit for her and smiled when he gave her a thumbs up. Well, that was quite interesting. All eyes widened when a young redhead boy appeared before them, wearing an Akatsuki cloak. "I never expected you to defeat Hiriko. Then again, you are a Jinchuriki, so that should not be so surprising." Fu couldn't believe it. All this time they have been getting their asses kicked, and just when they thought they had finally won, it turns out that it wasn't even the real one. She tried to speak, but her voice failed her, so she settled for gaping astonishingly along with the others. "Why so quiet? Did you really think that you have defeated me so easily?" Sasori asked with a small smile. When he didn't receive an answer, he took out a scroll and summoned another puppet. One that somehow managed to double the Jonin's fear and terror. One of them could be seen shaking, his eyes wide as saucers as he stared upon someone he had only read in history books, someone who was known all over the Land of Wind as the strongest Kazekage in history. a shinobi whose power was once said could rival the likes of Onoki the fence-sitter, Hanzo the salamander, and Hiruzen the professor. The third Kaze Cage, now turned into a puppet. "Why you monster," one of them said, taking a step back. "Ah, so now you finally get it, huh? You have no hope of ever winning this battle. So then, shall we let the fun begin? Ota ga Kur." Despite the hole that was slowly healing on his chest, Kisame was still giving Naruto a savage grin as he took off his Akatsuki cloak. First Haiden, now Kisame? Seriously, did everyone in the Akatsuki possess some insane Jinchuriki level healing abilities? Now that was more like it. It seems being too close to you is rather dangerous, so let's see how you handle this. The swordsman took off after him, his sword in one hand as his other wove through hand signs. "Now let's play, kid. Ninja Art Hidden Mist Jutsu." Naruto's senses were immediately on high alert as soon as he heard Kisame call out the name of the jutsu. He had already seen the effects of the jutsu from Zabuza and knew just how dangerous the supplementary jutsu could be if used right. Once again, Naruto mentally thanked Fukazaku for teaching him Sage Mode. If it wasn't for the advanced sensory abilities, he would have been in a rather adverse position right now. Water Style, Water Pistol Jutsu. A powerful shot of water flew at him with blinding speed and an unbelievable force that would have surely left a hole in his head. The young sage used his enhanced speed, reaction, and wind chakra to avoid the jutsu at point-blank range. Kisame appeared behind him, ready to strike. However, he was quick enough to duck under the swordsman's swing. Before he pressed his attack, Naruto took him out with a brutal roundhouse, turning him into a puddle of water. Clone. He wasn't given any breathing space as another Kisame appeared above, coming on him with a downward strike which the Jinchuriki dodged. Before Naruto could attack this one, a second Kisame appeared in front of him. He threw a punch at him but it caught it and created a water sword with his other hand, aiming for his gut. And he would have been impaled if it wasn't for his, Naruto's, unorthodox thinking sometimes. Just as Kisame was about to connect, the Jinchuriki pushed his head forward and gave him a brutal headbutt, turning him into water as the other Kisame reached him. He didn't give this one any chance to attack as he quickly outstretched two fingers toward him in the shape of a gun. "Wind bullet," he said as he pierced the man in the chest, dispelling him as well. Naruto frowned as the mist thickened. He could sense that Kisame hadn't moved from where he was standing. Obviously, the man was trying to mock him as he heard a chuckle. "You know, if you want a who can make more clones game, I'm all for it, but I thought you wanted to take this seriously," Naruto said as he felt Kisame gathering up chakra for his next jutsu. He sped through hand signs of his own, ready to defend and counter. Water Style, Water Shark Bomb Jutsu. Kisame called out as the water near him took the form of a large shark. Kisame jumped inside of it and thrust his hand toward Naruto, sending it toward him at really high speeds. Before Kisame could make any impact, Naruto called out his jutsu. Summoning Jutsu. A puff of smoke later, Gamekiki appeared on his feet and quickly jumped so as to avoid the battle-crazed shinobi and his water shark. "Yo, bro, what's up? I need fire now." "Sure thing." As both Sage and Summon were pulled back down by the force of gravity, they sped through hand signs, ready to roast the shark man. Sage Art, Toad Oil. Sage Art, Wind Style, Devastating Windstorm. Sage Art, Fire Style, Flame Bullet. The resulting jutsu was a big firestorm that came down on Kisame fast with the intent to roast. Water Style, Wall of Water. A large stream of water was created, forming a protective wall, preventing the fire from reaching Kisame. The jutsu clashed but due to the fire's added fuel, it overpowered the water and went straight for the Akatsuki agent. Kisame in turn used the shark he was in to swim fast in order to avoid the fire and soon realized that was what Naruto had planned as he appeared in front of him and gave him a brutal uppercut, sending him flying into the air. The blonde followed that up by creating a raisin shuriken and followed Kisame in the air, ready to finish him, but the bluish man somehow recovered quickly and summoned another big shark, this one even bigger than the last. Water Style, Super Shark Bomb. Kisame thrust his hands forward toward Naruto, and the shark obeyed, speeding toward faster than he would have anticipated, but since he already had a jutsu in hand, Naruto decided to hurl the raisin shuriken at the shark instead. As the jutsu clashed, it looked like the shark was trying to absorb the chakra from the highly powered wind jutsu, but whether it was because of the sage chakra infused with it or the raisin shuriken was just that powerful, the result was the shark being completely destroyed but still gave enough time for Kisame to shunshin himself out of trouble. "You know, despite what Itaka-san said about you, I do admit to having still underestimated you, kid. But no more," Kisame said truthfully as he threw Same Hata up in the sky and created another jutsu. Water Style, Great Exploding Water Colliding Wave. The swordsman spit out a great volume of water, covering the entire area with crushing, unavoidable waves, thereby swallowing up both Gamekiki and Naruto. The water then formed into a giant dome, trapping all three inside of it. Naruto, I have a bad feeling about this," the toad said as it swam closer to the young sage. "Me too. I should have summoned Gamabunta instead," the blonde thought begrudgingly. "The chief toad would have been better suited to deal with this kind of thing. You're faster than me and a little bit unpredictable as well, I admit it. But there is one thing you should know about me. the criminal said as it merged with its sword, turning into what could only be described as some crossover between a merman and a shark. The stronger my opponent is, the stronger I will be as well. Due to my overwhelming chakra reserves, perfect water control, and everlasting stamina, I have been given the name the Tailless Tailed Beast. You could even say that I am the Zero Tails, and you've just entered my domain, kid. Meanwhile, the two clashed. Jiraiya bringing a kunai coated with earth against Itaka's well-placed fire-coated kunai that kept his arm braced. The way Itaka used his second arm to support his other at the wrist gave him enough space to quickly rattle off hand seals before Jiraiya could overpower his one limb. Fire release, great fireball jutsu. Jiraiya was able to leap away, keeping himself just out of the way of the expanding blaze. One of his arms burned, but it was preferable to his entire body being immolated. The Sunin quickly prepared a jutsu of his own as he flew back through the air. Earth-style, Earth Dragon Jutsu. The two contrasting jutsu cancelled each other out, but Jiraiya wasn't done though, as he called out his second jutsu, Earth Dragon Bullet Jutsu. He then touched the ground, immediately creating a mud source. A dragon-like head emerged from the mud and started shooting out mud balls at Itaki. The Uchiha dodged, but then Jiraiya poured more chakra into his jutsu and combined it with a fire jutsu, making the mud balls fast and searing hot. Itaki managed to dodge a few of them, but they were too fast and too many, so eventually one managed to hit him on the chest. But once again, the renegade broke apart into a flock of crows. Man, I'm really starting to hate birds, Jiraiya thought, irritated as he disrupted his chakra once again, breaking the sensory genjutsu cast on him by Itaki. Due to him avoiding staring Itaki in the eyes, the Uchiha was restricted to executing only simple, subtle genjutsu. Jiraiya took off running toward the Uchiha, and Itaka shifted his left foot back to engage him in a taijutsu duel. The two began exchanging blows and parries and blocks and little feints and dodges. The Uchiha suddenly drew out some shuriken and threw them straight at the older man, who skillfully dodged and ducked, but Itaka took advantage and caught Jiraiya with a flying knee to the sternum that sent him flying. Jiraiya quickly righted himself in midair in time to block Itaka's follow-up kick with his forearm. The Sunin turned the block into a grab, rotating backward to draw the rogue shinobi toward him. A fist to the gut sent Itaka plunging back into the water below with the wind knocked out of him. Just as he regained his equilibrium, Jiraiya angled up a high kick for Itaka's face that the Uchiha caught with one arm, and Jiraiya could feel his crushing strength as Itaki held him in place. Itaki raised his other hand and made one hand seal and his chest puffed up. Jiraiya's eyes widened before a giant wave of flames devoured him at close range, though unsurprisingly, the sage puffed into smoke. Jiraiya was proving to Itaka just why the man was feared. Despite the fact that he was past his prime, Jiraiya still had enough power to topple some of the best shinobi to this day. He may be faster, more technically gifted, and had a dojutsu, but still the Sunin matched him blow for blow. Left? Right? Underground? Itaka wondered, his senses on high alert, but once again, Jiraiya surprised him when he appeared. Behind you, Jiraiya said, holding a swirling ball of chakra. Itaka's eyes widened. Raise-nan. Jiraiya dug the raise-nan into Itaka's back. His success lasted only a second. In a smoke cloud, Itaki was gone, replaced by a log that exploded into a shower of splinters as the raise-nan tore into it. Itaka reappeared a few meters away as Jiraiya began running through a couple of hand seals. Itaka did the same, matching Jiraiya sign for sign. The two men locked their hands on the last hand seal and simultaneously shouted, "Fire style, great fireball jutsu." Both inhaled deeply, and their chests puffed up. The two expelled two massive streams of flames that clashed with a deafening roar. The clearing lit up from the light of the flames as the two techniques battled against each other. Itaka's fireball grew larger as he funneled more chakra into it. He played straight into Jiraiya's plan. Another Jiraiya exploded from underneath the ground and ran through a set of hand seals. Ninja art, needle jizo. His hair stiffened, every strand hardening into steel. He whipped his hair back and forth and shot off a hail of needles from his hair like a porcupine would its quills. The hair needles whirled through the flames as the original Jiraiya let his fireball dissipate. Itaka saw the hail. He saw it coming as slow as a snail, throwing reflections of moonlight. Every single sharp, white, deadly strand he caught with clear detail. He saw them all. He saw them at the last moment. He had only a split second to move. There was a shower of thumps as Jiraiya's jutsu connected, the sound coming like 1,000 pitter-patters. The earth all around Itaka cracked from the hair needle hail, kicking up dust that could only be seen with the moon's light. Itaka reappeared a few feet away to the right from where he originally stood, his cloak swaying from the sudden stop in motion. He looked relatively fine, except two of Jiraiya's hair needles had found their way into his arm and shoulder, respectively. Itaka removed them without so much as a flinch, and thin trails of blood swam out from the holes. Itaka gave a light cough that went unnoticed by his opponent. "I must say, you live up to your title as Sunin," Itaka stated as he let both needles drop to the ground with soft steel thumps. They were both forced to temporarily halt their gruesome battle when they saw a large dome of water being formed where Kisame and Naruto were. Jiraiya frowned, not recognizing the jutsu, but got more worried as he thought of how Naruto would fare against such a thing, and the trepidation for his student only increased when Itachi spoke. That is one of Kisame's most dangerous jutsu. If Naruto-kun is unfortunate enough to find himself inside it, then he's as good as defeated, Itachi stated in a matter-of-fact manner. That's it. Well, he really had to use it now. We'll see. Jiraiya put his hands together and began making a sequence of all too familiar sets of hand signs. Summoning jutsu. The twin plumes of smoke that came were too small for any of the big toads. Instead, when the smoke cleared, two small toads stood on both of Jiraiya's shoulders, one on the left and the other on the right. The toad on the right was green-skinned, with thick white eyebrows, a white goatee, a stubble of white hair on its head resembling a mohawk, and wore a high-collared brown cape. The one on the left was a lighter shade of green with a purple head that looked like she was wearing a hairnet with hair rollers underneath. There were purple markings around the toad's mouth, and it was wearing a high-collared cape as well. Itachi's eyebrow crinkled up with interest. Jiraiya boy? What is the meaning of this? Came a throaty female voice from the toad on Jiraiya's left shoulder, sounding none too pleased. You better have a good reason for this. I was making dinner. The toad waved a wooden spoon in Jiraiya's face. Shut your yapping, will ya, Shima? Look around. A wizened male voice came from the other toad perched on Jiraiya's right shoulder. You did well calling us, Jiraiya boy. I see a formidable opponent. Jiraiya nodded his appreciation to the male sage toad. Forgive me, Pa. I had no choice, Jiraiya said with determination in his eyes. Naruto might be in trouble, we need to end this quick. I see, Fukazaku said as he narrowed his eyes at the Uchiha. Alright then, Jiraiya boy. You know how it goes. Let's do it. The two toads on Jiraiya's shoulders closed their eyes and clasped both hands together. This was one of the jutsu Jiraiya least used because of the fact it was incomplete and secondly, downgraded his looks. He really envied both Naruto and Minato in that regard. His sage mode. The two toads on his shoulders would gather natural energy and then proceed to fuse themselves to Jiraiya, thus allowing him to access the Senjutsu chakra they had gathered. He kept his eyes on Itachi, hoping that he could keep him at bay long enough until Shima and Fukazaku had both gathered enough Senjutsu chakra for him to quickly end this battle. Itachi decided he wouldn't wait for Jiraiya and his toads to finish what he was presuming to be the Sunin's trump card. Jiraiya tensed up as the Uchiha began weaving through a flurry of hand signs and leaned back. Fire style, Phoenix Flower Jutsu. Jiraiya knew if the flower flames were to hit him, they would cause harm to Fukazaku and Shima as well, thus rendering all their efforts useless. The small fireballs came at him, and Jiraiya sped through hand signs of his own. Sealing art, chakra barrier, Jiraiya muttered as a blue barrier erected him. The flames hit but the barrier stood firm, protecting Jiraiya. Fire style, fireball jutsu, the Uchiha called, forming another fireball that hit the barrier with all its might but was still unable to neutralize it. Hang on for just a bit longer, Jiraiya boy, we're almost done, Fukazaku encouraged as the two small toads continued gathering enough nature energy. Seeing his second jutsu fail to penetrate the barrier, Itachi frowned, thinking of what he would be forced to do if Jiraiya managed to enter sage mode. He had been trying by all means to avoid using his Mangekyo, but it seemed that he would be forced to. I see. The acclaim on Fuin Jutsu was well deserved after all, the Uchiha commented as Jiraiya smirked. But then again, every jutsu has a weakness. As he closed one eye, blood profusely leaked out of it, and when he opened it, a black plume of black fire engulfed the entire barrier as it started to slowly but surely started melting. Amaterasu. Black flames. But he didn't even. All he did was just look. Itachi had control of black fire that he could use just by staring at something? If ever there was a jutsu that had unfair written all over it, he remembered the black fire from 3 years ago when the Uchiha had used it to escape from him and he had sealed the fire to study them as he had never seen a jutsu like that before. The Sunin had gone through all past records, even the sealed Uchiha records, but didn't find anything that said anything about them. All Jiraiya knew was that it could burn anything it touched, and now, apparently, it could be executed with just a look. Itachi let out a grunt, heard clearly by Jiraiya, blinking his right eye painfully as the Uchiha's knee went to the ground. I see, it seems the jutsu has quite some adverse effects on those that use it. Jiraiya could sense that it took a great amount of chakra to use the jutsu, and by the pain look on Itachi's normally stoic face, he gathered that it hurt the body as well. Well, at least it has some consequences, the Sunin thought vindictively, but his cruel look was turned to one of panic when Itachi stood up and recentered his vision's focal point at him. Only a quick, desperate shunshin saved him as the spot he was standing on was covered by more black flames, this time completely melting the barrier and started burning the previous black flames as well. Guys, now would be a good time to enter sage mode, Jiraiya said as he hurtled through the air and used another shunshin to land on a tree. Another body flicker and he was back on the ground. This went on for about a minute as he felt this was the best way to avoid being caught by such a dangerous technique, one that should be banned in Jiraiya's own humble opinion. When he once again shunshined into the air, Itaka took out some shuriken, wove through hand signs, and called a jutsu. Fire style, Phoenix Flower Jutsu. The Uchiha fired the flames, but this time the shuriken were inside the flames. Shuriken Shadow Clone Jutsu. Itaka said as the shuriken doubled along with the flames. Once again, Jiraiya used a shunshin to transport himself to the ground but immediately regretted the decision as he just realized that he had fallen right into Itaka's hands when he heard Amaterasu. He tried to speedily maneuver himself to move out of the way, but the black flames caught his left hand, burning intensely. "Gah!" the Sannin screamed in pain, feeling his burning flesh. The flames were even hotter than he ever expected, and this was only his left arm burning. He dreaded to think what would happen if the black flames had hit his entire body. In a moment of desperation, the Sannin quickly created a seal-less clone who took out a scroll and sped through hand signs. "Sealing art, chakra barrier," he said as another barrier erected around Jiraiya. The clone wasn't done, though, as it opened the scroll and sped through more hand signs. Sealing art, fire-consuming seal. The flames were then consumed by the seal, leaving the hand charred, bleeding, and so black that it looked like rotten over-roasted flesh. Even though the fire was sealed away, Jiraiya could still feel his skin burning and itching. A closer look at it and one could easily see the humerus bone inside the black flesh. His precious hand was pretty much useless now, even just trying to move it a fraction of an inch hurt. If he didn't get any medic attention soon, he might be forced to cut it off in order to avoid it contaminating the rest of his body. He gritted his teeth as he glared at Itaki, who was once again on his knees, one hand on his bleeding eye as he tried to nurse the excruciating pain he felt. Though a vindictive smirk appeared on the Sannin's face when Shima told him, "All right, Jiraiya boy, we're ready." Suna. Deidara was a frustrating opponent for Gaara. The man was really quick on his bird, but that wasn't the main problem. He had battled against really fast opponents like Rock Lee and Suzuki, so it wasn't the main issue. The thing with Deidara, though, was that the Mad Bomber was not only quick but versatile as well. When he had fought Lee, all the genin used was Taijutsu, and it was the same with Suzuki until he used the Chidori to break through his defense. Those two battles taught him one thing: his sand was too slow for his own good. His offense mostly depended on him grabbing his opponent before effectively ending them, but if he's too slow to catch his opponent, then it reduces his chances of winning tremendously. So, over the past 3 years, the Tsunekage had been training hard to improve on his weaknesses, and he's proud of what he has accomplished until now. Using less sand from his gourd made his sand much quicker, but that seemed to play right into Deidara's hands as he was easily able to evade his attacks with a grin on his face. The XIWA shinobi flew away from his sand at fast speeds, zigzagging and changing directions randomly as he completely avoided entrapment. If this battle was on the ground, it would have been over by now, but as it turned out, Deidara could fly, fast as hell. A different strategy then. Gaara had also learned from his battle with Naruto that while giving in to the Shikaka made him stronger, he sacrificed control and much of the things that made him formidable to begin with. Losing to Naruto showed him that the trade-off wasn't worth it, and he completely abandoned using his tiny Shikaka form, learning to do some of the techniques himself without having to tap into the Baijuyu chakra. With a series of hand seals, the sand morphed itself into a head of Shikaka that sucked in wind hard, giving off a whistling, hissing sound as a pressurized ball of air formed at the mouth of the construct. Wind release, drilling air bullet. Deidara saw it coming and guided his clay bird was to avoid it when it shot at them in the air. A nice change of pace. At least he can do more with his sand than I had initially thought. It wasn't over, though. Gaara needed more chakra through his sand that began to gather at the Shikaka mouth for another compressed air bullet and began shooting them off, one after another, with only enough lag time in between them to build up more for a new shot. He could see how much force those large balls of wind had within them. If they made contact with anything, whatever they hit just wasn't going to exist in the same state any longer. A quick decision later, Deidara guided his bird to fly straight to the cage while still dodging the sand-wind combo. He flew right at the Kaze cage faster than most high-level ninjas could even move and would have scared the hell out of most people, but Gaara was not most people. Gaara's sand formed a thick half-dome right in front of his body as Deidara jumped off of his bird as it crushed into the sand wall, going off in an explosion, catching Gaara in it. Deidara was almost worried that the explosion was too much for the Jinchuriki to take, but then narrowed his eyes when the redhead then proceeded to crumble into sand, revealing it to be a sand clone. "I have you now," Gaara commented, appearing behind the art lover who had created another clay bird when he jumped off the first one. "Well," Deidara thought as he turned Gaara's way and saw a horrifying amount of sand rising up from the ground like waterfalls. Only this one the sand was rising up instead of going down. It just kept coming. When had he put together the time to even do such a thing? "You're quite skilled, that's to be expected from a cage, HN, of course." When he'd been firing off shots with the Shikaka's head, Deidara had been flying around to avoid them for over a minute. But was that really enough time to gather up enough sand to make this big jutsu? Good lord. There wasn't any way around that. I can make so much more. As much as I need, Gaara said as he stood elevated off of the ground by a sand platform while he started manipulating the rest underneath him, Deidara's way, with multiple hand seals that started and ended with him clapping his hands. This is why I am known as Sabaka no Gaara in Tsunagakur. Gaara of the sand. Quicksand waterfall flow, and with that, Gaara sent every bit of it forward. Deidara was not going to avoid anything like this. There was no way. Even looking at him from where he was standing, Gaara knew as much. He did his best to fly away, but it caught up to him and engulfed him entirely, covering over him and burying him entirely. Now die for me. Sand waterfall imperial funeral. Dropping down from his platform, Gaara slammed his hands onto the ground and let out a shockwave that sent ripples all throughout a good part of the desert. And that was that. But then why couldn't he feel a body down there as his sand sifted through to confirm his kill? The one-tailed Jinchuriki's eyes widened when the real Deidara's head emerged from the ground, some distance away from him. He jumped onto a crane and flew upwards, giving him a savage grin. You're not the only one who can make clones, yeah, the blonde man said, making one hand sign before shouting out, but now you're standing on my landmines. Katsu, boom, the resulting explosion went directly beneath Gaara's feet, kicking up a lot of smoke and sand in the process. When the smoke cleared, it revealed Gaara inside a semi-closed ball of sand, effectively protecting him from the underground explosion. Though when Gaara brought his eyes back to Deidara, he was surprised to see the mad bomber grinning instead of showing frustration that his jutsu had just failed. You have a very good defense, yeah, the blonde praised, but you've just made a big mistake, he said, making an all too familiar hand sign. Gaara wondered what that meant, but immediately understood as small clay creatures emerged from the sandball protecting him. He wasn't given any time to escape before they all exploded right in his face. Boom! When the smoke cleared, it showed a pissed Kaze cage with half of his face and left hand taking the form of Shikaku. He growled loudly in pain and anger, and it doubled when he saw Sasori killing his people with what he could only assume to be a puppet of Suna's past cage. And he moved to help his fellow Jinchuriki, causing Deidara to chase after him, now reversing their earlier role of cat and mouse. Meanwhile, Sasori decided not to waste any time and made the Kaze cage fly forward, his wooden limbs crackling in the air. One of the Jonin launched an exploding note at the flying puppet with a short fuse, but the Kaze cage puppet glided to the right easily and extended his arm forward. Joints and incisions in his arm popped open, revealing several series of intricate seals on flaps of his arms. The seals glowed for a moment before bursting forth with hundreds of hands. Fu used her Baijuyu enhanced speed as she, along with the remaining 4 Jonin, tried to stay as far away from the puppet as possible. They ran, ducked, dodged, and tried with all their might to avoid being caught by the extending limbs. Their job got even harder when the puppet's arms disconnected from the elbows and started shooting out hundreds upon hundreds of senbon. Fu called upon Komei's wings, still in her chakra cloak state, and flew high, completely avoiding all of the senbon, but her comrades weren't able to avoid as 3 of the Jonin were made into a human pincushion, leaving only the fan-wielding shinobi who used his wind techniques to deflect them and used the fan itself for protection. 4 down, 1 more to go, Sasori said, finding himself impressed that Suna's shinobi would last long against him and even force him to use the Kaze cage. He thought of releasing his poison mist but decided against it as it wouldn't do much in such an open space. Seeing more of her teammates die like that, Fu let a feral growl as she let more of Komei's chakra up to 3 taels worth. The puppet responded by letting out iron sand from its mouth that began to shape spikes in the air. Iron rods shot forward at her as Fu darted forward. An iron rod shot down right at her chest, only to be batted away like a fly by one of her flailing red chakra tails. Iron rose out of the ground, causing Fu to leap and launch an arm forward with a roar. The arm extended and flew right at Sasori, who sidestepped with wide eyes. That was the first time he had seen any chakra manipulation such as that. Fu gave another leap, causing the Kaze cage puppet to fall back to protect Sasori with a giant iron shield that the Jinchuriki collided with. The fact that the girl was batting away iron rods annoyed him to no end. In addition to that, any time anyone clawed at his wall of iron, any other human would be paralyzed. However, this damn girl could claw, scratch, dry hump the wall for all she cared and would not be affected by the poisons of the wall made of his iron sand. Being a Jinchuriki was just an unfair advantage. Nevertheless, this battle was his for the taking. He would have been in much more trouble had the Jinchuriki been able to fully control her Baijuyu, but seeing her struggle to maintain her 3-tail state alleviated Sasori's concern of facing a perfect Jinchuriki. A sizable part of Sasori's wall broke apart as it took the shape of small shuriken, kunao, and spears. A little flick of the wrist was all it took to send the small sand weapons hurtling toward Fu, intent on piercing her, though before they could reach their target, the desert sand rose up and clashed with the iron sand, effectively ending the attack. Sasori didn't have to guess who was responsible as Gaara appeared by Fu's side, giving him a death glare. "Are you alright?" he asked, seeing how her face was flinching from the Baijuyu chakra currently surrounding her. "Well, I'm not dead yet," Fu replied as the fan-wielding Jonin joined them, his fan practically torn to shreds with Sasori's senbon and his clothes showing spots of blood. "Kazekage-sama," the man said, momentarily shocked with Gaara's new look. The last time he had seen him like that was when he was still terrorizing the village. "You should go back to the village," Gaara said, his voice a mix of man and beast. He pointed at the Jonin. "Seijiko, if the battle carries on like this, it will not end well for us. Go back and request for backup while I hold them. Request for Granny Cho, she may be past her prime, but she still remains the best puppet master in the village at the moment. Fu, I can't risk you being caught by these guys. I underestimated them, but you shouldn't pay the price for my mistake. If the Akatsuki manages to catch us both, it will not only be disastrous for our respective villages but for the entire elemental nations as well. I thank you for risking your life to fight with for my village and I, but these guys are after me, too," the Seven Tails retorted. "This may not be my village, but you are my friend and a fellow Jinchuriki. I'm not leaving," she finished defiantly. "You can't stay here either, don't you get it? Fu, you. A few weeks ago, Naruto-kun risked his life to save mine, and tonight one of your own Jonin gave up his life for me. They both did it because they saw me as a comrade and friend. That's the first time anyone has ever done that for me. For the first time, I have people that care and are willing to die for me. If I can't do the same for those I care about, then Taki was right about me all along. I'm just a monster. Well, isn't this sweet? There's nothing quite like a precious bond between two hurt souls, Sasori-dano," Deidara said as he joined Sasori's side. The Mad Bomber quickly created another clay bird that Sasori jumped on, seeing as the Kaze cage could easily use the sand below them to crush him. Yes, but unfortunately for them, this will be more like a fatal attraction than anything else. Gaara's-san grabbed hold of Seijiko and flung him toward the village, hoping he lands safely enough so that he relays his order. "Alright, Fu, you want to remain and fight? Fine, but you better not die." The girl merely nodded her head as she took off, charging at Deidara, who once again took off, initiating another game of cat and mouse, leaving Suna's past and future in a standoff. "As Kaze Cage, I won't allow myself to lose again," said Gaara as he faced down the legendary Akatsuki member who looked more like a pretty boy his own age than an experienced war hero turned criminal. "I've heard it all before," he responded in a soft voice. "The third said something similar before I killed him, and I imagine that your own father would have done the same had I got to him faster than Orochimaru." Gaara's ringed eyes narrowed at the Akatsuki member's words. "What interest do you have in the Kaze Cage? I am Sasori of the Red Sand, famed puppeteer of the village you now rule over. I am the killer of the third Kaze Cage, who has joined my collection." Sasori gave the Jinchuriki a disarming smile that would have surely fooled him had he no idea of who the puppeteer was. "I had plans to add the fourth Kaze Cage to my collection, but the man decided to foolishly trust in a snake and paid for it dearly. No use crying about it now, you will be my second Kaze Cage." Gaara-san moved instinctively to stop the barrage of senbon that emerged from Sasori's mouth. The sand became so saturated with senbon that by the end of the bombardment, the needles were bouncing off of themselves rather than being caught in the sand. One large pulse of the wall of sand sent the senbon hurtling back at Sasori, albeit with a much lower standard of accuracy. The Akatsuki members simply fired more senbon from the Kazekige's many arms that cancelled each other out with the one sent his way. "For your crimes against the village hidden in the sand, I, the fifth Kaze Cage, will be your executioner." With that said, Gaara-san shot forward in a massive wave as the Kaze Cage raised his arms as if beckoning it forth. Sasori was many things, but puppeteers were not very mobile as a general rule of thumb, and there was no way he could simply avoid the enormous wave of sand even if he had placed more effort into the art of dodging. He had to remember to thank Deidara for providing him with a bird that he used to escape the young cage. The man might be annoying with his blasphemous views on art, but he would still admit that the Mad Bomber's techniques were really useful. The tsunami of sand formed a large hand around Sasori, trying to grab the puppeteer, but once again, Deidara's creation proved to be the difference between life and death. Seeing as pursuing the Akatsuki member wasn't achieving anything, Gaara called off his sand. A good portion of his agitated sand whirled around him protectively. This might be his domain, but both Sasori and Deidara were proving just why they were tasked with hunting down Jinchuriki. He had to handle this carefully. One simple mistake was all it took for Deidara to almost kill him, and he had a sneaky suspicion that Sasori could do much worse if he let his guard down. The puppet of the Kaze Cage snapped open as a compartment on his chest opened to pulse out waves of magnetism. A wave of Gaara's sand rushed out to meet the attack of the Akatsuki's puppet. Despite the amount of sand towering over all of the combatants, it was met grain for grain by a wave of black sand. The amount was less, though the greater weight of the black allowed it to overwhelm the fifth Kazekige's sand tsunami. Black sand, 10-foot spikes. Gaara's sand reacted instinctively to the attack from above, and while it didn't stop the massive shapes made of iron sand, his ultimate defense did slow the third Kazekige's attack long enough for Gaara to jump out of the way. Gaara realized then that the puppet of his predecessor still had access to his abilities, something that Kankuro had told him was impossible. Sasori brought his hand up in a unique seal to launch his next attack, determined not to give his latest target a moment's peace. Thousand Hand Manipulation Force. The third Kaze cage raised his left arm and the sides opened menacingly to reveal the seal matrices inscribed on the insides. Near-identical copies of the Kazekige's arm burst out of the seals, which in turn opened up to produce even more arms. Soon, a wall of wooden hands was hurtling toward Gaara, who raised his sand to catch the attack. The hands wove around the sand, or attempted to, anyway, as a blue-veined hand reached out and grabbed a hold of the arms. That didn't stop one of the hands from retracting into the arm to make an opening for a deadly purple mist to rain down on the Kaze cage. His sand reacted immediately, but the poison was already around Gaara, who was holding his breath and sensing the world through his sand rather than risk opening his eyes. Not wanting to open his mouth and utter the name of the technique, Gaara simply sent his sand into a frenzied sandstorm to scour the poison from the air. Cables shot out of the massive hands as it flew through the air and wrapped themselves around his shield of sand. The third Kaze cage popped off his arm at the elbow, detaching the mass of wooden hands. Sasori's hands snapped together in another unique seal that did nothing but command his puppet. Black sand, treasure drop. Gaara looked up at the massive sphere of black sand that began to fall on top of him. Gaara's sand formed a thick dome over him, as he was currently held in place by his own sand, which refused to move to keep the cables from tightening around him. The black dust weighed down on the sand dome, which held up admirably under the pressure. Gaara used the room around himself and the time his defenses bought to grind the floor beneath him to sand and escape. Still obscured from Sasori, Gaara sensed his sand cave in under the weight and velocity of the golden sphere and crush where he had been. Bursting from the ground in a flurry of sand, Gaara enveloped the Kaze cage puppet in a coffin of sand. Crushing them did little to actually kill them, but it did freeze up all the joints of the puppets, turning them into useless hunks of wood, flesh, and metal. Sasori sighed heavily as his puppet failed to respond. I suppose this is what I get for letting my guard down. Give up now, Sasori, said Gaara, glaring at his village's pioneering puppeteer. He had no plans of sparing the murdering puppeteer, but if he stood still, Gaara would have a much easier time killing him. You're all out of puppets, and I've beaten your most powerful. There are actually two puppets I adore more, though they're more sentimental than combat-oriented, said Sasori as he slowly unbuttoned his Akatsuki cloak, not turning to face the Kaze cage who was glaring at his back. And the Kaze cage wasn't my best work. I don't make puppets, I make art. Art is eternal, and guess what? So am I. Sasori wheeled around, and concentrated jets of water shot out of his palms. Gaara's sand was barely fast enough to get between him and the attack, and his ultimate defense began to sag under its own weight as it took on water. The water gave up after a moment, and Gaara got a good look at the monster, for there was no more mistaking Sasori as human. Before him, Sasori had looked unnaturally young, and now it made sense. He stood on a thick cable that emerged from where his stomach was supposed to be as blade-like wings fanned out behind him.